In this world, it is a commonly held belief that humans can never defeat monsters. They are considered the weakest by nature. But one young man, Theo, knows the truth. He alone understands the hidden power that only humans possess, the ability to rise above any adversity. This strength comes from the very existence of leveling up, a secret that sets him apart. Because of this unique knowledge, he sees his surroundings for what they truly are. The fortified town before him is not a sanctuary. It is nothing more than a massive pen built to contain livestock. And that livestock, the humans kept under strict control, is overseen by a hulking, man-eating ogre who smugly gathers his charges. Facing the terrified crowd of captives, the ogre announces the start of the sacrificial vote. He commands them to choose one person among themselves, the lucky one who will be eaten by him. In a desperate, panicked frenzy, the captives immediately turn on each other, fingers pointing as each tries to deflect their grim fate onto someone else. The frantic pointing quickly coalesces onto a single individual. One by one, the others, including the light-haired young man, single out Theo. The young man mutters an apology, his fear overriding any loyalty, as Theo stands silently, realizing he has been chosen. He is presented to the ogre, and the light-haired captive confirms that Theo is already 18 years old. The ogre leans in close, sniffing him with a predatory grin and remarking that he smells quite tasty. Theo is officially today's pick. Without ceremony, the ogre shoves Theo into a small, dark cage. As the light-haired youth watches in horror, the monster declares Theo to be the perfect age for eating and expresses his eagerness to begin his meal. Inside the cramped confines of the cage, Theo's hand grips a small, rectangular object. The number 7 is clearly visible on its surface. He allowed a faint, confident smile to cross his lips. So far, everything was going exactly according to his plan. This confidence was rooted in events from several days earlier. He had gathered the other human captives, his expression serious as he made a bold proposition that they should all try to escape from the town. His words were met not with enthusiasm, but with a wave of stunned, fearful silence from the others. The silence was shattered when one of the captives, a young man named Thor, lunged forward. He grabbed Theo by the collar, demanding to know if he was serious. Thor shouted that escape was impossible, reminding him that every human who had ever stood up to the monsters had suffered horribly. Despite the rough treatment, Theo remained calm, simply asking why Thor assumed it was impossible. The question caught Thor off guard, leaving him stammering. Finding his voice, Thor erupted, thrusting his hand forward to reveal the crest branded upon it. He yelled that it was because their level was only 1. This level is the one absolute standard that governs their world. As Theo knew, in this world, every species has a set value placed on their lives. From a moment of birth, it is branded onto the body as a crest. The power hierarchy is stark and unforgiving. Goblins begin at level 3, ogres at level 9, and mighty wyverns can reach level 37. Humans, however, are at the very bottom. Thor desperately tried to make him understand. Being level 1 designated humans as the weakest of all. They couldn't use magic, had no weapons, and lacked the innate gifts of other species, like the ogre's superior muscle control. They were, in his view, utterly defenseless. As he was led away, his fellow captive, Thor, voiced his confusion and despair. He questioned why Theo would talk about escaping, knowing the risks, especially when facing monsters. The horrifying realization then dawned on Thor. If Theo knew the consequences, it could only mean one thing. He had purposely gotten himself chosen as the sacrifice. He could only watch as a massive ogre carried Theo away in a cage on his back, wondering what desperate plan the young man could possibly be trying to accomplish. Meanwhile, inside the castle, a group of goblins seated at a long table erupted in cheers, celebrating the arrival of their long-awaited meal. The ogre carrying Theo's cage finally arrived, greeted by the impatient goblins. One complained he was late, while others argued whether to eat the human alive or to cut him up properly first. Another simply urged the ogre to hurry up and start cooking. He carried the cage into a large stone kitchen, setting it down on the floor near a heavy butcher's block. With his back turned, the ogre began to sharpen a large blade. From within the cage, the faint, rhythmic clicking of metal against metal could be heard as Theo worked on the lock. The creature whirled around, enraged. He bellowed at Theo for ignoring him and trying to sneak out, grabbing the cage and revealing the boy's attempt at picking the lock. The ogre began to lecture him, declaring that God made humans the weakest creatures in the world. His voice boomed as he delivered his final, chilling point. The only reason for humanity's existence is to be eaten by monsters. With a roar, he brought his massive fist crashing down. The force of the blow sent the cage flying across the stone floor. Its doors sprung open, and its interior completely empty. He had disappeared, leaving the ogre to stare at the splintered remains of the cage. The beast growled in frustration, lamenting that the meat intended for cooking had been lost when he smashed its container to bits. From the shadows behind the creature, a calm voice emerged, dripping with contempt. Theo mocked the monster's delusion, questioning if it seriously believed he would just sit there and wait. He stated plainly that monsters like them were far too full of themselves. He stood poised behind the hulking creature, a stolen cleaver held ready. As the ogre and a nearby goblin turned in shock, Theo's smirk widened. He challenged them directly, asking if they truly thought they were going to eat him. Before the ogre could react, his focus sharpened. Concentric rings of light flared to life around the cleaver as he channeled his power, invoking body, strengthening, and material reinforcement. The ogre stared, aghast, unable to believe a human was using magic, thinking it impossible. With the cleaver now glowing with power, he brought it down in a swift, decisive arc, aiming directly for the ogre's thick neck. The attack was too fast for the monsters to process. The ogre and another small, horned creature could only stare in bewildered confusion. As the blade sliced through the air, Theo corrected the ogre's earlier assumption, stating it was the other way around. With a predatory grin, he declared that he was the one who was going to eat them. His declaration was punctuated by the brutal finality of his strike. The reinforced cleaver sliced cleanly through the ogre's neck, sending its head flying as the massive body crumpled to the floor. Watching the creature fall, Theo calmly confirmed to himself, target neutralized. A brilliant light erupts from Theo's hand as he absorbs the life force of the fallen goblin. He stands his ground, taking in a surge of power as the creature's tail dissolves into nothingness behind him. This act defies the fundamental rule of the world, that every species is born with a fixed level, a number that can never be changed. But as Theo knows, it is different for humans. They alone possess a one-of-a-kind divine gift, the ability to devour the life of monsters and raise their own value. The proof of this gift glows on the back of his hand. The crest now clearly reads Level 5. A confident smirk forms on his face. He clenches his fist, a spark of excitement in his eyes. This is his first level up in 18 years. With this, he realizes he'll be able to move a little bit faster. Despite the progress, he reflects that he is still nowhere near the strength he had in his last life. He had been secretly training this whole time, but at level 1, his stamina and magic were so weak that he could barely last a second. His thoughts drift, confirming a deep truth. That's right, he has memories of his past life. The memories flood back. In that life, he was known as the Adventure King, Theo Lord, the strongest adventurer in history and the world's only S-ranker. He defeated every monster and explored every corner of the world. Now, reborn as Theo, he knows hundreds, maybe thousands of years have passed since his death. Yet, he cannot remember when or how he died. He considers the grim reality of his new existence. In this world, everything is controlled so that humans can never defeat monsters. Even the concept of leveling up has been erased from existence. He knows he hasn't told the other captives any of this, because there's no way they would ever believe him. This is precisely why he has waited 18 years for a chance to strike back. In a world where no one even tries to resist, he clenches his fist, determined. With his power, he will prove, once again, that humans are the strongest beings. He listens as a voice from outside the door complains, asking if the cooking is done yet and accusing him of trying to keep it all for himself. In response, he pours a flammable liquid onto the floor, forming a magical sigil. Acknowledging he is not yet at a level to face a whole group, he resolves to eliminate them one by one. With a focused gaze, he commands the sigil to ignite. The sigil erupts in a violent explosion of fire, blasting the doors outward and engulfing the entrance in flames. The horned goblins outside cry out in alarm, wondering what is happening as the entire area is set ablaze. From within the inferno, Theo manipulates the blaze with a wind control spell, intensifying the chaos. Blinded by the thick, acrid smoke, the goblins are thrown into disarray. One of them suddenly finds Theo right before it, his body glowing with the light of body strengthening and material reinforcement spells. He strikes with newfound power, sending the goblin flying with a single blow. He notes internally that the kill was far easier than his previous one. While a larger ogre bellows, demanding to know where he has gone, Theo observes the glowing crest on his hand. He confirms to himself that with that last kill, he has reached level 7. He then launches into a relentless assault, cutting through the monster ranks. With each foe he defeats, his power surges, his level climbing rapidly from 8 to 9 and all the way to 13 in a blur of combat. The carnage is so swift and absolute that the last remaining ogre can only stand in stunned disbelief, its weapon held ready. It confronts Theo, demanding to know what he is. The ogre dismisses the idea that a regular human could defeat a level 9 ogre, calling it impossible. Theo calmly presents his glowing hand, correcting the monster's assumption. He acknowledges that a level 9 is nothing to be trifled with, but declares that right now, he is level 14. The ogre stared, its single visible eye wide with disbelief. It stammered, finding the revelation impossible, utterly unthinkable. Its terror mounting, the monster began to plead, begging for its life and promising to do anything. Unmoved, Theo leaned in and posed a cold question. Had the ogre ever spared its own prey when they begged for mercy? The creature stammered, unable to form a coherent response. Theo pressed his point, his voice sharp as he repeated the question, already knowing the answer. You haven't, have you? With a final, chilling declaration. Neither have I, he swung his weapon, ending the confrontation decisively. With this, all the ogres in the town were eliminated. Theo glanced at his hand, noting his new status, level 15, before turning his back on the carnage. He walked towards the large doors, finally saying goodbye to the livestock shed that had been his prison for 18 years. He paused, a fierce grin spreading across his face as he extended a hand. A new resolve burned in his eyes. Now then, he declared to himself, it's time to turn the world upside down. Far away, the smoke rising from the town did not go unnoticed. From a high vantage point, a young woman with pointed ears observed the distant chaos. A smirk played on her lips as she brought a finger to her chin, musing aloud, looks like something interesting is going on down there. Inside the prison block, the remaining captives reel in shock and confusion. One of the young men, Thor, shouts into the chaos, demanding to know what is happening, while the others can only stare bewildered. Their confusion turns to disbelief as they look out from their confinement. The castle is on fire, and the bodies of the ogres that imprison them are gone, seemingly wiped out. In the doorway, wreathed in a faint glow, Theo appears, prompting Thor to call out his name. He stands before them, calm amidst the destruction. One of the other captives approaches cautiously and asks if he was the one responsible for all of this. Theo simply confirms that he was. His admission is met with utter disbelief. Thor declares it impossible, questioning how a level 1 human with no divine blessing could have wiped out level 9 ogres. In response, Theo calmly clarifies that he does, in fact, have a blessing. To prove his point, a faint magical circle materializes over his left hand. He clenches his fist, invoking a power he calls Babelk Physical Enhancement. The power surges through him. He explains that this is humanity's blessing, an ability that is currently leveling up. As the captives watch in stunned silence, Theo reveals that he is now level 15. Standing before the open gate, surrounded by the evidence of his power, Theo makes a declaration to the others. This incredible strength, he tells them, is the power of humans. He then turns to them, gesturing towards the large, open doorway leading out of the fortress. He announces that freedom lies just beyond and asks if they are coming with him. Following his lead, Theo and 2 of the other captives walk to the threshold of the exit, pausing for a moment to look out into the bright light of the world outside. Just as escape seems certain, Thor's voice cuts in. With a grim expression, he tells Theo that he can't go, bringing their flight to a sudden halt. He is confronted by Thor's desperate explanation. The fearful captive admits that the concepts of freedom and leveling up are terrifying, as his entire life has been ruled by monsters. The fearful captive continues, his expression shifting to one of resolve as he looks at Theo. He declares that he does not want to be deadweight. With newfound determination, he makes a plea, asking Theo to wait for him. As Thor speaks, Theo's own ambitions echo in his mind. He reaffirms his personal goal to level up, become the strongest, and one day slay every last monster. His internal resolve solidifies into an external promise. Standing at the threshold of the exit, he turns to the other captives and vows to set every last human free with his own hands. Hearing this, Thor watches with a faint, hopeful smile. With his promise made, Theo takes a decisive step out of the dark corridor and into the blinding light of the outside world. He emerges under a vast, open sky, where the brilliant sun hangs high above. The light reveals the world that awaits him, a desolate, rocky landscape stretching out, barren and empty as far as the eye can see. He takes his first steps into this new world, feeling the wind against his skin. He reflects that he can't recall the last time a simple breeze felt so pleasant, marking the first step of his new adventure. But his reverie is broken by a sudden sense of wrongness. He stops, puzzled, turning to find Thor standing just behind him, looking equally bewildered. Theo realizes something is very strange. He stands frozen, his eyes wide with shock at their sudden appearance outside the castle. A sharp sound slices through the air, drawing his gaze upward into the unfamiliar sky. From above, a figure descends, landing gracefully on a nearby cliff. It is a young woman with pointed ears and light hair in twin tails. She gazes down, wondering aloud why humans would be in such a place, and questioning if they might be fallen ones. Her expression hardens as she floats down towards them, an aura of predatory power emanating from her small frame. Her focus locks on Theo, a slight, menacing smile playing on her lips as she declares that he smells absolutely delicious. The chilling words strike Thor with pure terror. He realizes they're facing a monster, a dangerous one, and the horrifying thought that he will be devoured grips him. The woman remarks how curious it is that Theo has let his guard down, something natural for a human opponent, but not for her. Her question of why he looks so delicious snaps Theo to his senses. He knows he must strike first. Invoking physical enhancement and material enforcement, he empowers his cleaver, which begins to glow with a faint energy. He lunges forward, blade ready. His strategy is clear. Even if she dodges, he only needs to break her stance to create an opening and escape to the sea behind him. But his cleaver passes straight through her body, as if she were nothing but air. Thor watches from the side, his mind reeling in confusion at the impossible sight. As he stumbles past, he turns to see that the woman hadn't dodged at all. She has been impaled from behind by several sharp, dark projectiles, Staring at his own hand, Theo is struck with bewildered shock, wondering if he somehow caused her death. Before he can comprehend the situation, her body erupts in a blinding flash of light, the violent explosion engulfing him completely. He braced himself as the concussive force of the explosion washed over him. From the chaos, a disembodied voice boomed, filled with manic laughter and amusement, declaring the entire situation to be incredibly curious. The voice belonged to a monstrous, shadowy entity whose form coalesced from the darkness, its glowing eyes fixing on the scene. It expressed mock shock that someone would dare try to kill it, musing that there were still humans who chose to resist monsters. But the blast had not harmed Theo. He knelt within a newly formed, swirling vortex of rock and earth that had shielded him from the explosion. Looking up from his makeshift fortress, his gaze locked onto the shadowy being as he prepared to face this new, powerful foe. The powerful, elf-like woman looms over Theo, her energy crackling around her. She gazes down at him, her expression a mix of curiosity and condescension, as she demands to know why he isn't level 1. She continues her analysis aloud, noting his mysterious abilities. He had seen through her instantly, knew magic, and even possessed a revival ability. She had estimated he should be around level 15, but his current state as a level 1 contradicted her observations. A smug, predatory smile spreads across her face. She finds him interesting, she admits, but declares that he has made a fatal error. He picked the wrong opponent. As Theo recoils in shock, she reveals her true identity with overwhelming authority. She announces that she is one of the 7 demon lords, Fifi Li Birthday, the immortal phoenix that endlessly dies and revives. Her eyes gleam with absolute superiority as she leans closer, delivering the final, crushing piece of information. Her level, she states, is 77. The revelation strikes Theo with immense force. He finally understands. She is a phoenix, a supreme-class monster, the incarnation of the sun that cannot be permanently killed. Finding his reaction amusing, Fifi Li points a finger at him. She remarks that the difference in their levels is too vast, but because he entertains her, she will grant him 2 special options. As she speaks, rings of dark energy begin to form around her. With a casual gesture, she unleashes the spell. The energy solidifies into multiple glowing rings that swiftly encircle and bind Theo, trapping him completely within their grasp. Immobilized, Theo can only listen as Fifi Li present her first option. She could simply eat him right here. The bizarre proposition catches him off guard, and he can only stammer, questioning if that is a real choice. She then reveals the second choice. Stepping close, Fifi Li lifts his chin, forcing him to meet her triumphant gaze. She declares that he will continue to live as her pet. Theo's eyes widen in utter disbelief and humiliation. He remains silent, his expression unreadable as he weighs the ultimatum. Fifi Li leans closer, a predatory smile spreading across her face as she presses him, demanding to hear his answer. His response is not given in words. With a sudden, sharp movement, he thrusts his hand forward, plunging a blade directly into her chest. Fifi Li stares down in utter disbelief as he declares that this is his answer. With a wild grin, he shouts his defiance, roaring that he doesn't care about her choices. Fifi Li recoils, her face twisted in a grimace of pain and fury. She snarls that it seems he needs some discipline. She immediately lunges, her fist wreathed in a massive, spiky aura of energy that obliterates the spot where he stood. The attack hits nothing but air. As the dust settles, she realizes he's gone and scans the area above, calling him a birdbrain. But he wasn't above her. Appearing from behind with impossible speed, he drives his blade deep into her back. She gasps in shock as the weapon pierces clean through her torso, emerging from her chest. The devastating blow causes her body to shatter into particles of light. Her face, frozen in disbelief, wonders if it was all for nothing as she disintegrates completely. Below, Theo stands firm, blade at the ready. However, her form begins to coalesce from the dissipating energy. Growling in frustration, she stares at him, unable to comprehend how he cut her again. She questions how he could have acquired such a skill in the instant of her revival, declaring it impossible. He remains poised, blade held steady. Fifi Li's voice echoes with disbelief, demanding to know why a mere human, once managed by ogres, could possess such power. Theo's only response is a silent, determined glare. The source of his impossible feat becomes clear. The weapon he wields is not a knife, but a single, razor-sharp feather. This realization transforms Fifi Li's shock into pure rage. She lunges forward, her hands morphing into monstrous claws as she simultaneously unleashes a torrent of fire from her mouth. Theo braces himself for the furious onslaught. He watches as Fifi Li's body reforms from swirling, dark energy. She scoffs, questioning if surprise attacks are all he is capable of, declaring his efforts pointless. Unfazed, he simply states that he knew this would happen. She continues her taunt, revealing the name of her divine gift, the cycle of ember rebirth. She boasts that no matter how many times she dies, she will simply rise again from the flames, making his victory impossible. She presses him, asking how he expects to defeat an immortal opponent with a 50-level advantage. In response, he calmly asks if she's truly sure about that. Her confidence wavers, replaced by confusion. A wide, knowing grin spreads across his face as he corrects her. The level gap, he states, to be precise, was over 50. He throws her own words back at her, reminding her of her boast about reviving no matter how many times she dies. In other words, he has been killed over and over again. He then reveals the secret he has been holding back. Humans, he explains, possess a divine blessing of devouring monster lives to raise their own life's rank. The revelation stuns her. With this context, he declares that her supposed immortality is, in fact, incredibly convenient for him. The implication dawns on Fifi Lee, who internally rejects the possibility, thinking it cannot be. He points a finger directly at her, his expression one of absolute certainty. He lays his strategy bare. Every time he kills her, he levels up. To prove his point, he presents the back of his left hand. The crest upon it glows brightly, displaying his current level, 44. Fifi Lee stares in shock, realizing with horror that the gap between them is rapidly shrinking. Facing Ellie McDowell, Theo calmly explains his newfound power. With every time he kills her, he reveals he levels up. He smirks, holding up his fist to show the glowing crest on the back of his hand. He declares that his current level is now 44. Ellie stares, finding his claim unbelievable. She internally confirms that his level is indeed changing, a fact that defies the world's fundamental rule, that one's value is determined by the level they are born with. She questions what this all means. Her shock twists into a menacing sneer. She dismisses his efforts, asking what good leveling up is. As long as she has her Rinna Insei ability, she proclaims it is impossible for him to truly win. Theo retorts that such a thing isn't true, claiming he knows how to defeat an immortal phoenix. He lunges forward as a magical glyph appears at his feet. Ellie notes his increased speed but scoffs that his technique is artless, even as she is pushed back by his sudden advance. He shouts the name of his spell. Fuse Ribera, Wind King's Barrier. A vortex of wind erupts around him. Ellie's eyes widen in disbelief, shocked that a human could use such high-level magic. The barrier of wind slams into her, knocking her off balance with its raw force. Before she can recover, he is on her, knife raised. She quickly summons a blade of wind, a fuse howl, to parry his strike. The truth of his strategy crashes down on Ellie. He intends to kill her repeatedly, leveling up each time until he surpasses her. This is his path to victory. She grits her teeth, realizing that while it was a clever surprise attack, it won't work on her again. But his attack has already found its mark. As Theo backs away, a crescent-shaped gash scored into the floor. Ellie looks down at her hand. It is dissolving into particles of dark energy, leaving her to question what just happened. Her hand dissolves into dark motes of energy as she stumbles backward. Looking up from the ground, she realizes with shock that her attack was completely red. She curses, landing hard on the stone floor. She wonders what kind of human he is, baffled that despite her superior speed, she cannot touch him. As her hand instantly regenerates from the dissipating energy, her confusion mounts. She questions why she can't land a single blow on him. He calmly watches her, then provides the simple answer. It is precisely because she is strong. He elaborates, explaining that she is so accustomed to overwhelming opponents with raw power that she cannot comprehend feints or tactics. Therefore, he declares her attacks, even the Wind King's sword, will never connect with him. Her face twists in a furious snarl. She fumes internally, thinking that a single one of her attacks should be more than enough to completely neutralize a mere human. But the gap in their power is rapidly closing. She finds she can no longer keep up as Theo effortlessly evades her increasingly desperate strikes. His relentless pressure forces her back to the very edge of a precipice. She realizes that if this continues, she will be in trouble. Her footing gives way, and she tumbles into the abyss. A thought flashes through her mind. How could she, one of the 7 demon dukes, be driven back like this? Landing safely on the ground far below, she erupts into manic laughter. How strange! How wonderful! She shouts up at him. Nothing like this has ever happened to me before. Her manic laughter subsides into a thoughtful smile. She finds him incredibly interesting, admitting that she had underestimated him until now. Across from her, Theo clutches a glowing object, his expression hardening as he recognizes the true danger this person represents. She continues, her smile unwavering as she concedes that he is, indeed, strong. Because of this, she will acknowledge him. Her acknowledgement takes a menacing turn. An intense aura flares around her as she promises, with a vicious grin, to grant him a special death at the hands of her true form. He can only stare in confusion, questioning what she means. With a smug look, she explains that this form is just an ornament, and that she is now undoing her humanification magic. As she speaks, her body begins to disintegrate into blinding light. She boasts that if she had been serious, his fragile human body would have been instantly vaporized, and that with her true form, worshipped as the incarnation of the sun, this fight will be over in a moment. Her transformation continues, and with eyes closed in anticipation, she tells him to prepare to be beautifully scorched by the sight he is about to behold. But before she can complete her grand reveal, he lunges forward, roaring about the opening she has given him. His fist connects squarely with her face. The blow leaves her utterly stunned. Her eyes go wide with disbelief as she stammers, unable to process what just happened. She cries out in pain, begging him to wait and stop, protesting that she was in the middle of her transformation. He shouts back, declaring that this is the power of a human. He presses his attack, shouting that he doesn't care about her grandstanding. In this world, the only thing that matters is winning, and he has won. His fist connects, sending Ellie reeling backward from the force of the brutal, unexpected assault. As she flies through the air, he looks on with a confident smirk, calling out to her by a new name, Phoenix. He then poses a chilling question, asking if she can truly be reborn without the aid of flames. The blow sends her hurtling over the edge of the cliff. Tumbling through the air, a single, sharp sound of confusion escapes her lips. Far below, the dark, churning waters of the sea awaited her fall. As she plummets, a horrifying realization dawns on her. To be reborn through her reincarnation flame, she must first be bathed in fire and reduced to ash. A gasp of shock escapes her. The pieces of his plan click into place in her mind. His talk of leveling up was just a feint, a misdirection to draw her attention away from the sea. This, she understands with dawning horror, is how one defeats a phoenix. Powerless to stop her momentum, she watches the surface of the water rush up to meet her before she plunges into the cold depths. Submerged and disoriented, she grunts in frustration. In her current state, lying on her back in the water, she finds she is completely unable to take flight. Her body, battered and wounded, refuses to obey. She realizes his true intent. He wounded her just enough so that she wouldn't die from a fall, but would be helpless in the sea. As he closes in, a furious thought consumes her, that he is merely a human, yet he has done this to her. Despite his grip, a final, desperate surge of power erupted from Ellie, exploding across the water surface. She looked on in shock, her own volatile energy escaping her control. The blast plunged him deep beneath the waves, into the cold, dark silence. From the crushing pressure of the depths, he watched as her flames raged one last time on the surface, a chaotic inferno separating them. But her power, doused by the sea, quickly sputtered out. Floating amidst the dying embers, a single, devastating thought echoed in her mind. She had lost. Silence returned to the ocean as the last bubbles from the struggle broke the surface and vanished. Moments later, Theo clawed his way onto the muddy shore, gasping and choking, his lungs burning for air. He collapsed on the bank, a lone figure under the vast, moonlit sky, the water lapping gently behind him. Pushing himself up, still half submerged in the shallows, he panted heavily. The shock was immense. He wondered if he was truly alive. The realization then washed over him, slow and intoxicating. A low chuckle escaped his lips, building into a triumphant, almost manic laugh. He thrust a clenched fist towards the sky, his voice raw as he roared out his victory. He had won. His gaze falls upon the back of his left hand. The crest, once a simple mark, now faintly glows. A number registers in his mind, level 58. The number is staggering. He can hardly process that he truly won. He realizes that not even in his previous life had he ever experienced such a massive, instantaneous leap in power. As he stumbles away from the water's edge, his mind analyzes the battle. He acknowledges that it all went up in one go, but his victory wasn't pure skill. His opponent had been careless, and the natural advantage his gifts had over hers played a significant role. This analysis gives way to a surge of raw elation. A wide, triumphant grin spreads across his face as he thrusts his fist toward the heavens, roaring his newfound truth. Humans can defeat monsters. In the quiet that follows his declaration, a few pale feathers drift down through the air. A calm, feminine voice, its source unseen, replies, "Indeed. It seems so." Kneeling in the aftermath, Theo clenches his fist in triumph. He declares that he has defeated the Phoenix, proving that a human can indeed vanquish a monster. His celebration is cut short as a shape flashes past him with startling speed, causing him to flinch back in surprise. The source of the movement reveals itself. Ellie McDowell, the Phoenix, hovers effortlessly in the moonlit sky, completely unscathed. He stares in wide-eyed disbelief, a cold sweat breaking out on his face as he struggles to comprehend what he is seeing. She floats down to face him, a faint aura surrounding her form. With a slight smile, she asks if he is surprised. He demands to know why she is here, his mind racing back to the fact that he should have sunk her body in the sea. She smirks, chiding him for underestimating her power of immortality. She explains that even if her physical body decays, the soul of a phoenix does not die. She notes that it's a shame her body can no longer be revived, but thanks him anyway. Theo stands tense, realizing he has no weapons left and wonders what his next move should be. Her form becomes more translucent, like a spirit. She tells him to lower his guard, explaining that in this spiritual state, she possesses no magic and has no intention of continuing their battle. With a bright smile, she spreads her arms wide, declaring that it would be a shame to part ways after meeting such an interesting human. She announces that she has come simply to talk. She leans in close to Theo, a playful smile on her face, telling him not to be so cold. After all, she muses, they're comrades who just tried to kill each other with such passion. He looks away, annoyed, stating that he never wanted to see her again. He turns back to her, jabbing a finger in her direction, and retorts that from his perspective, she was the one who unilaterally killed him. Flustered, her expression shifts to one of indignation as she insists that she wasn't even using her full power during their fight. Theo considers this, thinking to himself that losing while holding back is the most embarrassing outcome possible. He bluntly tells her to stop dwelling on it. He then changes the subject, dismissively asking what this loser wanted to talk about. Incensed, she shouts, demanding to know who he's calling that when she just introduced herself. She proudly declares her full name and title, Fifi Li Birthday, one of the 7 dukes of the demon world. He pauses, trying to place the name. He then recalls that she had, in fact, introduced herself earlier during their battle. As she repeats her name, Fifi Birthday, Theo mockingly shortens it to Fico, musing that it sounds like a parakeet's name. She scoffs at his remark, commenting that his simple-mindedness is typical of humans. He repeats the nickname, Fico, was it, earning a sharp, annoyed glance from her. She snaps, telling him not to use that name, but then immediately relents with a frustrated shout, declaring that Fico is fine. Taking the opening, he casually introduces himself as Theo. She repeats his name, Theo. A flicker of recognition crosses her face, as if she's heard it somewhere before. She quickly dismisses the thought as her imagination and insists they move on to the main topic. She begins, asking if he is the one who rebelled against the ogres and left the town after wiping them all out. Noting that he doesn't seem to grasp the significance of this act, she looks at him intently under the moonlight and begins to state, "You are." She finished her sentence with a grave declaration. He had made an enemy of the king. He processed her words, his mind latching onto the title. The king? She elaborated, explaining that even level 70 and 80 monsters obediently kneel before this ruler. The implication hung in the air, prompting Theo to ask just how strong this king truly was. He considered this new information. He had already deduced from the monster's behavior that they had a society transcending individual species, but this confirmed a structured hierarchy he hadn't fully imagined. He realized that the entire system of human management, uniting all monster species, must have been established through the king's overwhelming power. But he began to think. Fifi cut into his thoughts, asking what he intended to do now. She observed that the king's strength was irrelevant. From the very beginning, his course of action had not changed. If anything, she mused, his path had just become simpler. His resolve hardening, Theo grabbed her by the shoulders. He declared with fiery conviction that he would level up and become the strongest. Then, he vowed, he would defeat the king and liberate all of humanity. She challenged him, asking if he truly intended to rebel against the king, against the entire world, even if it meant a meaningless death. He affirmed it without hesitation, clarifying that he wasn't living merely for the sake of survival. His words struck a chord with her. He continued, stating that he would consider it an honor to die for his chosen way of life. A slow smile spread across Fifi's face as she listened. Her smile erupted into a look of pure delight. "That's the spirit," she exclaimed, thrilled by his unwavering resolve. Her sudden enthusiasm caught Theo completely off guard. He is taken aback as Fifi leans in close, her expression one of amusement. She declares him truly interesting, for he continues to defy her expectations in every way. Flustered, he can only manage a quiet acknowledgement. As he processes her words, she continues her assessment, warning him that if he remains as he is, death is certain. She explains that not only will all monsters turn against him, but even humans will become his enemies. She dismisses such a boring outcome, stating that he has an obligation to provide her with more entertainment. Her hand gestures as she concludes, "Therefore, I will lend you my strength to help you kill the king." The offer hangs in the air, leaving Theo utterly stunned. His mind reels from the proposition. He recalls that in his previous life, humans and monsters were fundamentally incompatible. Never once had a monster offered him aid. Yet now, this woman extends her hand. Despite the unprecedented offer, he turns away with a dismissive wave. "You can go back to the sea," he says flatly. Fifi cries out in disbelief, shocked at being rejected. She immediately closes the distance, her face contorted with frustration. She demands to know why he would refuse when she hasn't even finished explaining her proposal. He meets her outburst with a firm, unwavering gaze. To put it simply, he states, "I can't trust you." The directness of his reason gives Fifi pause, and she internally concedes that he has a point. He presses his point, standing at the water's edge. "In the first place, what reason would you, another monster, have to kill the king?" Fifi looks away, explaining that his assumption is hurtful. While she is an enemy to humans, she clarifies that does not automatically make her an ally to all monsters. She begins to explain her personal stake, stating that as long as the king exists, she trails off. Seeing his confusion, she changes tack, assuring him that she does, in fact, have a reason for her proposal. He could only stare, completely baffled by her sudden change in demeanor. Fifi, her composure shattered, threw her hands up in frustration, shouting that she couldn't just not work. Her voice trembled with agitation as she explained her plight. As a noble with a title, she was now burdened with the daily grind of managing her domain, a stark contrast to her previous life where she had always lived freely, doing whatever she pleased. Her frantic energy subsided, replaced by a quiet, serious tone. She confessed that she had always accepted the world's hierarchy, the strong dominating the weak. The thought of rebelling against the king had never even crossed her mind. From his side, Theo's voice cut in, questioning why she was changing her stance now. Fifi turned her gaze fully upon him. It was because she met him, she explained. He had challenged her without any regard for their difference in level or the fact that she was his superior. And then, against all odds, he had won. That moment, she admitted, forced her to question everything. Was her current way of life truly what she wanted? A new possibility, a different path, began to form in her mind. With a confident smirk, the woman known as Ellie proposes a partnership. She suggests that if her power and his were to be combined, they might even possess the strength to defeat the king. In response to her startling claim, Theo demands to know what she means. Before he can process it, she lunges forward, grabbing him as a strange power begins to flare around her, catching him completely by surprise. The energy erupts from their point of contact, swirling violently around Theo in a vortex of light and force. He stands frozen within the maelstrom, his jacket whipping in the unseen wind. He stares down at the phenomenon engulfing him, his eyes wide with disbelief. He realizes this incredible power is hers and inwardly questions what it could possibly be. As the energy subsides, Ellie clings to his arm and cheerfully gives him the answer. She explains that by becoming her vessel, he will temporarily receive the grace of samsara blaze, an ability that allows him to be resurrected from flames no matter how many times he dies. He considers her words. If her claim is true, their combined abilities would be an outrageously powerful advantage. To level up quickly, one must hunt high-level monsters, and with the power to resurrect, the risk of death is nullified. Ellie presses her point, asking if he doesn't agree they would be the most fearsome duo. Theo quietly concedes that it might be so. Despite this, Theo flatly rejects her offer, telling her to pursue her revolution on her own. Stunned, Ellie cries out that she's been rejected again. She demands to know why he would refuse when it means he wouldn't have to die. He turns to her with a serious expression and states his reason plainly. He simply doesn't trust her. It's the same reason as before. Ellie recoils, comically aghast at his bluntness. He elaborates on his distrust, accusing her directly. He claims that she would surely abandon him to the monsters to save herself the moment she was no longer in danger. Flustered, Ellie stammers that she would never, ever do such a thing. His eyes narrow with conviction. In response to his unwavering accusation, Ellie's demeanor shifts from flustered denial to pure fury. She forcefully grabs him by the collar, her patience clearly at its end. He pulls back from her grasp, the ethereal energy around his hand dissipating. He realizes that as long as he resists her mentally, he cannot be possessed. Ellie looks on, surprised by his sudden withdrawal. He takes a moment to reflect, realizing what a tumultuous day it has been. As he stands in thought, Ellie, now flustered, abruptly shouts for him to wait. His mind flashes back over the recent events, leveling up for the first time since his reincarnation, escaping the town, and the life-or-death battle against the Phoenix. He understands that the adventures ahead will surely bring even more varied and intense challenges. With this thought, he takes a firm step forward. Turning his back to her, he declares that he is now beginning his journey of adventure. Behind him, Ellie cheers with delight, causing him to immediately shout for her to stop. Her joyful expression instantly twists into one of panic. With wide, tearful eyes, she desperately begs him to wait. She latches onto his back, wailing that he can't just abandon her after changing her body. She cries that she'll die of boredom and plead for him to take her with him. Annoyed, Theo points out that her pride as a phoenix seems to have completely disappeared. Getting right in his face, she screams back that she doesn't have anything like that anymore. He shoves her back, stating firmly that no matter what she says, he has no intention of befriending a monster. His blunt rejection leaves Ellie momentarily speechless. He then tells her that how she chooses to live is her own decision to make. Despite his words, Ellie continues to cling to his coat, looking up at him with a pout. He attempts to walk away, but Ellie, still clinging to him, shouts defiantly. Since he won't have her, she declares that she will simply follow him on her own terms, vowing to haunt him. With a smirk, he challenges her to try. Flustered, Ellie insists that he is still her enemy. She proclaims that after she defeats the king, she will be the one to devour Theo. Standing under the night sky, Theo counters her threat, boasting that when that time comes, he will be the one to completely subjugate her. Ellie recoils, shouting that such a thing is absolutely impossible. After their tense exchange, a practical matter comes to his mind. He realizes that all his weapons were destroyed in their fight, and that he needs to procure more. He turns to Ellie, asking if she knows the location of any nearby town. She scoffs at the notion, questioning if he really expects her to give him information for free. After a moment's hesitation, she seems to relent, muttering that she might as well talk to herself and let him overhear. Ellie explains that there are two nearby places where he could resupply. The first is a town that, like the one he was just in, has been completely dominated by monsters. The second location, she begins to say, is the werewolf's castle. As she speaks, an imposing stone fortress looms in the distance, bathed in the light of the full moon. Within the castle walls, a hulking, silhouetted figure sits atop a large pile, the wet, crunching sounds of its feeding echoing in the chamber. The creature is revealed to be a massive werewolf, perched on a throne of skulls and bones. It bares its sharp teeth in a savage grin, a piece of gristle caught between them. Theo and Ellie arrive, overlooking a fortified castle by the water. Ellie identifies it as the monster supply base, the werewolf's castle. As Theo stands rigidly, she suggests they should just walk in openly, reasoning that trying to be stealthy against beast-type monsters would be meaningless. He turns to her as she elaborates on her intelligence. The castle's inhabitants are werewolves and kobolds. The ruler is a level 46 werewolf viscount, a titled monster who wouldn't share his territory. This creature possesses an ability called moonlight synthesis, allowing it to regenerate and grow stronger under moonlight. Its minions are level 5 kobolds, who are skilled metalworkers, meaning the castle should be full of weapons. Relaxing his posture, Theo adds to her explanation. He states that kobolds have poor eyesight but highly developed hearing and smell, along with a natural gift for detecting metal. Because of this, he concludes it's best to act like stupid humans who've come to be eaten by approaching completely unarmed. Ellie remarks on how knowledgeable he is about monsters. With a sharp gaze, Theo replies that it's because he has defeated countless werewolves and kobolds in his past life. Information he realizes he has not shared with Fiko before. Her expression shifts, and he internally panics, thinking he might have to fight her again someday because of his slip-up. He quickly tries to deflect, asking if she has already forgotten what she herself told him just yesterday. At this, Ellie puffs up with pride, boasting that of course she remembers. She declares her memory is the best in the demon world, calling herself the memory champion and demanding more praise. Theo quietly thinks to himself that she is quite easy to handle. With the brief exchange concluded, the two of them turn and walk decisively toward the large stone gate of the castle. Their approach does not go unnoticed. Two feline-like guards stationed at the entrance, one with a spear and another with a bow, tense up and ready their weapons. Theo leans towards Ellie, who is trembling beside him. He whispers that he counts 4 of them and that he wants to lure them into a state of carelessness. Shaking, she simply says his name. Her trembling, however, is not from fear. Ellie's eyes sparkle as she stares at the fluffy guards, squealing with delight. She exclaims that they are looking at her and are unbelievably beautiful, much to the bewilderment of the armed kobolds. As Ellie leans against him, the two cat-like guards identify the newcomers as potential food. Theo smirks, realizing his plan has worked perfectly. They have been completely dismissed as harmless fools. The moment their guard is down, he explodes into action. With blinding speed, he closes the distance and drives his fist into the face of the nearest kobold guard, sending the creature flying backward. The guard's body smashes violently against the stone wall of the gatehouse, its neck snapping at an unnatural angle. The second guard can only watch in stunned silence as its companion crumples to the ground. Ellie, however, clasps her hands together in delight, squealing about how cute the guard looks with its broken neck. Theo can only stare back at her, utterly bewildered by her reaction, thinking she'll accept anything. Her strange admiration quickly gives way to a professional assessment. She picks up the fallen guard's sword, noting its fine quality and remarking that kobold weaponry is famous among monsters. He follows suit, quickly arming himself. Bending down, he retrieves 2 swords from the defeated guards, one for each hand. Now properly equipped, he declares himself ready. With a determined grin and a sword in each hand, Theo announces that the assault has officially begun. He charges forward along the castle ramparts, a blur of motion leaving the 2 dispatched guards behind him. As they advance, Ellie observes that the fortress seems surprisingly undefended. Theo explains that it's likely because the inhabitants are nocturnal and wouldn't expect an attack, though he seems to have his own doubts. His theory is immediately put to the test as a volley of arrows flies towards him. He reacts instantly, skillfully deflecting the projectiles with his newly acquired swords and looking up toward the source of the attack. He faces the castle walls, his attention caught by the cat-like figures of kobold archers peering from the rooftops and nearby bushes. From a high vantage point, one of the archers takes a steady aim directly at him, preparing to loose an arrow. As arrows begin to fly, Ellie shouts that they are likely coated in poison. Theo grimly agrees, noting that while the sheer force of the volley is powerful, the attackers themselves are merely level 5. He deflects the incoming projectiles with his sword. He counters the barrage by invoking wind manipulation, then unleashes a spinning attack he calls Wind King's Sword, generating a vortex that sends the arrows scattering harmlessly around him. Ellie stares in amazement, identifying his ability as magic color vision. Theo explains that he is ignoring the weaker foes to prioritize his true target, the werewolf. He knows that unlike the darkness-loving kobolds, werewolves are drawn to moonlight, meaning a large, lit window will reveal its lair. She asks if he's found it, and he confirms, looking toward the castle's highest floor. When Ellie points out that the main entrance is in the other direction, Theo confidently replies that his chosen path is the correct one. To begin his unconventional assault, he activates a skill called adhesion, causing the sole of his shoe to stick fast to the vertical stone wall. He then begins running straight up the castle wall, defying gravity. Ellie shouts that his abilities are unfair. Internally, Theo identifies the skill as material enhancement, reasoning that it is far wiser than attempting to fight through the heavily guarded main entrance. Reaching his destination, he smashes through the large window at the top of the tower. Inside, a large, hunched-over figure is startled by the sudden, violent intrusion as Ellie follows him into the room. The figure reveals itself to be a massive werewolf, surrounded by a pile of human bones. Annoyed, it growls, "You've been noisy for a while now." Theo stares back, identifying the creature as the lord of the castle. The beast was in the middle of a gruesome meal, its powerful jaws crushing bone and flesh with a sickening crunch. He held the severed leg of a previous victim in one massive hand, glaring down at the intruder. With a roar, the werewolf demanded to know who dared to interrupt his meal. Before an answer could be given, the werewolf dismissed his own question with a grumble. He muttered to himself, wondering aloud what his kobold underlings had been doing to allow such an intrusion. His gaze then snapped back to Theo, a predatory grin spreading across his snout. The beast sneered, remarking that he had just been thinking his current meal wasn't enough, and praised the nice service of a new victim offering himself up to be eaten. As the werewolf loomed, a new voice called out, "Hey." Theo's eyes shifted toward the sound, his expression hardening. He found the situation deeply unpleasant and internally debated whether he should just kill the monster quickly. The voice belonged to Ellie McDowell. She stood nearby, addressing not Theo, but the hulking beast. "Hey, you fluffy thing," she said casually. Both Theo and the werewolf stared at her, the latter letting out a confused, "Huh." The large werewolf looms over Theo, declaring the human is his prey. Stepping between them, Ellie expresses her disgust, telling the beast not to breathe his foul breath on her. She dismisses him as a lower-class spirit, asserting that Theo is her prize. The werewolf snarls, offended by her words. He demands to know why a lower-class spirit is present and who she thinks she is talking to, announcing that he is Lord Gald, a werewolf of noble rank. Her expression remains one of utter contempt as she mutters a question, dismissing him as a mere small fry. Her insult finds its mark. Gald's face contorts with pure rage, while Ellie glares back, her own anger simmering as she silently questions who he thinks he is addressing. He roars, now identifying her as an enemy. He demands to know what she is and if she intends to side with the human. From behind her, Theo speaks up, confirming that it seems to be the case. He calmly suggests that the prey should belong to whoever successfully hunts it first. Ellie smirks, challenging Gald to try and take Theo if he can. Theo and Ellie exchange a sidelong glance, a silent understanding passing between them. He recognizes the look in her eyes. It's an unspoken command to go and deal with the werewolf. He turns his full attention to the werewolf. Theo calmly asks how many humans Gald has eaten today. The werewolf grins, confirming he devoured one whole person and aggressively asks what business it is of Theo's. A confident smile plays on Theo's lips as he proposes they play a game. Gald seems intrigued but scoffs, telling Theo he is free to decline if he's afraid of losing. The werewolf erupts in furious laughter at the sheer audacity. He bellows, questioning what Theo just said, roaring that there is no way a level 1 human can possibly defeat a level 46 werewolf. Unfazed by the werewolf's fury, Theo calmly formulates his plan. He internally notes that beast-type monsters are simple-minded, making them easy to deal with. The rules for his proposed game, he decides, will be simple. He steps forward, holding 2 identical short swords, and addresses the towering creature. First, he begins gesturing with the blades of these 2 swords. Without finishing the thought, he tosses one of the swords high into the air, its polished surface catching the light as it spins. As Gald's gaze instinctively follows the airborne weapon, Theo lunges into the opening. He completes his challenge, declaring that with the other sword, he will hunt the werewolf. The strike connects with blinding speed. For a brief moment, Gald stands motionless before his head slides cleanly from his shoulders, his expression frozen in disbelief as it tumbles to the ground. The massive body crashes to the stone floor. Standing over the severed head, Theo looks down and coolly asks, "Simple, wasn't it?" Watching from the side, Ellie smiles. She remarks that this world is about survival of the fittest, just as he'd claimed, and notes how interestingly he dispatched his foe. She then asks if he has any sense of the aesthetics of battle, to which Theo bluntly replies, "No." She elaborates on his strategy, explaining that beast-type monsters instinctively track moving objects. By forcing Gald to look up, his own snout created a fatal blind spot. While admitting it relied on Gald's carelessness, she playfully calls Theo a cheater. From the floor, the werewolf's head sputters in outrage. Gald's head glares up at them, roaring about what makes them think they've won. Ellie simply smirks, dismissing the once mighty lord as nothing more than a small fry. The werewolf's eyes begin to glow as he reveals his trump card. He shouts that werewolves possess regenerative abilities and a special gift to convert moonlight into magical power. His ability to still speak, he boasts, is proof of his power. Theo looks on, genuinely surprised that the severed head can still talk. Gald's severed head continues its taunt, explaining that as long as it can bathe in moonlight, it is practically immortal. With a source of magic, it can regenerate without limit. The werewolf's head trails off, mentioning the moon, but Theo calmly interjects, pointing out the obvious. It is daytime. In response, Gald's head lets out a furious roar, screaming that the moon still shines, even during the day. Before he can continue his tirade, a blade plunges through the top of his skull. Holding the impaled head, Theo calmly confirms that the moon does seem to be out, his expression unreadable. He smirks, realizing that with the blade obstructing its vision, the werewolf can no longer see what is directly before it. A wave of panic washes over Gald as a horrifying realization dawns. He is being consumed. The werewolf's mind reels in fury. He refuses to be underestimated by a human, whom he considers mere food. He internally screams that he is a noble, far superior and stronger than any human could ever be. He boasts of his status as a level 46 werewolf, questioning how he could possibly lose to what he perceives as level 1 human livestock. His train of thought halts as he recalls a detail he had neglected to share. Theo coolly asks if his own level might be higher. As he speaks, the crest on the back of his hand begins to glow intensely. A luminous orb materializes before him, displaying the number level 58. Gald's head stares in utter disbelief, while a confused Ellie asks Fico what is happening. His glowing level crest remains a point of shock for the impaled werewolf, who can only stammer in disbelief. Ellie, however, looks at Theo with sharp curiosity, asking why he is directing his questions to her. Her confusion quickly shifts to a stunning realization. She wonders if he isn't some low-level ghost, but a legendary phoenix. A faint smile touches her lips as she thinks to herself that he has finally noticed. Theo ignores her, his attention fixed on the terrified Gald. He acknowledges that the werewolf didn't die from the first killing blow, as expected of a phoenix, but then leans in closer, asking if Gald knows the crucial difference. His face twists into a cold, confident smirk as he delivers the grim punchline. A werewolf, unlike a phoenix, simply dies when it's killed. The finality of those words drains all hope from the werewolf, his eye wide with pure, unadulterated terror. Theo raises his blade once more, casually asking if Gald is finished with his last words. The werewolf can only stammer out a desperate plea to wait. His desperation turns to a frantic warning. He screams that they are close to the demon world, and that if he is killed, the king will be alerted immediately. The threat is utterly ignored. Roaring the name of a new technique, Thunderhand, Theo plunges his fist, now crackling with raw electricity, directly into the werewolf's head. From the cover of tall grass, a massive, horned white tiger growls, flanked by numerous cat-like guards. It watches a distant carriage, where Theo suggests to Ellie that they should head out once his wounds have healed more, a plan he intends to keep secret. The beast seems to ponder the bond it observes between the two figures. The focus shifts abruptly to the werewolf. Gald, his face a mask of fury. He roars a warning, declaring that they are near the demon world and that killing him will elevate the victor to the status of king. In response to the threat, Theo thrusts his hand forward, unleashing a powerful spell. Volti Thunderhand, he shouts as a blast of pure lightning erupts, striking Gald and sending him crashing backward through a large glass window. He stands firm, sword in one hand, while raising the other to deflect an unseen projectile with a sharp clang. The werewolf, Gald, is momentarily dazed, a small puff of smoke rising from his head. He then glances down at the back of his left hand, where the crest glows faintly. He notes his new status, level 59, and wonders with slight disappointment why it only increased by a single level. He sighs, reasoning that werewolves must be considered a lower-rank foe. Furthermore, he acknowledges the reality that the higher his level becomes, the more difficult it is to advance. The scene shifts to a direct confrontation. With Ellie at his side, Theo questions the subdued werewolf. "How many humans did you eat today?" he asks. Gald smirks, asking if Theo is angry because his own kind were eaten. Theo clarifies that his question was a tactic, a preparation for a prolonged battle. He explains his strategy. Even for a creature with regenerative abilities like a werewolf, if its full stomach is ruptured, the contents scatter inside its body. When the organ regenerates, the foreign matter remains, inflicting intense pain. This, he concludes, turns their own ability into a crippling weakness. His expression hardens as he reflects internally. This world is not kind enough to allow him the luxury of grieving for strangers. He turns his attention to a new group of cat-like guards blocking his path. A large one among them speaks, mocking him for willingly coming to be eaten. A smirk plays on Theo's lips. Well then, he declares, it's time to level up. He unleashes a powerful burst of energy, blasting the cat-like guards before him. As he fights, he narrowly dodges a volley of arrows aimed his way, the shafts zipping past him in the heat of battle. The chaotic melee continues, with Theo clashing against more of the guards. From a safe distance, Ellie McDowell watches the spectacle with a smirk, while another captive looks on with concern. After the last foe falls, he stands panting from exhaustion. With a final, weary motion, he realizes the effort has paid off, thinking to himself that this victory has brought him to level 60. As he catches his breath, he notes that there seems to be no sign of the remaining enemy forces. Ellie approaches, teasing him for being so weak and tired after fighting mere kobolds. Theo retorts that it's only because she was getting in his way, but she dismisses his complaint, stating that it's a waste not to enjoy a fight you are guaranteed to win. He reminds her sternly that she seems to have forgotten their true objective was to procure supplies, accusing her of making him expend unnecessary effort. Their search leads them to an armory filled with weapons. Theo is impressed by the sight and picks up a large, ornate sword, wondering aloud if it's a magic sword. Ellie identifies it as an immortal magic sword, explaining that a protective enchantment keeps its edge from dulling easily. Theo agrees that it's a fine weapon, and she suggests they take 4 of them. As he straps the 4 swords to his back, Ellie adds a crucial detail. The swords are still consumable items. When used against monsters, they will break quickly. Now equipped with a new cloak and a sack of supplies, Theo prepares to depart. He turns to Ellie, calling her Fico, and thanks her, admitting that the supplies were acquired thanks to her information. She seems taken aback by his gratitude. Her surprise quickly turns to flustered anger. She shouts at him, reminding him that they are enemies. Unfazed, Theo asks what she's doing. She deflects, claiming she's looking for food, specifically fresh human flesh. She leans in close to Theo, remarking that he smells even more delicious than before. While she wouldn't mind eating him, she says she has other ideas. Annoyed, Theo tells her to get to the point and questions how she, in her spiritual form, could possibly eat anything at all. In response to his skepticism, she flashes a confident, sly smile, assuring him that there's indeed a way. That night, their path through a snowy forest is blocked by a massive, monstrous boar. The beast, marked with strange, glowing symbols, lets out a low, guttural growl. The boar paws at the ground, snorting aggressively as it prepares to charge. As the creature readies its attack, Ellie calmly notes that it's coming. Beside her, Theo simply affirms her observation. Theo leaps forward to intercept the charging beast, shouting the name of his attack. Fuse Haruta, Wind King's sword. With a single, clean stroke of his blade, he slices the massive boar in 2. Ellie watches, stunned by the display of power, asking what he just did. The 2 halves of the beast crash to the ground. As Ellie asks if he called for her, Theo stands over his kill and dismisses her, saying it was nothing. With the threat dispatched, Ellie announces that it's time to cook. A large leg from the slain boar is laid out on a rock, alongside pouches of herbs and rock salt, the ingredients for their meal. Theo immediately begins preparations, skillfully chopping the meat and adding the various ingredients to a pot to begin cooking their hard-won meal. He announced with a flourish that the meal was complete. Beside him, the spirit Ellie's eyes went wide with anticipation. The pot contained a steaming lance boar soup, adventure style. He brought a spoonful to his lips, and upon tasting it, his entire body shuddered from the intense flavor. The shudder gave way to a broad smile as he exclaimed that the taste was wonderfully nostalgic. Annoyed, Ellie sharply called out his name, demanding his attention. She reminded him that he was supposed to be making a delicious meal for her, as thanks for the information she'd provided. Holding the spoon, Theo conceded that she was right. Her frustration then erupted. She shouted that in her current state, she couldn't eat it anyway, and demanded he undo the possession of his body. As she tried to take control, he resisted, realizing she intended to use his body to eat. Despite his struggle, the flavor was transmitted to her, and her spiritual form's cheeks puffed out with delight. His hand trembled as he pulled the spoon back. He told her to wait and not try to eat everything, reminding her that she was still in the middle of her meal. The rest, he declared, would come at a price. He argued that it wasn't fair for only her to feel full. He threatened to end the possession unless she provided information, stating that it felt wrong for him not to be able to eat himself. After a moment of thought, Ellie's expression softened into agreement. She accepted his terms, then asked what information, exactly, he wanted from her. His gaze became distant and determined. He explained his next objective, to find a place where he could level up properly, as fighting weak opponents was no longer an effective way to grow stronger. In response to his request, Ellie laid out their only option. She explained that to get stronger, they would have to fight the titled monster that manages the nearby town. However, she trailed off, a note of caution in her voice. He acknowledged her point, voicing his own concern. He reasoned that attacking a town would make them stand out, making it easier for pursuers to find them. Ellie's expression hardened as she revealed a critical piece of information. She declared that he was getting closer to the demon world, the domain of the king, and noted that even the werewolf had mentioned something to that effect. The demon world is a forbidding realm, a territory where humans cannot survive. Powerful monsters hold dominion, and the very air is saturated with a dense, palpable, magical energy. The logic became clear in his mind. No human would willingly venture near such a place, which explained the lack of pursuers so far. He realized, however, that causing a disturbance could attract powerful enemies, perhaps even on par with Ellie herself. Ellie concluded that they should avoid attracting them, but he countered with fierce determination. Grinning, he declared that he had no time for subtlety. He would devour and consume anyone or anything that dared to stand in his path. Seeing his resolve, Ellie provided the promised information. She pointed towards a large farm she had spotted from the sky earlier. He asked if a larger town meant higher-level monsters, and she confirmed it was so. With a destination set, he decided they would head there at once. After 3 days of travel, during which they gained some levels, they finally arrived. He was taken aback by the sheer size of the place, remarking that he'd heard it was big, but this was beyond his expectations. They stood before a towering, spiked fence that enclosed the town. He stared up at the imposing barrier, remarking that it was much larger than he had anticipated. From a higher vantage point, the full scale of the settlement was clear. It was indeed a massive, fortified town. He stared at the barrier, noting that for all the talk, it was merely an iron fence. It seemed there were no guards, making a breakout look simple. Ellie, however, suggested that such designs often reflect the personal taste of the one in charge, a concept he found bizarre. She elaborated, explaining that as long as the place was managed effectively, any method was permissible. Her words trailed off as Theo began to process the implications of that statement. His gaze drifted back to the spiked fence as the realization struck him. The lack of security wasn't an oversight, but a display of the manager's absolute confidence that no human could ever escape. Ellie cheerfully broke his concentration, declaring her theory that the manager must be an avian-type monster, given the fence's resemblance to a birdcage. She insisted she was right, being avian herself. Theo was taken aback. Most monsters were nocturnal, but avian ones were active during the day. If she was right, their timing was terrible. Deciding it didn't matter, he resolved to defeat the monster regardless. With a shout of Wind King Leg, he summoned a gale beneath his feet and vaulted over the high fence in a single bound. He landed on the other side, only to be stunned into silence. Ellie was already there, waiting for him. She casually noted his successful infiltration and stated that their next task was to find the monster. As they moved further in, however, he stopped dead. Before him was not a prison camp, but a pristine, beautiful town street bustling with people. His eyes scanned the inhabitants. They were well-dressed, healthy, and appeared entirely content as they went about their lives. He observed that even their clothes were of good quality, but the peaceful scene filled Ellie with a creeping dread. She whispered a horrifying theory, that these humans weren't prisoners, but had been fully domesticated, like livestock. Theo turned to question her, but she continued, noting that by this town's standards, even he looked shabby. The realization struck him how different this was from his own captivity, as the well-dressed townspeople looked down on him with disdain. He stood beside Ellie, a low, unsettling hum seeming to emanate from the very air around them. Ellie voiced his own thoughts, murmuring that while the town was certainly beautiful, something about it felt false, deceitful. Her eyes then fixed on the inhabitants, a sudden realization striking her as she watched them interact. The source of her shock became clear. The townspeople, a young girl, an old man, another young man, all wore pleasant smiles. Their mouths moved as if in conversation, yet an eerie silence hung in the air. No one was speaking. Not a single word was being uttered. The chilling realization struck Theo with full force. He stared, aghast, at the silent, smiling populace, the unnatural scene causing a tremor of dread to run through him. "What is this town?" he roared into the silent street, his voice echoing in the unnerving quiet. A quiet, windswept town sits atop a coastal hill overlooking the sea. The air is still, the only movement suggested by the breeze. Within the town streets, the people are unnervingly silent. An old man, a young boy, and others stand motionless, their expressions blank and their mouths shut. Walking through these silent streets, Theo and Ellie take in a strange atmosphere. He turns to her, his voice low, questioning the oppressive quiet that hangs over the entire place. She explains that to the townspeople, he looks like a proper monster. She adds that ordinary humans are no match for even low-level spirits, implying his very presence is terrifying them into silence. He concedes her point, but looks towards the quiet buildings, remarking that from his perspective, the unnaturally still people are far creepier. As they walk, Ellie points out the presence of several food stalls, suggesting they get something to eat. But before she can finish, Theo is struck by a sudden realization, his body tensing as a familiar scent hits him. He freezes, his eyes wide with disbelief. "This scent is," he exclaims, his sudden intensity startling Ellie. He wonders to himself how something from so long ago could possibly exist here and now. Without another word, he bolts forward, drawn by the scent toward a specific stall. The thought races through his mind, to think that that actually exists. He slams his hands on the counter, leaning in towards the startled elderly vendor. Do you have anything sweet?" he asks with desperate urgency. The vendor's expression hardens. He sternly rebukes Theo, telling him not to refer to the sacred sweet with such a frivolous name. Ellie, having caught up, is bewildered, questioning why calling it a sweet makes no sense. Theo's face contorts in frustration. Not only is the man silent, but he doesn't even seem to comprehend what he's saying. He stood firm before the stall owner as Ellie spoke up, asking if the man had any of the sweet, regardless of its name. Startled, the vendor confirmed he did, and Theo immediately demanded, "Then get it ready for me." As the vendor turned away, Theo observed another transaction, realizing that ration cards serve as currency in this town. The man then turned back to him, ready to state the price. The stall owner's face fell, asking if Theo didn't want anything after all. Seeing the man's distress, Theo quickly tried to negotiate, offering a trade with the boar meat and other supplies he carried. To his surprise, the vendor simply gave him the item for free. Ellie leaned in and whispered that this is what happens when he walks around with her. The townsfolk become so terrified they assume he must be a monster too. She smirked, adding that, in other words, he was reaping the sweet rewards thanks to her presence. Theo quietly urged her stop. Before them on the table sat the prize, a single, perfect caramel top pudding on a small plate. Gazing at the dessert, Theo was struck by a powerful realization. This was their first reunion in 18 years. He saw Ellie crying silently beside him. Understanding her tears were because she had been reincarnated. Overwhelmed, he confessed how long he had wanted to see her. His heart pounded in his chest. He pressed his hands together over the plate, trying to force himself to calm down. He remained still for a moment, hands clasped as if in prayer, his profile etched with deep, contained emotion as he stared at the pudding. As he picked up his spoon, Ellie noted that someone named Fico was saying something, but she urged Theo to ignore him. Her eyes widened in surprise as Theo, his focus absolute, prepared to take the first bite. He sat, determined, focusing every single nerve on the sweet thing held carefully in his hands. This moment was everything. With a trembling hand, he brought the spoon closer, his expression a mixture of anticipation and profound sorrow. The spoon dipped into the dessert, the first taste of a memory he had waited 18 years to experience again. But as the flavor hit his tongue, his mind was violently thrown back in time. He was a child again, kneeling over a dying friend, desperately trying to feed him from a spoon as the life faded from his eyes. The shock of the memory jolted him back to the present, causing him to choke and sputter. He looked down, confused, wondering what was right. His confusion turned to alarm as he saw Ellie on the ground beside him. He demanded to know who she was and where she had fallen from, but his panic was truly for the lost dessert. "Where's the sweet thing?" he yelled. In place of the precious pudding lay nothing but a small pile of ordinary, worthless rocks. He rose to his feet, the vast, empty space around him mirroring the hollowness that had just been carved into his soul. The devastating truth crashed down upon him, and a raw, agonized scream tore from his throat. Ellie watched, stunned, as he let out a heart-wrenching cry, a sound of pure loss unlike any she had heard before. He was not ready to accept this cruel reality. He remains on his knees, his scream having faded into a hollow silence. Staring at the worthless rocks before him, he extends a trembling hand, his voice a low murmur as he asks the ghost of his memory, "You can still eat more, can't you?" Before he can process his grief, a sudden, sharp cracking sound shatters the air. His eyes snap wide, the despair within them instantly replaced by sharp-edged shock. The source of the noise is a group of small, ghoulish creatures chattering amongst themselves. One wonders aloud if Theo has finally broken, but another creature quickly refutes it, stating, "Not yet." They press closer, their dark, empty eyes fixed on him. One, with a malicious grin, eagerly asks the others if they can continue playing, its voice filled with cruel anticipation. Their twisted game is already underway nearby. The creatures surround another human captive, who cries out in terror as they close in, a soft, sadistic chuckle echoing from one of the monsters. The torment escalates into a frenzy of violence. The creatures swarm the captive, tearing at him with their claws as a monstrous mouth gapes wide in the background, as if in silent, gleeful approval. Through the chaos, a single, low voice cuts the air. Still kneeling, Theo looks up, his tone devoid of all emotion, as he simply says, "Hey." His word acts like a physical blow, bringing the creatures to an abrupt halt. They turn their heads in unison, their large, dark eyes fixing on him with shared surprise. A wave of unease passes through the monsters. They mutter about their cruel pastimes, ripping off fingernails, poking out eyeballs, tearing off limbs. One of them voices its irritation, stating that it doesn't like that a human is talking. One of the dark-haired creatures steps forward, its confidence returning. It declares its intent to eat Theo, all while listening to his beautiful screams. Theo meets its gaze, his face a mask of cold, silent fury. He calmly faced the creature, his expression unreadable. "Right now, did you say you're going to eat me?" he asked, his voice low and steady. The goblin and the other captive looked on, startled by his composure. Before the creature could process the question, Theo corrected its assumption. "It's the other way around," he stated, his hand blurring into motion. His open palm struck the goblin's head with a sharp crack, sending it reeling backward. A predatory grin spread across his face, his eyes glinting with a chilling light. "Me?" he asked rhetorically, clenching his fist. "I'm going to eat you guys." He then invoked a spell, Kazimidori, whirling windbird. A violent vortex of wind erupted from the ground, engulfing the small creatures. The goblins cried out in shock and anger, one screaming, "You filthy human," while another called him a bastard. As the whirlwind raged, he calmly observed the glowing magical sigil on his hand. He mused that the spell was quite powerful for a level 13 ability, wondering if this was the power of a blessing. He concluded that at his current level, even beginner magic like wind control was more than enough to handle these foes. The wind intensified, trapping the goblins within a maelstrom. The spell dissipated, revealing that one of the creatures had been completely obliterated. Another shrieked in terror and fled, while the captive who had been tormented earlier watched in stunned disbelief. Theo coolly noted, "Now, then, one more to go." The last remaining goblin was caught under a crushing force. Its body slammed into the stone floor with a heavy thud. From a safe distance, the pointy-eared goblin that had escaped screamed in fury and fear. "Damn it, you humans! If Lady Siren finds out about this, you're done for." Theo's gaze sharpened at the mention of a new name. Lady Siren, he thought, his interest piqued. He confirms his familiarity with the name Siren, recalling from his past life that they were rumored to be seabird monsters who lured ships onto reefs with their enchanting voices. The woman with twin tails seems surprised that he knows of them. Turning his attention back to the captured goblin, he demands to know where this Siren person is. The creature panics, refusing to speak about Lady Siren, insisting it has been ordered not to. Theo coldly asks if that order is more important than its life. The goblin continues to resist, its voice trembling with fear. It shouts that it could never defy Lady Siren's orders, beginning to speak of her grace as the reason for its unwavering loyalty. Suddenly, the creature cries out in agony, clutching its head. It screams for the pain to stop, insisting it hasn't revealed anything. Theo looks on, startled by the unseen force attacking his captive. The goblin's screams cease as it collapses to the ground, lifeless. Nearby, the woman with twin tails drops to her knees, her face a mask of terror as she begs Lady Siren for forgiveness. Theo is stunned into silence by the sudden, remote execution. His attention is drawn away by a faint groan. He sees the other captive, the light-haired young man, stirring on the floor. Theo wonders if this is the power of a siren's blessing, but quickly dismisses the thought, noting there are no sirens nearby. He approaches the conscious captive. The woman with twin tails observes that the man is still alive, speculating that their captors must have avoided his vital organs to eat him slowly for sport. Theo leans in, asking the man if he's all right. The man slowly comes to, groggily asking about the harpies. Theo reassures him, explaining that he has already killed them, and that there are other humans who can still speak. The rescue man is shocked to hear that Theo defeated the monsters. Staring up from the floor, the man's eyes are wide with disbelief. He weakly asks if Theo is even human, muttering that such a feat should be impossible. In response, Theo smiles and introduces himself, stating he came from outside the town. The woman beside him proudly declares her own name, Fifi Rebirthday, the Proud Phoenix. He dismisses Fifi as a mere accessory, telling the grateful captive not to mind her. The man, weak but relieved to have met Theo before dying, seems to understand. Before the man can fade, Theo places a hand on his chest, a bright light flaring as he commands it to heal. He sternly tells the man not to die mid-conversation and to listen to his final request. The healing energy works instantly. The captive sits up, stunned, exclaiming that his wounds are gone, as if by magic. He marvels that a human is using such power, while Theo mutters to himself that explaining this will be a constant nuisance. Fully recovered, the man expresses his gratitude, but laments that he has nothing to offer as payment. Theo considers this, stating that he might accept the man's request, depending on the details and conditions. As the man prepares to explain his request, Fifi pops up between them. She cheerfully declares that the reward can be paid in sweet things. The man is taken aback, asking if that is truly sufficient. Their discussion is suddenly cut short by the loud, metallic clang of a bell echoing through the area, startling both Theo and the captive. The bell tolls again, and the captive's face fills with dread. He cries out in panic, realizing how late it has become. In response to the captive's alarm, both he and Theo turn their gaze upward, searching the sky for the source of the commotion. Their view expands to a bustling town square, where vendors and citizens all look up in fear as a figure descends from above. The figure is a woman with angelic wings and a staff, floating down gracefully. Watching from below is another woman with pointed ears and a cruel, knowing smile, as feathers drift through the air around her. As the siren appeared, the captive beside Theo began to tremble uncontrollably. He stammered in terror that the songbird ceremony was about to begin. Theo, however, remained outwardly composed, identifying the being with a simple, grim statement. It was a siren. His eyes narrowed with grim resolve. He knew it was time. He suddenly recoiled, clutching his head as a powerful voice echoed, not just in the square, but directly within his mind. The realization struck him instantly. This was bad. The voice continued its chilling summons, commanding its little pets to gather. Theo's expression filled with a mixture of pain and alarm as the words pierced his thoughts. Beside him, Ellie McDowell watched his pained reaction with a knowing look. She remarked that he, too, had heard it, confirming that the dreaded hour had arrived. Theo could only stare back, sweating, the shock of the mental intrusion evident on his face. The voice, now identified with certainty, delivered its final, ominous proclamation. Terror was upon them. It was the voice of the siren. A startled Theo finds Lady Siren suddenly beside him. With a smug grin, she addresses him and the other captives as her dear little pets, beginning to explain the nature of the siren's blessing. As Siren's voice hangs in the air, Fifi leans close to Theo's ear, whispering that he must have heard it, the siren's voice. She continues her explanation, offering to share some valuable information, and then issues a single, resonant command to the unseen masses. Gather. Fifi reveals the power's true name, absolute royal voice, Zetai Ose. It is the power to manipulate anyone at a level lower than the user, an authority demonstrated by the image of a commanding winged figure. Upon hearing this, Theo realizes why there was no need for guards. A single command like "don't run" would be enough to control all the humans. He chides Fifi for not telling him sooner, but she retorts that it wouldn't have been any fun to simply give him the answer. Their exchange is cut short as Theo's attention is abruptly pulled towards the street below by a sudden commotion. In the town square, a massive crowd of captives, their expressions blank and movements synchronized, march forward in a trance-like state. Watching the procession, Theo grows anxious. He understands that everyone is being compelled to walk, and at this rate, he too will be forced to join them. He desperately wonders about their destination. As if in answer, the light-haired young man beside him trembles and utters the name of the event they are being herded towards, the songbird ceremony. He explains further, his voice laced with terror. In this town, the siren whimsically chooses a songbird, someone she believes will let out a beautiful scream. The ritual to unveil this unfortunate person is about to begin. As they were led onward, a sudden, chilling realization struck Theo. He turned to Fifi, asking if the pervasive silence of the townspeople was a desperate attempt to avoid the sacrifice. Fifi confirmed his dark suspicion, specifying they were talking about the songbird. The young man with light hair overheard, his face pale. He explained the grim logic. By remaining silent, the monsters couldn't judge whether a person might produce a beautiful scream. Fifi elaborated on the fate of those chosen, explaining that humans selected as songbirds are caged like pets, their existence reduced to nothing but screaming. The young man then confessed his own terror, admitting he was horrified of becoming a sacrifice himself. His fear, however, was not for himself. With anguish twisting his features, he revealed that his little sister, Marie, had been taken by the sirens just that morning. Theo listened, his expression hardening as he processed the grim news. He continued, explaining that he had wanted to ask for Theo's help to save her, but now it was too late. His sister, he revealed with finality, had been chosen as the songbird. The full weight of the situation crashed down on Theo. He now understood they had no choice but to become spectators for the horrifying ritual of the songbird. Resigned to their fate, their footsteps fell in a grim, shuffling procession. The line of prisoners moved with a funereal slowness, their faces blank with dread as they were led from the dungeons. They emerged into a vast, open-air coliseum, its stone tiers empty and waiting for the grim spectacle to begin. In the center of the arena floor stood a single cage. Inside, a young girl trembled. It was Marie. From the stands, her brother could only watch in helpless agony, whispering her name. Her mind drifts back to a simpler time. She recalls her brother's worried voice, telling her it was fine that she loved singing, but that she must never do so where monsters could hear. She had cheerfully dismissed his concerns, calling him a worrywart. The memory is shattered by her brother's desperate cry in the present. Elsewhere in the arena, Theo feels his body move against his will, compelled by an unseen force to raise his head and watch the grim spectacle. His gaze is drawn toward a grand throne overlooking the arena. Seated upon it is a woman with light hair, in twin tails and pointed ears, observing the proceedings with an air of absolute authority. Her attention settles upon Theo, who is revealed to be trapped within his own cage. She remarks that she likes the look in his eyes. Though he is terrified, he has not yet lost hope. A cruel smile spreads across her face, and she leans forward, a strange symbol visible on her extended tongue. She declares her anticipation to hear a beautiful scream from him. As she stares, she seems to perceive his status. Level 65. Theo's eyes are wide with pure terror. She continues her musings, explaining that people like him truly make her want to hear them scream. Not a sound forced by a command, but a beautiful one that leaks from the depths of the soul. Her cruel reverie is interrupted by a clear voice from the central cage. Marie, seeing small bird-like creatures now landing on Theo's cage, boldly demands that he be released. The woman on the throne pauses, her lips parting as she prepares to deliver her judgment. She then addresses Theo directly, her voice echoing. She releases him from all royal commands, granting him permission to resist the monsters, to flee for his life, and even to hold onto hope. As Theo stood poised for battle, Fifi's cruel game extended to another captive. Before a young girl with light hair, a sword materialized on the floor. Fifi's voice echoed, commanding her to take the weapon and struggle for her amusement. The girl's eyes widened in horror as the realization struck her. She was simply being toyed with a puppet in this sadistic spectacle. Her expression hardened into one of grim resolve. Biting her thumb, she steeled herself for what she had to do. A dark thought formed in her mind. With a weapon now in reach, perhaps she could end her own life. From her throne, Fifi observed, musing that while suicide was normally forbidden, this was a special case. She considered that dying now would be a better fate for the girl than becoming one of her songbirds, destined to scream in agony until death. The cold steel of the sword lay on the stone floor, a silent, grim invitation. Believing it to be an easier escape, the girl's hand slowly reached for the hilt. Before her fingers could close around it, a desperate voice shattered the silence, crying out her name, Marie. From a nearby cage, Theo stared at her, his face a mask of panic. She froze, her eyes widening in utter disbelief. Looking toward the sound, she whispered, "Big brother." Theo stood perfectly still and upright in his cage, completely unaffected. His friend stared in astonishment, asking how he was okay. From her throne, Fifi watched in shock, realizing that the siren's command had no effect on him and wondering how he managed to resist. As Theo stands his ground, Marie explains to the other young man that their safety is thanks to him. The young man, however, looks on with a tense and uncertain expression. She then turns her gaze back toward the source of the commotion, her expression filled with concern. The other captive, however, remains fixated on Theo's defiance, his face a mask of pure shock as he internally questions how it was even possible. His astonishment is overshadowed by Fifi's simmering rage. Her amusement has vanished, replaced by irritation as she clenches her fists. Beside her, Theo stands ready, his own hands balled in anticipation. He then turns to Fifi, asking if she is all right now. She confirms that her command did, in fact, work, which only deepens the other young man's confusion. He begins to explain his actions, stating that while he cannot defy the siren's command to gather, he was lucky that the order was loose. There were no specific conditions on when he had to go there. He continues, revealing that he used self-suggestion to reinterpret the command, allowing him to postpone the gathering until later. Fifi looks away with a pout, remarking on how boring it is and that she had wanted to tease him more. The other captive is stunned by this explanation, admitting it seems far too difficult for him. Theo calmly replies that a normal human wouldn't be able to do it so easily, revealing he's dealt with mind control abilities many times in his past life. This revelation prompts the young man to desperately plead for Theo to stop him as well. Understanding immediately, Theo agrees and delivers a swift, precise chop to the back of his neck, knocking him unconscious. Moments later, the captive is bound securely. Theo assures him he'll stay that way until the danger passes, then immediately shifts focus. He asks the young man, now identified as Harry, if his sister was taken away. As he listened, Harry explained his failed rescue attempt. He had tried to save his sister, Marie, earlier, believing the surveillance was lax enough for them to switch places. He reasoned that the sirens couldn't tell human males and females apart, so they wouldn't notice him taking her place in the cage. He continued, recounting that the harpies discovered him at the cage. Just before he could free his sister, he was paralyzed by the don't resist monster's command he was under, rendering him unable to move. His story finished, Harry desperately pleaded with Theo to save Marie before she is turned into a songbird. He begged Theo to swap places with her, offering himself as a substitute. Theo's response was blunt. He refused. Crestfallen, Harry insisted he didn't care what happened to himself. But when Theo clarified that wasn't his meaning, Harry tried to save face, muttering that it was fine and had nothing to do with him anyway. With an intense gaze, Theo specified that the reason for his refusal was not the rescue itself, but Harry's terrible plan. He then declared his true intention. They were going to slay the siren. That way, he explained, neither Harry nor his sister would have to be sacrificed. The declaration left Harry utterly stunned. Harry immediately cried out that such a feat was impossible. Fifi stepped forward, agreeing with him and telling Theo that he should stop as well. She reminded Theo of the information she had previously shared about the siren's blessing, its absolute power of command over anyone at a lower level. Fifi laid out the stark reality. The siren is level 65, whereas Theo is only level 61. She argued that even if he defeated every harpy in town, he still wouldn't reach the required level. She suggested it would be better to level up outside before taking on the siren. Nearby, Harry lamented that while his rebirth flame could handle his body dying, it was useless against mental manipulation. Theo, however, was not swayed. He looked at Fifi with a knowing smirk, telling her not to play dumb. He stated plainly that it was no use trying to test him. He stands firm, declaring that he doesn't live his life running away. Fifi smiles, expressing her approval. This is the kind of human she expected. She admits that if he had run from a mere siren, she would have eaten him herself. Harry, watching the exchange, encourages Theo, telling him to try, as he'll just keep slaughtering him repeatedly, a grim reference to his own ability. The tense exchange prompts Harry to ask about the exact nature of their relationship. Theo turns to Fifi and bluntly states that they are enemies. Harry observes that for enemies, they seem to get along surprisingly well, noting they are in sync again. Theo quickly refutes this, insisting it's not true and declaring that he will fight the siren alone. He then turns his attention back to Harry, a confident smile spreading across his face. He formally accepts the request to save Harry's sister and adds that there is also something he wants Fifi, to do. Fifi looks on, her interest piqued. Sometime later, now draped in a large, heavy-looking cloak, Theo approaches Marie. He reassures her, telling her to leave the rest to him. He offers a confident smile, but Marie looks up at him with wide, uncertain eyes. As they stand on a high platform overlooking a vast crowd, a small, winged creature resembling an owl flutters down before them. It hovers in the air, questioning who Theo is and what is going on with this particular human. In response, Theo simply tells the creature to take a good look as he grasps the hilt of a sword at his side, drawing the blade with a sharp sound. His eyes narrow with intense focus. He knows that a sword is meant to be used like this. Before the creature can react, Theo swings the blade in a swift, clean arc, decapitating it instantly. Blood splatters as its head flies through the air, and Marie watches in stunned silence. His brutal act sent a wave of shock through the Colosseum. In the stands, the captive audience, including a stunned Harry, stared in disbelief. From within her cage, Marie watched with wide, horrified eyes. The disturbance even caught the attention of the woman presiding over the spectacle. From her high throne, Lady Siren's composed expression shifted to one of mild surprise as she observed the defiance unfolding below. Down on the arena floor, Theo stood over the body of the fallen winged creature, his sword dripping. He looked up towards the stands and called out for the bird woman, ordering her to get down there. With Marie now beside him, he urged her forward. Raising his sword with renewed determination, he announced that this was the signal for the counterattack. The rebellion had begun. From a high perch overlooking an arena, Lady Siren stares in disbelief, finding the scene before her impossible. Below, Ellie McDowell is equally shocked, pointing out that Theo, a mere human, has just killed one of the winged creatures known as harpies. Standing beside the young girl Marie, Theo calmly tells Ellie he has grown accustomed to such reactions. He then turns to Marie with a reassuring smile, telling her everything is all right. His attention shifts back to Ellie, reminding her that he's counting on her for the matter they discussed. Marie looks on, confused by the exchange. Observing from above, Lady Siren internally questions if Theo is truly human, noting the presence of a low-level spirit accompanying him. She quickly dismisses the thought, deciding it does not matter. Her expression hardens as she unleashes her power, the absolute royal voice, commanding her harpies to kill the intruder. The winged creatures immediately react to her authoritative command. Driven by the order, the harpies shriek for the human to die and dive toward the group. In response, Ellie begins an incantation, Kaza Midori, summoning a powerful whirlwind known as wind-circling bird from the ground up. As the gale rages around them, Theo's face sets with grim determination. He prepares his own counterattack, invoking the name of his technique, Wind King's Sword. Ellie's wind-circling bird spell successfully forms a defensive vortex, buffeting the attacking harpies and throwing them off course. One is sent tumbling away in confusion. Watching her minions fail, Lady Siren clicks her tongue in annoyance. A brilliant explosion of force erupts in the center of the arena, the combined energies creating a blinding flash of light and power. In the aftermath of the blast, Lady Siren stands unscathed. The cages lining the arena walls rattle violently, revealing a terrified Harry trapped within one of them. She looks down upon the scene with a cruel smirk, remarking on the beautiful scream she heard. Her expression then shifts to one of disappointment as she adds, a shame. She stares down at the figures responsible for the devastation, acknowledging that while she does not know who they are, their defiance is a significant act. Before she can continue, alone, surviving harpy flies to her side, frantically apologizing and reporting that all other harpies in town have been wiped out. Lady Siren dismisses the outburst as mere noise. Theo smirks at the exchange, coolly stating he doesn't understand what they're saying. Hearing this and the harpies' report, Lady Siren's expression shifts from annoyance to manic excitement. Realizing that something very fun is about to happen. Her interest piqued, she hovers in the air, admitting she likes his defiant spirit. With her power confirmed at level 61, she menacingly wonders what kind of scream he will produce for her. A look of manic certainty crosses her face. She believes victory is already hers, questioning how a mere human could possibly resist her. But her confidence is shattered by a simple, firm command from Theo, don't move. He then reveals the source of his power, explaining that his divine gift is absolute royal voice, which ensures that anyone below his level cannot disobey his commands. Turning her own words back on her, he asks how he should make her scream. Trapped by his command but still able to speak, Lady Siren finds a malicious loophole. She projects her own voice across the arena, commanding the entire audience to devour the human beside Theo. Her voice takes immediate effect. The crowd, their eyes vacant, turns as one and begins to swarm Ellie, who stands vulnerable in the center of the arena as Theo watches in shock. As the mob closes in, Lady Siren taunts Theo, asking how it feels to watch the person he tried to protect be eaten alive. In response, he utters a new command, Fuse Delta Wind King Leg, causing the Siren's smug expression to instantly turn to one of shock. He ignores the approaching mob, instead activating his skill. Bursts of wind erupt from his feet, launching him into the air towards the two figures as the winged woman looks on in confusion. His sudden aerial charge shatters Lady Siren's composure, her face contorting in shock as he closes the distance between them. He rockets forward, shouting the name of his technique, Wind King Leg. The sheer velocity of his approach leaves the winged figure flailing in his wake as Lady Siren watches, aghast. Her mind reels, unable to comprehend the situation. She questions how this human can possibly move, defying the power that should have him under her complete control. Before she can find an answer, he becomes a blur of motion, closing the final gap to strike. As he prepares to swing his blade, Lady Siren's paralysis breaks just enough for her to scream a desperate command for him to stop. Her plea is ignored. His sword slices cleanly through her side, and she gasps in agony as she feels the blade pierce her lung. He lands gracefully behind her, the attack complete, leaving her to stare back in stunned horror. Seeing her companion struck down, the winged figure frantically shouts commands for the unseen forces below to halt their advance. Theo turns to the wounded Lady Siren, calmly stating that he doesn't understand what she's saying and asking if she is rupturing her own eardrums. The simple, brutal logic dawns on her. She had been careless, completely underestimating this human who had found such a crude yet effective way to nullify her power. He remains on the ground, looking up as Lady Siren seethes with fury. She cannot comprehend how a mere human could be winning against her. Her shock gives way to grim determination. Behind her, a vast and intricate magical sigil begins to form in the air, glowing with immense power. Seeing this as a sign of their captor's desperation, the human prisoners, including Harry, erupt in a chorus of cheers. They shout for Theo to win and not to lose. The encouragement swells into a unified roar, with cries of "Go!" and "Take him down," filling the chamber, creating a wall of defiant sound. The winged figure, enraged by the insubordination, screams for them to shut up. The sheer force of her voice, or perhaps another's, causes the humans to cry out and clutch their ears in pain. She realizes with frustration that her commands are being completely drowned out by the humans shouting. Everyone is reacting to the overwhelming noise, rendering her authority useless. With the situation spiraling out of control, Lady Siren makes a grave decision. She admits to herself that she has no other choice. Though she truly did not want to use this particular song, she prepares to unleash it. As she begins her preparations, Theo's eyes widen in sudden, sharp comprehension. Before she can utter a single note, her face contorts in agony. A metal device has been jammed into her mouth, forcing her jaw open in a silent, horrifying grimace. A terrible realization dawns on her as Theo holds the device in place. He has forced her to invoke a hideous song, one so dangerous it could destroy even herself. She understands his gambit. No matter what he does, he cannot escape the blast, and he has trapped them both. Her final, desperate gambit was unleashed. High above the unfolding chaos, the winged figure watched, her own power beginning to surge as her wings spread wide. She shot forward, staff held ready, moving with incredible speed toward the epicenter. But she was too late. A massive, silent shockwave erupted from below, expanding outward in a blinding wave of destructive force. The force was absolute. Theo's sword, caught in the blast, began to disintegrate. He realized with horror that the song had transcended sound, becoming pure shockwaves that destroyed all matter at the speed of sound. He was thrown violently backward, the concussive force overwhelming him completely. At the epicenter, Lady Siren was consumed by her own power, her body breaking apart as Theo was flung away like a rag doll. Her face, twisted by the gag, was a mask of agony and grim finality as she uttered the name of her technique, Shun, final act, before vanishing into the light. From the ground, the assembled crowd, including Fico and Harry, could only stare up at the blinding flash high in the sky, witnessing the cataclysmic end. Moments later, after the light faded, Fico turned to a dazed Theo. She looked at him with disbelief, asking if his true intention all along was to possess her younger sister again, reminding him that this was supposed to be an escort mission. Theo, however, met her gaze with a confident smirk. He told her to just watch, assuring her he was fine. With a challenging look, he declared that he was, after all, the one who had defeated her. His words only fueled Fico's anger, and she shouted his name in frustration. His eye snaps wide, a fierce glare cutting through the haze. A single, resolute thought burns within him. It cannot end yet. A devastating blast of energy concludes, seemingly obliterating a shadowy foe as the winged woman, Ellie McDowell, hovers in the aftermath. Believing the fight is over, she smirks with satisfaction, noting that the screams have ceased. She declares this to be the final act. Her triumphant gaze then shifts down to the human, Theo, lying on the ground. Her expression falters as she notices something odd, globules of water floating around him. Upon closer inspection, she sees that Theo's entire head is encased in a sphere of water. He glares up at her, his face a mask of defiance. From his position on the ground, he channels power into his leg, unleashing a technique, the Wind King leg. He twists his body with explosive force, launching a powerful kick directly upwards at the airborne Ellie. His face is contorted with fury as he roars his refusal to submit, shouting that he'll never obey someone like her. The kick connects, his foot slamming into her mouth. Her eyes widen in pure shock as she questions how he is still alive and what the water could possibly be. A sudden realization strikes her. She understands that in the split second before her song of destruction hit, he must have used magic to create water and cover his head as a shield. She processes this with disbelief, realizing the sound-based attack was reflected by the water and barely penetrated. She questions how an ordinary human could possibly react with such speed. She recoils in shock, her eyes wide with disbelief. Theo's fist, surrounded by rings of compressed air, closes in as she realizes her sound-based attack is failing to reach him. His punch connects squarely with her jaw. With cold fury in his eyes, he declares that he has no need for her, continued Rini Ensei. As the blow lands, he unleashes a new technique, a command echoing in his mind. Wind control. Explode, fuse. The command triggers a violent vortex of wind that erupts from the point of impact, throwing Theo backward into the air amidst a spray of dark particles. The gale tears through the space, a chaotic blur of motion and debris. Moments later, the storm of wind subsides. Theo sits on the ground, his back to the dissipating cloud, the immediate aftermath of his attack. He looks up, a flicker of disbelief turning into a wide, triumphant grin as the realization hits him. He has won. His elation vanishes as he looks down at his leg. The magical circle from his Wind King leg technique fades away. He grits his teeth, realizing with dread that his last move has completely drained his magic. Without magic to sustain him, he begins to plummet. A wave of panic washes over him as he understands that a fall from this height will be fatal for his battered body. He thinks with regret that perhaps he should have kept Fico possessing him after all. As he falls, a sea of hands from the captives below reaches up towards him, a desperate attempt to break his fall. Among them is his own, the crest on its back starkly visible as he tumbles toward an uncertain fate. He plummeted from the sky, his body limp, but a sea of hands from the other captives surged forward to break his fall, catching him just above the ground. Safely on his feet, he stood dazed amidst the crowd of relieved faces. Nearby, Ellie McDowell observed him, realizing that although her own eardrums were ruptured and she couldn't hear, there was something more to his state. The joy and relief for the other captives was palpable, their faces beaming. But from his perspective, the world was a weary blur. The strain was too much. His consciousness finally gave way, and he collapsed to the ground as panic erupted among the onlookers. Watching him fall, a small smile played on Ellie McDowell's lips. She mused to herself that he was, honestly, quite a handful. After a period of darkness, his eyes fluttered open. He found himself sitting up in an unfamiliar bed, in a simple, strange room. Confusion clouded his mind as he wondered aloud. Where is this? A familiar voice answered him. Ellie McDowell, casually calling him Fico, explained that he was at her employer's house. She remarked on the weakness of humans, needing to sleep for a full day to recover from such bad injuries. The memory surfaced for Theo, losing consciousness, the pain of his injury. He looked down at his hands, astonished to find his wounds completely gone. Seeing his surprise, Ellie asked him directly if he had used the technique known as Rini Ensei. His confusion was evident. She continued, remarking that he really goes all out, but her thoughts took a darker turn. She internally considered that it would have been much faster to simply kill and revive him. She looks down at the now conscious Theo, a slight pout on her face as she explains that while he was unconscious, she was getting very bored. He asks what she finds so funny, and she bluntly replies that she thought he was incredibly stupid. As he bristles, she declares that he has a duty to entertain her every second of every day. Theo immediately rejects this, stating he has no such obligation. His defiance enrages her. She screams, questioning who this human, this roasted chicken, thinks he is, and vows to eat him after he kills the king. After her furious outburst, a tense silence hangs between them. Theo can only mutter a single, weary word. Honestly, he internally reflects on their bizarre dynamic. He feels he's gradually starting to understand this monster, but still can't fully trust Fico. He clarifies for himself that they are not allies, but enemies. This realization solidifies his strategy. He devised a way to win without her power. He then speaks aloud, declaring them accomplices. Surprised, Ellie listens as he insists they can't waste time. She agrees, warning him to step up, as she is now complicit in the plot to kill the king. As their tense agreement settles, the door opens to reveal Harry and Marie. A relieved smile spreads across Harry's face as he observes Theo, remarking that he seems to have come to his senses. He steps closer, anxiously asking if Theo is really okay to move and admitting he was starting to doubt if he was even human. Theo reassures his friend, flexing an arm to show he's completely unharmed, all thanks to him. Harry is overwhelmed with emotion. He expresses his profound gratitude, clarifying that Theo saved not only him, but also Marie and the entire town. Beside him, Marie adds her own quiet, heartfelt thanks. In response to their gratitude, Theo smiles humbly. He states that even though he saved their lives, he was simply completing a job, and it was nothing special. As he stands with the others, Ellie cuts in with a cynical smirk. She dismisses their gratitude as pointless, warning that another, perhaps even crueler monster, will inevitably arrive. Even so, she acknowledges his part in the recent events. Marie, however, looks up at Ellie and firmly disagrees, stating that it was not pointless at all. Turning her gaze to Theo, she explains with heartfelt sincerity that he gave her something more important than life itself. She then steps forward, gesturing for him to follow her. Standing beside a watchful Ellie and a confused Harry, Theo asks what she is talking about. Ignoring his question, Marie pushes open a heavy wooden door, flooding the dark space with brilliant light. She looks back over her shoulder, her face beaming, and begins to explain what it was that he gave her. It was hope. The door opens onto a street filled with the liberated captives. Their faces, once etched with despair, are now alight with joy as they point and cheer towards their saviors. The sound of their collective celebration swells, echoing through the narrow stone causeway. From the open windows of the surrounding buildings, more people lean out, waving and shouting their gratitude. Caught in the moment, Marie throws her arms into the air, her face a portrait of pure, unadulterated joy. The entire crowd surges with emotion, their cheers and adoration directed at Theo, who now stands with Ellie, Harry, and Marie, hailed as a beacon in their dark world. He watches as Marie addresses the cheering crowd, her voice ringing out. She explains that this town was once called the City of Song, and he seems surprised that these people, after so much suffering, could raise their voices in such a joyous chorus. She continues, telling him that everyone had truthfully dreamed of singing like this one day. Though few remain who remember those times, the people of this town now truly love to sing. A soft smile graces her lips as she reflects on the moment. She acknowledges that while their dream coming true might only last an instant, it absolutely was not pointless. Tears of pure joy well up in her eyes. With a radiant, tearful smile, she declares that for the first time in their lives, this feeling made living worthwhile. Her profound words sink in. He gazes forward, his expression thoughtful, and quietly acknowledges her sentiment with a simple, "I see." Around them, the celebration continues, a sea of freed people reveling in their newfound hope and freedom. The sight of this ordinary world, free, filled with song and hope, strikes a chord deep within him. A wave of nostalgia washes over him as he recalls his past life. His quiet, wistful utterance catches the attention of Marie and Harry, who turn to him in confusion. He seems to be speaking to himself, lost in a memory they cannot share. The moment of reflection is broken by Ellie's pragmatic voice. She asks him how long they have until the next monster arrives, speculating that given the scale of the celebration, it might take the enemy months to re-establish control. He listens, processing her tactical analysis. His expression hardens with resolve. He makes a stunning declaration to the group. They will defeat the Monster King himself before that time comes. The sheer audacity of his plan leaves Marie and Harry speechless. He clenches his fist, his voice ringing with conviction. With these very hands, he vows, he will liberate all of humanity. His intense gaze fixes on Marie as he makes a personal promise to her. He will create a world where she can sing as much as she wants. His declaration is immediately challenged by Ellie. She scoffs that she's the one fighting while he just floats around, arguing that the credit for killing the local king should be split 9-1 in her favor. Theo retorts, asking why she is so intent on hogging all the credit. The argument escalates as Ellie suggests they settle who is superior. Watching them, Harry internally questions if Theo wants to be eaten, while Marie seems uncertain. Theo, however, meets the challenge with a surprising admission. Until now, he has only ever fought weaklings. His words hang in the air. Marie quietly reflects on his grander vow to liberate all of humanity, while Harry is left wide-eyed and speechless. A smile spreads across Ellie's face. She looks at Theo and concedes that if it is the two of them, they might actually be able to pull it off. The night deepens, the crescent moon hanging in the sky above the quiet treetops. Elsewhere, in a grand, icy hall, news of the recent events has reached the higher echelons. A winged figure perched on a throne finds the report strange, questioning how Lady Siren could have been killed by a single livestock human. The messenger, a creature of swirling sand, elaborates on the disturbing developments. It recounts the fall of the werewolf's castle, and now Siren's demise, all within days. It confesses its own confusion, revealing that its absolute royal voice failed against a human who escaped from the ogre town and possessed powerful magic. A shadowy entity with glowing eyes considers the implications. It reasons that if a single human was responsible, it represents a clear rebellion against their king. Regardless of the perpetrator, The figure concludes, this cannot be ignored. The shadowy entity considered the rebellion. It was as if someone was foolishly charging straight into the demon realm. With a decisive gesture, it selected its next target. Its focus settled upon two key locations. First, the treacherous man-eating mountain range, and then the fortified barrier city of Syria. Elsewhere, the other commanders received the directive. The winged figure turned to her sandy companion. Fine, she conceded. I'll send word through the harpies. And so, as the command was given, a single thread of hope began to spread across the world. With the full strength of the seven dukes behind them, Theo and Ellie prepared to execute their plan, the Great Escape. A few days after defeating Siren, the time came for the party to part ways. In the city of Song, Theo and Fico bid farewell to a waving Harry and Marie, turning to begin their journey toward their next destination. Their path led them to the shortest route to the demon realm, where their next destination loomed before them. A formidable mountain range, commonly known as the man-eating mountain range. Theo acknowledged the path ahead with a confident smile, but Fico noted that at that moment, there was something crucial they still did not know. He was unaware of the astonishing secret the man-eating mountain range held. Fico gazed toward the peaks, beginning to explain that within this mountain, their journey was destined to undergo a great and unforeseen change. Her expression was somber, heavy with the weight of this premonition. As they walked through a forest at the base of the mountains, Fico remarked that the city of Song was a nice place for a human town. Theo, now wearing a simple poncho, quietly agreed. He recalled their time there, enjoying the reward of sweet treats with their friends. He also mentioned that they had replenished their gear at Siren's castle, a necessity since he had destroyed all the equipment he had previously made. His thoughts returned to the present as he stared up at the imposing peaks. The man-eating mountain range was an unavoidable route if they wanted the fastest path to the demon realm. The true problem was what lay ahead. He explained the secret to Fico. The man-eating mountain range is actually the world's largest magic stone mine. Monsters bring livestock there, then repeatedly head into the mines to gather the stones. Fico elaborates on the mountain's reputation, explaining with a grim look that everyone who enters, humans and monsters alike, simply vanishes as if consumed by the mountain itself. Hearing this, he walks alongside her through the desolate terrain, concluding that there must be a high-level monster present, one capable of preying on other monsters. Fico affirms his theory, calling it an unknown monster. He speculates that for a monster to watch over the entire vast mountain, it would need to be a flying creature, or perhaps several. Fico dismisses this, pointing out that they would be able to see a flying entity from a distance, and she has never heard any reports matching that description. He finds her logical dismissal boring. She waves off his speculation as irrelevant, sarcastically suggesting that perhaps everyone simply fell into a valley and perished, or that there are no monsters here to begin with. Her tone then shifts, and she looks at him intently, adding that she knows he has noticed something as well. As they stand dwarfed by the immense, empty landscape, he internally confirms her suspicion. He has felt an unseen gaze upon him ever since they first set foot in the mountains. Of course I've noticed, he affirms, before activating his magic color vision. A complex, glowing sigil manifests in his eye as he scans his surroundings. His vision reveals the expected sight. The entire mountain range glows with a uniform red hue, the signature of a massive magic stone mine. Yet, despite the feeling of being watched, no other magical signatures are visible anywhere. Fico remarks on the horror of the situation, being watched, yet seeing nothing, especially when scanning the empty sky. Despite the lack of evidence from his magical sight, Theo remains certain, his expression hardening as he confirms that they are, without a doubt, being observed. He is suddenly taken aback as Fico appears before him, tiny and floating. He asks if she is scared, but she dismisses the idea as impossible, boasting that she's practically a ghost herself and is perfectly fine with such things. His attention then shifts to what they have found. The clear traces of a mine shaft, its entrance shrouded in darkness. As they stand before it, the entrance to the mine suddenly erupts with a brilliant, silent flash of light. Inside, they discover a vast cavern. Its surface is completely covered in glowing magic stone crystals. Theo realizes that the wealth in this area alone could fund a nation for a century, making it clear why monsters are continuously sent to this location. With a grim expression, he concludes that the people who vanished must have entered this very place. The scene is too perfect. It is undoubtedly a trap. His train of thought is broken by Fico, who reappears thinking he was startled by a ghost. She mocks him, asking if he's really frightened by a mere trap and calling humans weak. Ignoring his concern, she begins cheerfully gathering crystals. Announcing her curiosity about the monster's identity, she declares she will scout ahead and darts deeper into the mine before he can react. Watching her disappear, Theo sits down, deciding it's best to prepare some food. He reasons that someone like her won't die anyway, so it's fine. 10 minutes later, however, his confidence has vanished, replaced by a worried frown. He realizes she is taking far too long to return. Now, genuinely concerned, he gets up and ventures into the glowing tunnels, calling out Fico's name into the echoing darkness. He ventured into the darkness, his mind racing with worry for Fico. This was the man-eating mountain, a place where everyone, human and monster alike, was said to vanish without a trace. To navigate the oppressive blackness, he conjured a small orb of light, its sudden flash pushing back the shadows. The light revealed walls glittering with crystals. He tried to reassure himself. Fiko was a phoenix spirit now. He reasoned that no monster could harm her, and even if something did happen, he wasn't obligated to rescue her. But the thought was unconvincing. He clenched his jaw, admitting that losing her here would be a significant disadvantage. He silently willed her not to vanish, adding a frustrated, internal threat. As he pressed deeper into the glowing cavern, a strange sensation made him pause. Ahead, a brilliant point of light suddenly flared, piercing the gloom of the crystalline passage. He understood instantly. It was an exit. The path connected to the outside, and Fiko must have gone through it. The realization left him momentarily bewildered. His confusion gave way to shock as he stepped out not into a wilderness, but into the bright, cheerful atmosphere of a bustling festival. Music and laughter filled the air. Nearby, Fiko was completely unharmed and thoroughly enjoying herself. She laughed with other festival-goers, sampling the food and eagerly pointing toward another attraction she wanted to see. He stood frozen, unable to process the jarring shift from a dangerous, monster-filled mind to a lively celebration. He struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. He frantically searches the bustling festival grounds, a wave of disbelief washing over him. The cave he had just exited was gone. It was impossible. Pushing through the crowd, he mutters apologies, his eyes darting around as he calls out for Fiko. From a higher vantage point, he is just one lost figure in a sea of people, completely alone as he wonders where Fiko could have possibly gone. Meanwhile, Fiko herself materializes elsewhere. Her eyes are wide with shock and confusion as she takes in the unfamiliar, stark surroundings, murmuring, "This place." She finds herself floating in the center of a vast, dark throne room. Imposing pillars line a long, tiled floor leading to a single, ornate throne atop a distant dais. Her confusion deepens into dread. "Why?" she whispers into the oppressive silence. Suddenly, a disembodied voice booms through the hall, announcing it as the king's audience chamber. The sudden realization hits her. They were just in the cave a moment ago. She wonders if this could be the effect of a teleportation spell. She considers the idea, but a feeling of unease tells her that's not right. It didn't feel like teleportation at all. Her gaze drifts up towards the shadowy throne. As her eyes focus, she realizes with a jolt of fear that someone is sitting on the throne, concealed within the deep shadows. In that instant, a strange stillness overcomes her. Her eyes fall shut, her expression goes blank, and her body becomes completely inert. The reason becomes terrifyingly clear as her consciousness, now a separate, spectral form, looks back at her own vacant shell. "My physical body," she exclaims in horrified disbelief. Her spirit gazes down at her own physical form, now lifeless on the throne room floor. She questions how it could be here, wondering if it was somehow retrieved from the depths of the ocean. Without hesitation, her spirit merges back with her physical form. A wave of relief washes over her as she revels in the familiar sensation of being whole again. Reunited with her body, a sharp, competitive glint appears in her eyes. She thinks to herself that now, she can finally prove her superiority to Theo. Her thoughts drift back to her first encounter with the arrogant human a week prior. She declares her intention to make him kneel and address her with proper respect as Lady Fifi. But her triumphant declaration is cut short by a flicker of confusion. The image of Theo flashes in her mind, his name echoing in her thoughts. A softer thought follows. He can be cute sometimes. She muses that perhaps he grew lonely in her absence. A moment later, she pauses, feeling as if she just heard someone call her Lady Fifi, but dismisses it as her imagination. Her confusion deepens as she sees Theo kneeling before the throne. He declares with startling enthusiasm that her absence is unthinkable to him. Stunned, Fiko can only stammer in response, questioning why he is kneeling. He continues, chastising himself for ever speaking to her casually and insisting this formal deference is how he has always been. The statement jolts Fiko. She remembers clearly that he has never spoken to her this way, a realization dawning on her with wide-eyed shock. He then asks if she understands the current situation, explaining that he suddenly found himself in this place. He questions if she has forgotten, reminding her that she defeated the previous king and took the title for herself. He elaborates with fervor, describing how her hidden power awakened, allowing her to defeat the former ruler in a single blow. He even calls the look on the previous king's face an absolute masterpiece. The explanation leaves Fiko completely stunned, unable to process the title now being ascribed to her, the new king. She initially questions the reality of the situation, wondering aloud if any of it truly happened. But then a sudden, startling shift occurs. Her confusion vanishes, replaced by beaming confidence as she declares that she now remembers it all perfectly. In response to her newfound conviction, Theo gestures with unrestrained enthusiasm towards a grand feast laid out before the throne. He joyfully declares that this entire world now belongs to her, Lady Fifi. The declaration is met with a wave of adulation from a crowd of other young women. They cheer her name, praise her as wonderful, and make increasingly fervent, unsettling declarations of wanting to be eaten by her. Overwhelmed by the sudden worship, Fiko can only stammer, her face flushed. As the crowd lifts her into the air in celebration, Theo announces that the feast has begun. Her initial shock and embarrassment melt away, replaced by a cool, predatory focus. A small smile plays on her lips as she gazes down at the crowd, her eyes locking onto a target as she murmurs her intention to begin with the first one. She then peeks from behind a pillar, her expression turning playful yet ominous, and whispers a promise of sweet dreams. With that, a heavy door swings shut, sealing the scene as the world itself seems to succumb to a pleasant, yet deeply unsettling dream. Despite a desperate plea warning him not to go beyond the wall, Lord Theo leaps over the stone barrier, propelled by his own resolve. He lands on the other side, his expression set with determination as he braces himself for whatever lies ahead. Instead of danger, he finds himself standing in the middle of a bright, bustling festival. Tents are pitched, faint music drifts through the air, and people wander about, creating a scene of unexpected peace. His eyes widen, scanning the lively scene with a mixture of shock and disbelief. The initial surprise gives way to intense focus. He narrows his gaze, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple as he tries to process the impossible sight. A startling realization dawns on him. This place is just like an amusement park he remembers from a previous life, something that he knows cannot possibly exist in this day and age. Suspecting a trick, he immediately activates his mana color vision. A glowing sigil materializes over his eye as he questions if this is merely an illusion spell. His enhanced sight reveals the air itself is saturated with shimmering particles of mana, confirming the presence of powerful magic. The truth hits him with the force of a physical blow. He realizes with utter shock that the space has a physical form. It is real. He observes the cheerful crowd, perplexed. This should be a trap, yet he senses no hostility or killing intent. It feels like a nightmare, but he knows it isn't. He is left to wonder what this strange, peaceful place truly is. He stared, sweat beading on his face as he tried to process the impossible scene. Was this reality, or perhaps something else entirely? The thought spiraled, questioning everything. Perhaps he was just having a bad dream. Or what if his reincarnation had never really happened at all? His dark musings were abruptly interrupted by a cheerful sound. A small figure stood before him, seemingly appearing from nowhere amidst the strange festival. The figure was a young girl in a peculiar, animal-eared hood. With a brilliant smile and arms spread wide in a grand flourish, she enthusiastically welcomed him to her town. Her boisterous welcome was met with dead silence. He simply stared, his expression a mask of cold analysis, leaving the girl to stand awkwardly in the quiet that followed. The silence shattered as he lunged, instantly closing the distance. With a swift motion, he pinned the startled girl, pressing the cold edge of his cleaver against her. She flinched, crying out in terror, demanding to know what he was. As he held her captive, her terrified eyes fell upon the back of his hand. The mark there, the crest indicating level 1, caught her full attention. Seeing the crest seemed to give her courage. She stammered an affirmation, insisting that she, and the others here, were human. The declaration gave him pause, and he repeated the word, humans, as if testing its validity. With the immediate threat seemingly gone, the girl regained her composure and once again spread her arms wide. She proudly declared that this place was a town for humans, a sanctuary for those who had escaped the monster's rule. She looked at him expectantly, but her explanation only raised more questions. He countered her claim, asking why monsters who entered this mountain were known to disappear. The pieces clicked into place, forming a chilling hypothesis. The humans hadn't vanished. They were hiding, and they were responsible. He listened, stunned, as the girl cheerfully confirmed his terrifying deduction. Because we're the ones defeating the monsters, she declared with a bright, innocent smile. Her statement was met with a chorus of agreement from the other villagers. We'll protect you, one shouted. The girl continued, acknowledging that while humans may be the weakest race, they're still capable of defeating monsters. He processed their words with a flat, unimpressed expression as the girl invited him to live happily among them. He offered a simple, I see, but his mind was filled with a single resounding thought, doubt. His skepticism hardened into action. In one swift motion, he reached out and forcefully yanked the hood from the girl's head. The sudden violation left her completely stunned, her eyes wide with shock. Huh? What? She stammered, utterly bewildered. As she reeled, the other townsfolk remained oblivious to the shift in tone, continuing their cheerful welcome with cries of, let's live happily, and we're friends. A smirk crossed his face. The pieces were falling into place. He thought to himself that the deception was so simple, even a complete fool would likely fall for it. He looked down at the girl on the ground, who stared up in disbelief, stammering, Hey Chow, why? He cut her off, retorting, that's our line, and began to press his own question, why are you all? Before he could finish, one of the other men voiced the central contradiction. Even though we're defeating monsters, he began, why is every single one of us still level 1? The girl's face went pale with shock. As the impossible question hung in the air, Theo presented the final, damning piece of evidence. He held up his left hand, revealing the glowing crest. "Why is a human? Level 65? He demanded. The girl could only stare, her world completely shattered. He continues his lecture with a confident smirk, reminding the girl that, just as she said, humans can defeat monsters. He explains that by doing so, their level increases. He calls this system of leveling up a gift from heaven for humanity. The hooded girl is visibly stunned by his words, her eyes wide with shock. His tone hardens as he reveals the deception. He concedes that the humans, the playground, and the sky all possess physical form, but that doesn't make them real. He adds that, regardless, their smirking faces were enough to tip him off. The girl gasps, her deception exposed. Without hesitation, Theo raises his sword and unleashes a powerful technique, shouting its name. Fuse Heartwind King's Sword. A massive arc of energy erupts from the blade. The slash of wind tears through the village, shattering the facade of the playground and the ground beneath it. He watches as the illusionary world crumbles and dissolves under the force of his assault. The very fabric of the scenery seems to melt away, twitching and contorting as it disintegrates into nothing. Standing amidst the bizarre, fleshy remnants, he confirms his suspicion. It was not a simple illusion, but a form of mimicry disguised as a physical body. The last vestiges of the fake world twitch and vanish around him. As the disguise falls away completely, he finds himself face to face with the village's true form. A grotesque, monstrous mass of countless staring eyes and gaping, sharp-toothed maws. He smirks, facing the colossal horror that has been revealed. "So you finally showed your true colors," he declares, identifying it as the monster of the man-eating mountain range. The true scale of the creature becomes apparent. A grotesque, fleshy landscape dotted with countless eyes and maws. He processes the revelation. This isn't just any mimic. It's a gigantic, higher-species labyrinth mimic, capable of replicating an entire dungeon. The whole mountain, he understands, was literally a single, living monster. Instead of a roar, a chorus of voices erupts from the creature's many mouths. They express an unsettling joy, with multiple voices crying out, "I'm so happy. I'm so glad. Thank you." One of its massive tongues extends, swiping across his face in a grotesque gesture. He recoils in disgust, utterly baffled by the creature's behavior. "Are you making fun of me?" he asks, unable to comprehend the situation. In response, a flurry of fleshy appendages descends upon him from all directions. The monster's tongues whip through the air, attempting to ensnare him completely. As the pressure intensifies, he desperately calls out, "Material reinforcement." A magnificent, brand-new sword materializes in his grasp, its appearance surprising even him as he is being crushed. His attention is drawn to the surface of the tongue pressing against him. He observes its rough, file-like texture and realizes its gruesome function. The monster's teeth and tongue are designed to grind prey into pulp. With this grim understanding, a look of fierce determination crosses his face. He grips his new sword tightly, a plan forming in his mind. In that case, he mutters, preparing to act. He explodes into action, unleashing the power of his new weapon. "Fuse Heart, Sword of the Wind King," he bellows, swinging the blade. Arcs of pure energy erupt, slicing cleanly through the fleshy appendages that surround him. The immediate aftermath leaves him standing in a clearing of severed flesh. He trembles slightly, staring in disbelief at the destruction he has wrought as the severed parts of the mimic twitch around him. He found himself staring directly into a cavernous, tooth-filled maw as it lunged forward, intent on devouring him whole. The single threat immediately multiplied. The fleshy walls of the labyrinth came alive with countless more mouths and eyes, all speaking in a discordant chorus, beckoning him to come closer, calling him a friend. As he dodged, he realized their true purpose. The mouths began spewing a substance, one after another. He recognized it with alarm, digestive fluid. He retaliated, unleashing a whirlwind of slashes he called invisible air. A grim smile touched his lips as he analyzed the assault. Though the enemy was a single entity, its perfectly synchronized attacks felt like battling a coordinated pack. Pressing his advantage, he channeled power into his blade and roared out another technique. Volti Thunderhand. A massive discharge of lightning erupted from the sword, blasting into the monstrous walls. The attack landed true, and a wild grin spread across his face. "So predictable," he taunted the creature, slicing through another appendage. "Is this your first time fighting head-on?" His bravado faltered as he took in the scene. Despite his efforts, he was still surrounded. He realized with dawning horror that there was simply no end to them. The sheer, overwhelming scale of the monster began to weigh on him. A bead of sweat trickled down his face as a chilling thought took root. He couldn't handle this alone. As if sensing his doubt, the creature shifted its strategy. The walls ceased their biting and instead began to fire a barrage of glowing energy projectiles directly at him. Caught completely by surprise, he had no time to evade. The volley of energy orbs slammed into his body, throwing him backward as his mind reeled in stunned confusion. He was engulfed in a sudden, concussive blast. From nearby, a female voice called out, questioning the commotion. The voice belonged to Fico, who appeared atop the grotesque, fleshy landscape. With a smirk, she chided Theo for starting some fun without her. He turned his head, his gaze sharp and focused as he looked upon the newcomer. She met his gaze with a confident smile, remarking that he was late. Fico playfully questioned his serious expression, asking if he had gotten lonely. Theo bluntly told her to die, but she simply laughed it off, remarking to herself that this was just his typical demeanor. Their exchange was cut short by the voice of the mimic itself. Amused that it mostly understood how they were tricked, but then questioned their current location, noting that they were supposed to be having fun destroying the throne room. Fico looked on, not understanding at all. Theo clarified the grim reality of their situation. They were inside a mimic's stomach. He explained that what they thought was a man-eating mountain range was, in fact, a single colossal mimic. Upon hearing this, Fico's expression lit up with excitement. She threw her hand forward, declaring that this predicament was far more interesting than their previous location. He smirked in response, acknowledging her as his expected partner in crime. Fico met his grin with her own, confirming that all they needed to do now was go wild. With their pact sealed, they took up a back-to-back fighting stance, surrounded by the countless eyes and threatening appendages of the mimic. Theo declared that he would entrust his back to his partner, and with that, their joint rebellion would begin. Inside the fleshy, eye-covered cavern of the village mimic, Theo and Fifi unleash their attacks. Theo calls out his skill, Volt's Heart, Lightning King's Sword, as Fifi simultaneously invokes her own, Fionarg, Flame King's Hand. Fifi's fiery claws tear through the creature's inner walls. With a wide, manic grin, she playfully calls out to the beast, taunting it with a cheerful hello and declaring that smiles are magic. She glances back at Theo, confidently stating that of course she can manage this much. He watches her, remarking that her power isn't bad for a washed-up spirit. He then qualifies his praise, adding that her strength is only impressive against these minor internal defenses, which he dismisses as mere strays. Theo turns away with a dismissive whatever, though he privately appreciates the help. Fifi explains her reasoning for fighting, stating that if she engages with monsters from the demon realm, she won't be able to avoid responsibility when it matters. She continues, reminding him that they are inside the enemy's stomach and declaring that there is no creature whose insides aren't a weak point. Spurred on by her logic, Theo readies himself. He lunges forward with his blade, shouting for them to go wild as he unleashes a furious assault on the creature's vulnerable interior. The creature reacts to the onslaught. One of its many eyes widens in an expression of shock or pain. Theo is brought to a sudden halt as a voice, seemingly from the creature itself, echoes through the cavernous space, murmuring a single word. Friends. The word is repeated, causing Fifi to look on in confusion. Theo stands alone on a fleshy platform, bathed in a faint light, as the creature's unexpected plea hangs in the air. He stares in shock as the fleshy walls around him spawn dozens of figures. They are copies of Fifi, of his friend Harry, and others, all mindlessly chanting the word friends as they press in on him. In that moment of confusion, a shared, manic understanding flashes between him and the real Fifi. With identical, wide-eyed grins, they both declare their intent. They are friends. Surrounded by the horde of illusions, Theo's mind races, trying to pinpoint the location of the genuine Fifi amidst the fakes. The village mimic's voice echoes from a massive, grinning maw that forms in the fleshy wall. It poses a direct question to Theo, asking if he is capable of attacking an ally. From beside him, Fifi's voice cuts through the noise. Her face is a mask of grim resolve as she gives her answer. I can. With their plans set, they explode into action. Theo surges forward, his blade carving through the illusory bodies, while Fifi unleashes a wave of destructive energy that blasts the remaining fakes apart. The creature's voice rings out again, this time filled with utter bewilderment. It doesn't understand. Why? It cries as its creations are destroyed. As the smoke and dust from their assault begin to clear, Theo and Fifi stand amidst the fading remnants of the illusions, their immediate objective complete. Fifi turns to Theo, her expression one of annoyance. She points out that his attack struck her as well and accuses him of doing it on purpose, asking if he's trying to pick a fight. Theo simply meets her gaze with a confident smirk. His smirk widens into a chilling grin. He corrects her, stating that he wasn't looking for a fight, but rather a one-sided slaughter. As their assault began, Fifi's expression twisted into a smug grin. She chuckled, confident that they needed to make it clear who was on top. Deep within the creature's fleshy interior, its many mouths stammered in confusion, questioning what its attackers were. In a coordinated strike, Fifi unleashed her Fionarg Flame King's Hand, as Theo simultaneously invoked his Wind King's Sword. Their powers surged forward in a combined display of force. The two techniques merged into a violent vortex of energy, tearing through the village mimic's amorphous body with devastating impact. The creature writhed in agony, its mouths crying out. It begged them to stop, whimpering that the assault was causing it immense pain. One of the mimic's larger maws roared in protest, insisting that allies should be treated with more respect. As Fifi seemed poised to respond to the creature's plea, Theo cut her off with a sharp, cold command. Shut up. The relentless barrage continued, pummeling the mimic's outer form as Theo and Fifi remained within its core. Then, abruptly, the violence ceased. Standing inside the now-quiet chamber, Fifi noted that the attacks had stopped. Theo, however, was focused on the strange, undulating movement of the fleshy walls, questioning if this was a new form of attack. He watched as the creature's mass began to pull away, the meat of its body flowing toward one of the walls. Fifi mused aloud that it would be amusing if it were preparing some kind of special move. Theo paid her no mind. His gaze remained locked on the mimic's strange retreat, his expression one of intense concentration as he tried to decipher its true intent. He watches the creature retreat to the cavern wall and has a sudden insight. Realizing the wall is a pillar supporting the entire man-eating mountain range, he grins and shouts for Fifi to aim for it, explaining that its destruction will cause a collapse. Fifi, however, seems momentarily confused. He clarifies with chilling confidence that the collapse of the man-eating mountain range is precisely his intention. The sheer audacity of the plan strikes Fifi as hilarious. With a gleeful cry, she unleashes a powerful blast of energy at the wall, finding the entire situation too funny to resist. She shouts the names of her spells, unleashing the Theonard Flame King's hand and the Lightning King's sword in a devastating combination. As the assault continues, Theo calmly analyzes the situation. He concludes that the mimic, despite its strength, took heavy damage in their prior fight. It resorted to mimicry because supporting its massive body puts it under considerable strain, a weakness it tried to hide. He watches the fleshy substance of the creature crumble, noting that the dirt is falling apart. It appears the mimic is reaching its limit. Under the relentless barrage, deep cracks spread across the mimic's form. Its entire structure begins to shudder and break apart. From a gaping maw, the creature sputters in denial, its voice a desperate chorus of lies. Lies! Its disbelief turns to rage as it shrieks, unable to comprehend how a mere human could have unraveled its grand deception. A cold smirk plays on his lips as he addresses the beast. He tells the mimic that it should have chosen its meals more carefully. His taunt struck a nerve. The colossal mimic, its form destabilized, let out a final, guttural roar of fury from one of its many mouths. In its death throes, the creature's body erupted in a blinding flash of energy, a final, desperate act of defiance that shook the very ground. As the light from the explosion faded, Fifi turned to Theo, a hint of irritation in her voice. She asked if he would mind not giving her orders. Unfazed, he grinned and replied that he was going to hit it with one last shot. Her annoyance seemed to melt away at his confidence. In a sudden, synchronized motion, they both raised their arms, ready to unleash a combined assault. Together, they began their incantations. Theo invoked the Flame King's 1,000 birds, while Fifi called upon the Wind King's 1,000 spears, their voices merging as magical energy swirled around them. Their combined power coalesced into a massive, swirling vortex of wind and fire, which they launched forward with immense force. The vortex twisted and compressed as it flew, transforming into a colossal, spiraling drill of pure energy, aimed at a distant peak. The energy drill slammed into the mountain, the impact sending shockwaves through the rock and throwing debris high into the air. The peak shattered under the overwhelming force, crumbling into a cascade of stone and dust. A single, sharp spear of light, Fifi's contribution, pierced the heart of the destruction. They stood together amidst the falling dust and rubble, observing the complete annihilation of their target, their mission seemingly accomplished. He felt a sudden jolt of energy course through him. The crest on the back of his left hand flared with light, signaling a level up. Clutching his head, he registered the new number, level 66. His shock quickly subsided, replaced by a hardened, resolute expression. He stared forward silently, his focus absolute. Beside him, Fifi floated, watching his sudden change in demeanor with a hint of worry. They stood together, gazing out at the world that had been revealed. The oppressive darkness had vanished, replaced by a vast expanse of snow-covered mountains under a real, clear blue sky. The subjugation was finally complete. The battle is over. A formal notice declares the subjugation of the mimic man-eating mountain range complete, leaving behind a vast, bubbling crater where the colossal creature once stood. Standing at the edge of the chasm, Theo surveys the aftermath. Wrapped in a simple cloak against the wind, he quietly considers what to do next. His contemplation gives way to a sly, hungry grin as a new idea takes root in his mind. He realizes that with so much fresh meat lying around from the defeated monster, they have no choice but to hold an impromptu meat party. Soon after, skewers loaded with chunks of the mimic's flesh sizzle over a fire, glistening as they cook to a perfect brown. The savory aroma attracts company. Fifi appears suddenly, remarking on the good smell. A startled Theo turns to face her, asking what she's doing there and what she thinks is for dinner. She holds up a skewer, declaring that she will eat her fill first and then allow him to possess her. Theo counters, questioning how she can eat as a spirit. Despite the contradiction, they both seem to agree it's time to eat. Without another word, Fifi takes a large, decisive bite from the cooked meatball skewer. Her eyes fly open in sheer delight and confusion. She exclaims that it tastes different than usual. It's like meat, but simultaneously not meat at all. Her surprise quickly turns into an eager demand. She turns to a stunned Theo, insisting that he give her more. He reaches out his hand toward the spirit, Fifi. Startled by the gesture, she questions his intent, asking why he is reaching for her. In a sudden move, he unleashes a gust of wind, pushing Fifi's gelatinous form away from him. The blob-like creature lets out a surprised wail as it is sent tumbling backward. From above the quivering mass, Fifi's humanoid spirit form appears, her expression one of fury. She demands to know what he is doing to her body, but Theo sharply retorts that the blob is not her body. His attention then shifts to the strange, pulsating blob on the ground. He addresses Fifi, calling her Fico, and demands to know why she brought a piece of the mimic with her. As he speaks, the piece of flesh continues to twitch and undulate, giving the unsettling impression that it might be returning to life. Suddenly, a small girl in a hooded cloak with animal ears appears, startling Theo. He realizes she is a mimic, noting her level is 59, and questions if she was the one who had taken the blob form. For a moment, he considers simply killing it. Fifi immediately goes to comfort the terrified girl, telling her that the absolute monster-killing man was scary. She then presents herself as beautiful and not scary at all. The trembling girl can only repeat that humans are scary. The girl's fear gives way to adoration as she parrots Fifi's words, declaring that Fifi-sama is not scary and is beautiful. Fifi, slightly taken aback, tells her not to be so casually brainwashed. Seeing the exchange, Theo approaches with skewered, cooked meat. He remarks that she seems hungry and offers it to her. The girl timidly asks if she can eat it, while Fifi butts in, falsely claiming she made it. The hooded girl accepts the food and takes a small, deliberate bite from the skewer. Her eyes widen in astonishment as she took her first bite. A wave of pure delight washed over her as she realized how delicious it was. As she marveled at the new sensation, Theo explained that he had simply grilled a meatball with some sauce he'd acquired at the Siren's Castle, surmising that she had likely never eaten cooked food. Still stunned, the girl turned to Fifi, asking what this incredible thing was, as it was entirely different from the raw meat she was used to. In response to the girl's innocent question, Fifi gushed over how cute she was, prodding Theo for his agreement. He bluntly dismissed the idea, insisting that a monster could not be cute. Unfazed by their conversation, the mimic girl continued to eat, pondering if this experience was what people called cooking. She continued to chew thoughtfully, savoring each bite of the cooked meat as Theo observed her. After a moment, she glanced up at him, her expression unreadable. She then quickly averted her gaze, a hint of shyness in her posture. Gathering her courage, she looked up at Theo, her eyes shimmering. With a slight pout, she declared that he was permitted to give her more of this cooking. The unexpected display struck Theo with the force of a physical blow, leaving him momentarily stunned. He clutched his chest, a shocking realization dawning on him. Despite his better judgment, her cuteness had somehow healed him. Fifi, noticing his conflicted state, asked what was wrong, remarking on the terrifying expression he was making. He quickly denied it. His strange behavior made the mimic girl cautiously ask if he was angry with her. Flustered, Theo suddenly recoiled, shouting that this was all a trap and that he mustn't be fooled by her apparent innocence. Despite his outburst, he composed himself and held out another skewer of meatballs. He calmly told her there was plenty, urging her to eat. Surprised by his change in demeanor, she hesitantly accepted. He struggles internally, his mind racing. Bringing a pet on a life-threatening adventure is out of the question, especially a mimic he can't trust. He recalls that in his past life, humans kept pets, but this situation is different. He tells himself to calm down, wrestling with the decision of what to do with the creature. His internal struggle leads him to a grim conclusion. All right, let's kill it, he mutters, his face shadowed. The mimic girl flinches, her attention fixed on the skewer of cooked meat he holds out. He places the skewer on the ground before her. She simply stares down at the offering, silent and unmoving. Her stillness is broken by a sudden interruption. Ellie McDowell appears, demanding to know what Theo has been doing by himself. Startled, Theo yelps as his stomach lets out a loud growl, pleading with her not to use her healing abilities on him. Her attention then shifts to the food. Having apparently taken a bite, she remarks that it tastes a bit like scallops and wonders aloud what kind of meat it could be. In response to her question, Theo hesitantly reveals it's mimic meat, but at the same time, the mimic girl expresses her own curiosity, noting that this cooking is all about the umami of the ingredients, and asks him to tell her the true identity of the meat she's enjoying. The revelation hangs in the air, followed by a moment of pure, stunned silence. Both Ellie and the mimic girl freeze, their eyes wide with dawning horror as they process what they've just heard and eaten. The mimic girl's face contorts in shock, her small hands flying up to her cheeks as she trembles. Her horror is mirrored by Ellie. Both of them slowly turn their heads, fixing a unified, aghast stare upon Theo. Breaking the silence, Ellie points an accusing finger, her voice filled with disbelief as she shouts, "You monster!" Theo can only retort that she was the one who took it and ate it first. As Theo attempts to move the conversation forward, the mimic girl, with tears welling in her eyes, accuses him of tricking her. She trembles, wondering aloud if this whole horrifying situation is her fault. Ignoring the girl's distress, Ellie turns to Theo with a sharp gaze. She repeats her question, demanding to know what he plans to do with the creature. He doesn't get a chance to answer. Ellie dismisses his attempt to speak, instead tapping her chin thoughtfully. She declares that she will name the creature Micheline, after all. The name echoes in the mimic girl's mind, and her face immediately twists into an expression of profound disgust. She quickly counters the suggestion, offering alternatives like Mimi Taro or Mimisuk. She claims she wasn't even trying her hardest, prompting Theo to take her suggestions more seriously while Ellie looks on, annoyed. With sudden enthusiasm, the girl decides that Mimisuk is a good name. Though she would have preferred it over Micheline, she accepts it with a bright smile as Ellie and Theo offer a less than enthusiastic round of applause. Having settled on a name, Theo bluntly asks Ellie if she is now going to kill Mimisuk. The question makes Ellie flush, realizing she had accidentally created a companionable atmosphere, but she internally resolves not to be fooled by the moment. She coldly declares that Mimisuk's opinion is irrelevant and threatens to simply kill and revive her repeatedly. Terrified, Mimisuk pleads that she would rather not be killed. Theo sighs, stating one can't take a pet on a journey, but then immediately relents, agreeing to take her along. The mood shifts as Ellie explains her true motive to Theo. She urges him to think carefully, stating that a high-level monster with mimicry, not under the king's control, is a valuable asset for a war against the demon world. She ends with a stark warning. If he doesn't have the will to kill the king, he will be betrayed. Mimisuk overhears their grim conversation, trembling at the mention of a war with the demon world and a plot to kill the king. Lost and frightened, she looks between the two of them and asks who they really are. Her question about their identities was met with a dazzling smile from the woman. With a delayed introduction, she presented herself as Fifi Rebirthday, one of the two beautiful seven dukes. Mimisuk could only stare, utterly captivated by her beauty and title. This revelation, however, only deepened her confusion. She wondered aloud why someone as esteemed as Fifi-sama would be traveling with a mere human. Theo, internally noting that her reputation extended even to stray monsters, curtly dismissed the question as unimportant and introduced himself. He continued, explaining that they had called a truce and joined forces for a specific purpose. The word purpose echoed in Mimisuk's mind as she tried to understand. In response to her unspoken query, Ellie dramatically declared that the purpose of their journey was the subjugation of the king. She was taken aback by this declaration, her face a mask of shock. She stammered, asking if the king wasn't the strongest monster in the world. Confused by the woman's casual tone, she questioned why she spoke of it as if it were someone else's problem. The woman, Ellie, explained that she simply wanted to live a quiet and peaceful life, finding such dangerous matters a bit tiresome. Her tone then shifted abruptly. She informed Mimisuk that from now on, she would be joining them on their journey to kill the king, adding a chilling threat. If she refused, she would be killed. The threat sent a jolt of terror through Mimisuk. Just as panic set in, Theo stepped forward, brandishing his sword slightly and apologizing, admitting that Ellie was lying. He then added that there would be proper benefits for her as well, causing her to look up in surprise. She cautiously asked what would happen in the worst-case scenario if she were to be caught. Ellie pointed out that since Mimisuk had eaten a few monsters already, her disguise as a man-eating mountain range had been blown. As a result, she would likely be considered a wanted criminal in the demon world. The consequences, Ellie continued with a grim expression, would be dire. She described a cruel fate where Mimisuk would be forced to work to the bone, 8 hours a day, from morning until night. The thought left Mimisuk trembling in horror. Seeing her reaction, Ellie revealed her ultimate goal. She declared that this was precisely why she intended to kill the king, to create a new world where neither of them would have to work. Mimisuk could only dream of such a place. Her words have an immediate and profound effect on Mimisuk, whose eyes fill with sparkling adoration. Clasping her hands, the young girl tearfully pledges her absolute loyalty, declaring to Fifi-sama that she will follow her anywhere. Ellie, seizing the moment, pulls her new devotee into a celebratory cheer, demanding they praise her together. Mimisuk happily obliges, shouting with glee, "Hurrah for Fifi-sama! Fifi-sama is beautiful!" Watching this bizarre spectacle from a short distance, Theo can only stare with a weary, dumbfounded expression, wondering to himself what exactly he is being forced to witness. He continues to watch as Mimisuk, having calmed from her initial excitement, reflects on their new arrangement. She seems to conclude that, at this rate, their new leader is unlikely to betray them anytime soon. Meanwhile, in another location, an unknown figure studies a wanted poster. The crude document features sketches of Theo and Ellie, identifying them as escapees who are to be killed on sight. The figure crumples the paper slightly, musing that for them to warn a poster, they must be strong. The thought is quickly dismissed, however, as the opponent's strength is deemed irrelevant. The holder of the poster is revealed, a massive, wolf-headed warrior in heavy black armor, flanked by a horde of goblins. He declares that before his magic sword, all enemies are merely sustenance. His single, glowing eye glares from the darkness of his helmet as he concludes his thought. A new enemy is right here. On the night that Mimisuk was to begin traveling with them, Under a starry sky and a sliver of a moon, a piercing scream cut through the darkness. The cause of the scream is Mimisuk, lying motionless on the ground. A stark realization hangs in the air. She is dead. Fifi, however, reacts unexpectedly, thinking to herself how cute Mimisuk looks. Theo, alarmed, asks what's wrong, to which Fifi loudly proclaims that Mimisuk is dead. She then puffs up with self-importance, announcing that it's a case for the great detective Fifi. She reasons that since only she and Theo were present, and she personally witnessed that Theo never left his bed, the culprit must be. The conclusion strikes her with horrified certainty. She gasps, wondering aloud if she was the one who did it. Theo, utterly exasperated, tells the stupid parrot to calm down. His attention, however, is suddenly pulled away from the scene. He peers out into the night, his expression hardening as he realizes this is likely just a simple ambush. As if summoned by his thoughts, a volley of rocks hurtles towards them. Fifi, floating beside him, identifies it as an attack and calls out an incantation, wind manipulation. The crude projectiles slam into the cliffside around them, impacting with violent force. Amidst the chaos and screams from below, Theo understands their position has been discovered. With no other option, he resolves to counterattack and face the threat head-on. He looks down from the precipice, a grim smile touching his lips as he beholds the source of the attack, a massive, writhing horde of goblins. He mutters in disbelief, Hey, how many hundreds of them are there? He stood his ground, gazing down at the sea of goblins, recognizing them as pursuers. The sheer number was staggering. He had thought the deserter was dealt with, but this was something else entirely. Beside him, Fifi watched him, her expression tense. From the ranks of the horde, a hulking figure in full plate armor emerged. A single, glowing eye stared out from its helmet. This was a Cyclops, level 61. It loomed over the smaller goblins, its voice booming as it questioned if this was the one they sought. Fifi confirmed its identity aloud, a Cyclops. The name struck a chord with Theo. He recalled knowledge from his previous life, recognizing them as the most skilled blacksmiths among all the monsters in this world. She elaborated that unlike the mass-producing kobolds, the Cyclopes are a race of master artisans, renowned for forging the world's most powerful magical equipment. Their creations, like mighty swords, axes, and shields, are legendary. His mind returned to the present confrontation. Facing the armored giant, Theo questioned the term it had used, asking what it meant by deserter. The Cyclops responded by unfurling wanted posters bearing the likenesses of both Theo and Fifi. It explained that an execution order had been circulated worldwide for a human traveling with a low-class spirit, and for the one who allowed a harpy to escape the city of song. Fifi stared, utterly speechless. Her shock instantly morphed into pure outrage. What is this wanted poster? She shrieked, pointing an accusing finger. It doesn't capture even a sliver of my beauty. She demanded a do-over, insisting she needed to pose for a new drawing. Theo quickly shut her down, telling her to worry about that later. He mused on how they were discovered, but then questioned if it even mattered, as long as they understood the situation they were in. The Cyclops provided the chilling answer. It declared that at this very moment, every monster in the world was blood-lustfully hunting for Theo. They were combing the lands to destroy him, and the army assembled before them was merely a fraction of that power. The weight of the Cyclops' words settled upon him. A dark understanding dawned on his face. So this, he realized, is what it means to make an enemy of the world. He stares in disbelief as Fifi, standing beside the imposing Cyclops, seems to betray him. She calmly lists the rewards for his death: a lifetime of wealth, special honors, and centuries of exemption from work. As she promises not to forget him, Theo can only look at her, stunned by her words. With a sly smile, Fifi adds that since he's going to die miserably anyway, it might as well be this way. The Cyclops laughs heartily at the spectacle, mocking Theo for being betrayed by a companion, though he adds they were never truly allies to begin with. His amusement turning to grim purpose, the Cyclops points forward at Theo, his voice booming across the clearing as he declares that the time for execution has arrived. In response to the command, the monster army erupts not into an attack on Theo, but into a chaotic free-for-all, turning on one another in a sudden, violent frenzy. Theo watches the pandemonium, utterly bewildered. He cries out in shock, wondering if they've all stumbled into some kind of pitfall trap. He quickly realizes his error as the very ground splits open, revealing not a pit, but a colossal, gaping mouth lined with jagged teeth, swallowing the brawling monsters whole. As the creatures plummet into the earth maw, a horrifying thought strikes Theo. He recognizes the phenomenon, wondering if this could be the legendary man-eating mountain range. The ground stills. A trio of goblins, having somehow survived the carnage, look around in complete bewilderment, questioning what just happened. Their confusion instantly morphs into accusation. The surviving goblins turn on Theo, pointing and shouting that he was the one who attacked them, calling him a fake. As he faces their shouts, a stirring sound from behind makes him turn. He looks down in surprise to see the small, hooded girl, Mimisuk, beginning to sit up. He watched as the small, hooded girl, Mimisuk, explained herself. She declared that she wanted sauce, and clarified that she had only been pretending to be dead. It was absurd to think a level 59 being like herself could be killed by a mere rock thrown by a weakling. She insisted to the human that he shouldn't misunderstand. She had only acted for her own safety. Her eyes widened slightly as she gave her assent. That would be fine. Her agreement was to his sudden proposal, delivered as they both faced the remnants of the monster army. He stated plainly that they were not allies or friends, but enemies who would likely betray and resent one another. However, for the sake of their mutual interests and desires, they would join forces to defeat their common foe. He processed the terms of their new arrangement. This was in essence a pact. She acknowledged his resolve with a simple pout, stating that she understood. With that, Theo's gaze fell upon a sword shimmering with power. If that was the case, then it was time to act. With their pact sealed, he launched himself forward, shouting that the counterattack had begun. He unleashed the Wind King's sword, sending a wave of energy toward the startled goblins below. His attack was abruptly interrupted by a familiar, cheerful voice. Fifi had reappeared beside him, chiding him for being a backstabber who had returned so brazenly. She declared that this was their power, before adding with a grin that she simply sides with whichever party seems more fun and likely to cause chaos. She then demonstrated this power with a triumphant shout, unleashing a tremendous shockwave that tore through the ranks of the monster army. The force of the blast sent the massive Cyclops stumbling backward, stunned. As Theo, Mimosuk, and Fifi stood together, one of the surviving goblins pointed and demanded that the human hand over the sauce. Its single, glowing eye narrowed in utter disbelief and rage. The armored behemoth demanded to know what these beings standing before it even were. Instead of an answer, the armored giant was met with a defiant challenge. Theo, his expression hardening, pointed directly at the behemoth. "It's your turn," he declared, his voice sharp. With his hand outstretched, he invoked his power. Wind manipulation. The resulting force didn't strike the warrior, but the very cliff edge he stood upon. The rock and earth disintegrated into a torrent of sand. The Cyclops jolted, a cry of alarm escaping him as he realized the ground was giving way beneath his feet. In the heat of battle against the towering, armored Cyclops, Theo channels his power, shouting the name of his skill. Material strengthening. His sword begins to glow with a faint light as he prepares to strike a decisive blow. He lunges, aiming for what appears to be a weak point at the giant's neck. However, a dreadful realization dawns on him. His blade cannot pierce the armor. He understands that the Cyclops is deliberately letting him attack this spot, knowing it to be futile. As his sword grinds against the impenetrable metal, the reinforced blade begins to crack under strain. The Cyclops looms over him, its single eye glowing from within its helmet. It speaks, its voice dripping with contempt, dismissing his weapon as a dull sword. The armored giant then roars, mocking Theo's attempt. "You think you can pierce my armor?" In response, the Cyclops hefts its own colossal weapon, bringing it down in a devastating vertical slash aimed directly at the young man. Theo can only watch in shock as his sword, his only means of defense, shatters into countless fragments upon impact with the descending weapon. The Cyclops' attack slams into the stone floor, carving a deep fissure through the ground and sending debris flying everywhere. Theo is nowhere to be seen in the immediate aftermath of the strike. Standing amidst the destruction, the armored figure calmly addresses its opponent. "Human, I'll acknowledge it. You are certainly strong. Your power and technique are greater than my own. But," the Cyclops finishes its assessment, stating plainly, "your weapon can't keep up with you." Having barely dodged the fatal blow and now disarmed, Theo can only stare back, utterly bewildered. "What?" He stares, disarmed, as the armored giant before him brandishes a massive, jagged blade. The Cyclops declares it to be a real sword. The sight of the weapon sends a jolt of shock through him, his eyes widening in disbelief. The armored figure addresses him directly, dismissing his previous weapon as a mass-produced toy unfit for the demon world. He notes the ominous, powerful aura emanating from the new blade. He realizes with a start that the Cyclops had seen through his abilities in such a short time. He understood that his opponent must be holding back, restraining his full power just to keep from breaking his own weapon. Through the single eye of its helmet, the Cyclops announces that as a parting gift, it will show him the true power of its sword, a product of the world's greatest blacksmith race. With a roar, it commands its demonic sword to devour everything. The massive blade cuts through the air, sending Theo stumbling backward to avoid the initial swing. But the attack isn't aimed at him. The goblins standing nearby are caught in the path of the swing, crying out in confusion and terror as their bodies are torn apart. One screams the Cyclops' name, questioning why they are being targeted. The armored warrior states coldly that since they are all going to die anyway, their fate is sealed. It then bellows a final, chilling command. "Become fodder for my demon sword." A wave of pure energy, a crescent of destructive force, erupts from the blade. It flies past the Cyclops, hurtling directly towards Theo and the remaining terrified goblins. He stares in disbelief as the armored giant stands impassively. What was that? Theo thinks, the word echoing in his mind. It's like a level up? The Cyclops seems to hear his unspoken thought, its voice a low rumble from within the helmet. "So, level up," That is the gift of humans? It asks. Confused, Theo can only manage a questioning what? It continues its monologue, stating that while it finds the idea of a life rank increasing to be unbelievable, if it is true for Theo, then it makes the power of its own demon sword easier to accept. The giant's words leave him reeling, trying to grasp their meaning. A dreadful realization begins to dawn on him. What does he mean? Don't tell me. The Cyclops then reveals its own gift, Bloodsmith. It explains that by using living beings as raw material, it can imbue their innate gifts and life force directly into a weapon. It presents the massive, jagged blade, giving it a name, Level Eater. The armored warrior boasts that this very demon sword was forged using the people of an entire town as its components. The horrifying truth crashes down on Theo. Level Eater, a sword that devours life? He thinks, staring at the monstrous weapon and its wielder. The Cyclops continues, explaining that the more the sword cuts, the stronger it becomes, leveling up with each life it takes. It declares that the blade is destined to become the world's strongest sword, a weapon that cannot be sacrificed. His fear gives way to a sharp, calculating grin. He's spotted a weakness. The Cyclops has no magic left after its massive attack, and its armor is too thick to pierce. Now, then, he thinks a plan forming what to do. Theo stands before the hulking, armored figure, a level 61 Cyclops. He understands with grim certainty that his mass-produced sword cannot hope to pierce its thick armor. The creature's weapon is no ordinary blade. It is a magic sword known as the Level Eater, a weapon that grows in power. He assesses his grim situation. With only one sword remaining and no magical energy left to cast a powerful spell, he questions his next move. From a distance, Fifi watches with a smug expression, wondering aloud if Theo has finally run out of options. The Cyclops stands menacingly between them as the smaller hooded girl and horned goblin look on. She cackles, declaring that this is the beginning of despair. She commands the Cyclops to attack, an order echoed by the hooded girl who cheers for her Cyclops master. Theo can only glare at them from below. The Cyclops bellows that it needs no encouragement and surges forward with surprising speed. As it brings its massive blade down, the armored behemoth roars that Theo will become nourishment for its magic sword. With a sharp click of his tongue, Theo throws himself aside, narrowly dodging the devastating strike. His evasion is met with cruel laughter. Fifi taunts him, asking how long he can possibly keep dodging, while the hooded girl chants for the magic sword to claim its prize. Through gritted teeth, Theo tells them to stop. He realizes that at this rate, he'll just be worn down. A new resolve forms in his mind as he thinks, if that's the case, then he throws himself to the side, just as the Cyclops' massive blade crashes down. From nearby, Mimosuk cries out his name in alarm. The blade misses its mark, shattering the ground where he had been moments before. He uses the opening to scramble back to his feet. As he regains his footing, he observes the armored giant struggling to recover from its lunge. He realizes that with such a massive body and heavy armor, it takes considerable effort for the creature to right itself. While he analyzes the situation, Mimosuk sees an opportunity. She thinks that during this brief opening, they must find a weapon that can actually harm the armored foe. She turns to share her idea, but is startled when Theo suddenly grabs her by the hood of her cloak. Confused, she can only utter a small sound of surprise. Her confusion quickly turns to outrage. She demands to know what he is doing, accusing him of being despicable for planning to use her as a shield. From the sidelines, Fifi chimes in, calling him a brute. Annoyed, Theo retorts that they, of all people, have no right to judge him. Their argument is cut short as the Cyclops finally regains its footing, looming over them. It growls, stating that they should have fled when they had the chance. Its single, glowing eye glares down at the pair. It declares its intent to cut them both down at once. Following its declaration, the armored giant raises its massive, serrated sword high, preparing for a devastating downward strike. As the creature stomps forward, Theo knows they're out of time. He realizes that at this rate, they will both be killed. A grim thought crosses his mind about the foolishness of humans. Then, in a desperate gambit, he turns to the terrified girl and asks, Mimosuk, do you want to eat me? She can only stare back, completely bewildered by the question. He holds Mimosuk's head firmly, his expression intense, as he demands an answer to his cryptic question. He presses her, asking what she will do, before trailing off with a quiet, of course. In response, Mimosuk's eyes widen with resolve, and she shouts her unequivocal agreement. She wants to eat him. As she declares this, the Cyclops' armored fist hurtles towards them, closing the distance in an instant. Hearing her declaration, Theo's expression hardens with grim acceptance. I see, he murmurs, then issues a sharp command. Then transform, Mimosuk. The command comes just as the Cyclops' enormous blade descends, striking Theo with overwhelming force. But the blow does not land as expected. A brilliant flash of light erupts where the blade should have connected, stopping the attack cold. Through its single eye, the Cyclops registers utter shock, unable to comprehend why its strike was halted. The source of the light is revealed. Theo now wields a colossal, jagged black sword, effortlessly parrying the armored giant's weapon. The Cyclops recoils in astonishment, recognizing the blade as a second-level eater. He grins with newfound confidence, the crest on the back of his hand glowing brightly. He declares that if their swords are the same, then victory will naturally belong to the stronger wielder. The Cyclops processes this, its eye registering Theo's level as 66. It seems to offer a grudging impressive, before a brilliant light flares within its visor, signaling a critical overload or impact. In the next moment, the Cyclops' heavy plate armor shatters completely, its fragments raining down onto the floor. Standing unscathed nearby, Theo calmly announces, subjugation complete. He stands over the inert, broken remains of the armored foe, the dust from the confrontation slowly settling around him in the quiet aftermath. He gazes at the back of his left hand, where the crest glows brightly. With this power, he realizes his level has reached 67. The massive black sword in his grip, the level eater, begins to tremble violently before dissolving into particles of light. In its place, Mimosuk materializes with a soft pop. Tears well up in her eyes as she complains about the terrible ordeal she just went through. As she recovers, Fifi appears beside them. She remarks that while it was a gamble to see how far the mimicry could go, Theo's level 59 gift is clearly exceptional. She then expresses her surprise that he would think to turn Mimosuk into a demonic sword. The ability is a manifestation of Mimosuk's innate gift, known as Thousand-Face Transformation. It allows her to mimic what a creature desires. The transformation was a fusion of Theo's desire to eat his opponent and Mimosuk's own wish for a weapon. However, a crucial limitation exists. Mimosuk cannot mimic anything she has no knowledge of. He reflects on this power, reasoning that if she possesses the strength to become a giant mountain or even an amusement park, then mimicking a single magic sword should not be beyond her grasp. Fifi chimes in, confirming that Mimosuk is indeed a capable girl who can accomplish much when she tries. She points out to Theo that he has found a proper use for her. Mimosuk excitedly adds that if it comes down to it, she can even serve as emergency rations. Fifi turns her full attention to Theo. She states that with this newfound application of her power, there should be no problem with him taking Mimosuk along on his journey. He considers her proposition, his gaze shifting to the side in thought. After a moment of silence, he relents, telling them to do as they please. Fifi and Mimosuk erupt in celebration, with Fifi cheering that they succeeded. She watches him, a sly smile playing on her lips. The level eater that Mimosuk had transformed into would surely be necessary in the future. She concludes that the benefits of keeping them close outweigh the risk of betrayal. Mimosuk, now back in her hooded form, notices Theo's intense stare. Her hood's ears twitch in annoyance as she confronts him, asking why he is staring and if he wishes to be eaten. Fifi lets out a quiet chuckle, amused by the interaction. She muses that gaining Mimosuk's full cooperation will be a challenge, as her power isn't suited for everyday use. Observing this, Theo internally laments how thoroughly disliked he seems to be. The three of them stand in a desolate, barren landscape under a sky thick with clouds. A fallen pursuer lies dead in the foreground. Theo is taken aback, finding it hard to believe they are being hunted on such a massive scale. The view expands to reveal the true scope of the failed pursuit. The wasteland is littered with the bodies of those who had been sent after them, a testament to the battle that had taken place. Fifi addresses the grim scene, remarking that it's no surprise they are being viewed as the greatest threat in history. Mimosuk agrees that it seems like a very serious situation. Fifi then turns to Theo, asking if he's having second thoughts before pointedly reminding him that he was the one who killed Marquis Siren. He retorts, asking why she speaks as if she's an uninvolved observer. In response, Fifi claps her hands and cheerfully congratulates Mimosuk, declaring her an accomplice. She then points out that Theo also killed his pursuers, making them equally guilty. The realization hits Mimosuk with the force of a physical blow. The girl begins to wail, crying that she wants to go home. Fifi bluntly informs her that the man-eating mountain range she once called home has already been completely destroyed. With the matter settled and her companions' former lives left in ruins behind them, Fifi turns their attention forward. She gestures ahead, telling both the despondent Mimosuk and the tense Theo to look. Following her command, they gaze out from a high vantage point over a vast, terraced landscape. On the distant horizon, a brilliant pillar of light shines into the sky. Fifi declares that this is their next destination. As the group travels towards the distant pillar of light, Fifi identifies their destination. Before them lies a sprawling city, completely encased within a massive, shimmering dome-like barrier. She announces that this is the barrier city, Shiria. Within this protected city stands a particularly grand and imposing structure, the Grand Cathedral. As her gaze fixes upon it, Fifi wonders aloud about its supposed sanctity. The view shifts to the cathedral's vast, shadowed interior. Rows of empty pews stretch towards a distant, solitary figure standing before the altar, as Fifi's contemplative voice echoes the same thought. The words belong to Fifi, whose lips curve into a subtle, knowing smile. How holy, she muses, her tone laced with a cynical edge as ethereal white feathers begin to drift down around her. The massive stone edifice of the castle gate to the boundary city, Shiria, looms before them. The heavy doors are parted just enough to reveal a sliver of the darkness within. Stepping through, Theo and Harry gasp in unison, their eyes wide with utter astonishment at the sight. Their arrival has not gone unnoticed. A city guard, spotting Theo's strange, bulky disguise alongside his companions, immediately sounds the alarm, shouting that they are under attack by monsters. Ellie turns to Theo, a wry smile playing on her lips as she remarks on the surprise of finding an autonomous city of humans. Theo, however, ignores her, his hand tightening on the hilt of his sheathed sword as his expression becomes grim. Her smile widens into a knowing smirk. She realizes Theo must have been aware of this place all along, despite his earlier claims that it was merely a breeding ground enclosed by a barrier. Across the courtyard, the guard raises his bow, aiming an arrow directly at them. He yells at the monster to stop lying, claiming he has no wish to fight, a statement contradicted by his aggressive posture. Theo holds up a hand in a placating gesture, insisting that he is human. The guard remains unconvinced, shouting back that if he truly is human, he must prove it by showing the level crest on his right hand. Nearby, Harry and other onlookers watch the tense exchange. He had anticipated this. Theo recalls his last major battle, realizing it had given him a clear measure of his enemy's true power. He had hoped to lie low and gather information, but that path was now closed. Sensing his hesitation, Ellie leans close and whispers a dark proposition. She points out that showing his level 67 crest would only prove he's a monster. She then poses a chilling question. Could he prove his humanity by killing Mimosuk right here and demonstrating a level up? Before he can even process the horrific suggestion, Mimosuk acts. She throws back her hood with a sudden, sharp movement, thrusts her small hand forward to display a crest, and declares with all her might, I'm human. She stands her ground as a knight with light, spiky hair examines her, confirming her status as level 1. The knight, seemingly pleased, praises her cleverness. Theo, observing the exchange, realizes the knight's logic. It's uncommon for humans and monsters to travel together, so her low level supports their claim of being human. Before she can clarify the situation, stammering a denial, she is interrupted. The interruption comes from Ellie, who dramatically points at Theo and declares him a monster, crying out that she has been magnificently betrayed. She continues her performance, pleading for help and falsely claiming Theo intended to eat her as preserved food. Theo, stunned by the accusation, denies it, while Mimosuk shows her disdain for the lie. The realization dawns on Theo that he is being branded a monster by another human. The commotion draws the attention of the archer guard, who turns to the knight commander, demanding to know what is happening. The knight commander, Luke, calmly addresses Theo directly, asking if he is the deserter they were expecting. He explains that a monster's agent has appeared outside the barrier, and that he believes Theo is a human who has come to them. Confused, Theo questions being called a deserter. In response, Luke's expression brightens into a wide, welcoming smile. With open arms, he enthusiastically invites them to enter the city. His sudden change in demeanor leaves Theo, Mimosuk, and even Ellie utterly bewildered. As the group hesitates, Luke turns back to the skeptical archer guard. He explains that Theo is a human, a deserter, who has escaped the dominion of monsters to rebel. When the guard questions how they can be certain, Luke states that the barrier will serve as the ultimate test. If they cannot pass, they are not human. The guard remains doubtful, recalling that one of the girls had accused the other of being a monster. Ellie reassures Theo, noting that passing through the barrier only makes one's body feel heavy. He inwardly marvels at the seemingly lax security, just as he feels the strange pressure of the barrier settling over him. Having passed through the barrier, Ellie confidently explains its function. She surmises it can likely defend against wild monsters up to level 40, adding that they only pass through with ease because their own levels are so high. Her words stood in stark contrast to Harry, who was straining heavily while giving Mimosuk a piggyback ride. Mimosuk nonchalantly asks if Harry needs a break, noting that some people lack stamina, but clarifies that they're simply frail by nature. Taking over the duty, Theo now carries Mimosuk on his back. He and his companions gaze out from a high vantage point, taking in the breathtaking view of the city of Shiria spreading out below them. As they walk through the festive streets, Harry remarks with a sigh of relief that for a human city, it is quite beautiful. Their guide, the knight commander, formally addresses them. He welcomes the deserters to the barrier city of Shiria and introduces himself as Luke Radius. He adds that, despite his youth, they should consider him the city's official representative. He extends a hand, which Theo firmly grasps. Theo introduces himself as an adventurer, prompting a curious look from Luke. Continuing the introductions, Luke asks about their relationships. Ellie steps in, declaring herself to be Fifi Re-Birthday, Theo's owner, and Mimosuk to be their pet. Luke brushes the odd statement aside, telling them not to worry and offering to provide whatever they need. Theo gratefully accepts, admitting it would be a great help. As they walk, Luke announces he is inviting them to the Grand Cathedral in the city center. The citizens swoon over their popular knight commander, while others curiously observe Ellie and Mimosuk. They find Mimosuk adorable, but are perplexed by Ellie, wondering if she's floating or translucent. Amid the commotion, Theo feels an intense stare and turns to see a guard glaring at him with undisguised hostility. Luke notices his distraction and quietly points out the guard her gaze. The Knight Commander quickly reassures him, stating that it is safe inside the barrier. Looking at the peaceful townsfolk around them, Theo has to agree, remarking on how peaceful it all seems. He listened as Knight Commander Luke explained that while the barrier protected them, it also meant the people of Shiria could barely see the outside world. This, Theo realized, was why even Ellie, clinging to his arm, was being treated as a normal human despite her appearance. The Knight Commander continued with a wistful smile, admitting that his people knew nothing of the true color of the sky, nor the origins of the wind and water. He confessed it was his dream to one day see it all for himself. His words struck a chord with Theo, who gazed back with a newfound determination, his thoughts fixed on the outside world. As they continued through the city, a crowd of citizens in monster costumes gathered, eagerly asking Theo about the world beyond the barrier. Unfazed but curious, Theo asked about their attire, prompting Luke to explain that they were in the midst of the Hero Festival. The word hero echoed in his mind. It was a term he had never encountered before. Luke elaborated, explaining that this might just be a local legend, but it tells of a day when a courageous person, a hero, will rise up to save humanity from the monsters. He continued, detailing the festival's climax. After days of revelry in monster costumes, everyone sheds their disguises on the final day, a collective prayer for liberation from the monster's dominion. Theo smiled, finding the rebellious spirit of the festival to his liking. Luke then looked at him with earnest conviction, stating his belief that Theo himself is the kind of person who could become the hero. He elaborated on this belief, convinced that among all the people he has known or will know, Theo is the only one who would truly dare to defy the monsters. The weight of such a declaration left Theo momentarily speechless, unable to process the immense faith being placed upon him. He stands silently as Fifi remarks on humanity's tendency to rely on others. She questions why he can't simply declare that he will become the hero himself, rather than waiting for one. In response to her pointed words, he quietly admits that he couldn't become a hero. Before he can elaborate, Knight Commander Luke announces that they have arrived. Theo looks up, asking what he means. Luke gestures towards a magnificent, towering structure, explaining that this is the great cathedral, the pride of the fortified city of Shiria. Inside, a lavish welcome feast has been prepared. Luke's voice invites them to the dining hall for the banquet. As they take their seats, Luke explains that he sent a messenger ahead to make the arrangements. Theo, looking at the spread, wonders if this is all too much, while Luke attempts to continue their earlier conversation. He looks down at the food, brushing aside his own concerns and muttering that it's nothing. Nearby, Mimisuk wastes no time, her cheeks puffed out as she eagerly chews on a piece of bread. A look of pure, unadulterated joy spreads across her face as she savors the taste. The moment is broken by Fifi, who loudly declares the meal to be decent for what she considers livestock feed. Mimisuk freezes, startled by the insult, as musicians play on in the background. The feast continues in the great cathedral. While Theo takes full advantage of the spread, his cheeks full of food, Knight Commander Luke leans in close. He addresses Theo directly, asking if he would be willing to share stories of the outside world. Behind him, another burly knight and an enthusiastic Harry gesture eagerly, seconding the request and insisting that everyone present wants to hear the tales. Inside the knight's quarters, the burly knight unrolls a document on the table before Theo and Luke. As Luke looks on with curiosity, Theo recognizes the item. It's called a map, he explains, though the knight seems slightly confused by the term. Leaning closer, Theo points to a specific section. "What's this dark area?" he asks. The knight, rummaging for something, notes that it's a good find and asks what it is. He clarifies that the small point on the map is the entire barrier city of Shiria. Then, gesturing to the vast, surrounding expanse, he asks if the massive body of water is the sea. Luke's eyes widen in amazement at the realization. He leans forward, his expression bright with excitement, and declares that he wants to hear more, not just about the outside world, but about Theo's adventures as well. Meanwhile, at a nearby table, Mimisuk is slumped over, fast asleep after a meal. An unseen person tries to rouse her, pointing out that there is still food left on her plate. The burly knight observes that Theo's young companion is exhausted. He suggests that since it is late, they should stay the night, offering them a room prepared in a separate building. Theo gratefully accepts, acknowledging how much they've helped him. As they prepare to part for the evening, Theo thanks Luke for listening to so many of his stories. Luke insists that he wants to hear even more the next day, and Theo agrees. Luke enthusiastically accepts the promise. With a warm smile, Theo gives the young knight a friendly pat on the head before they separate. However, Luke stops him, his expression turning serious. He asks Theo why he continues to adventure when he could simply hide from the monsters. Theo replies that to live like that would be no different from being in a cage, and reveals that his adventure has a specific purpose. Luke quietly repeats the word, purpose, his gaze hardening with resolve. Theo makes a stunning declaration to the wide-eyed knight. "I will subjugate the Demon King," he proclaims, "and liberate humanity." He finishes his declaration, telling Luke that he will win so that Luke, too, can one day see the outside world. The Knight Commander can only stare, speechless at such a promise. Struck by the immense scale of this vow, Luke questions if Theo truly believes a human can defeat not just one or two, but every single monster. With unwavering resolve, Theo confirms that he has made his decision to win. The sheer conviction in Theo's voice overwhelms the Knight Commander. With a shaky breath and tears forming in his eyes, Luke realizes what kind of person stands before him. A hero, Luke whispers in awe. Theo simply offers a humble smile, replying that he doesn't believe he is anything so grand. Later, Theo is shown to his new quarters. As the door closes, Fifi informs him that she and Mimisuk will be waiting just outside, instructing him to call if he needs anything. From inside, he acknowledges her offer. From the hallway, Fifi secretly observes Theo. She scoffs internally at what she perceives as foolish humans fawning over him, questioning if their goal is simply to make him feel welcome. Inside, Theo takes in the sight of the luxurious room he's been given. Her voice suddenly echoes in his mind, asking if he doesn't feel welcomed. Startled, Theo looks around, and she telepathically concedes that perhaps he is right to be suspicious. However, elsewhere, Knight Commander Luke stands with a determined expression, while in a dimly lit chamber, a group of mysterious robed figures gather. Back in the room, Fifi's voice presses him, asking if he has noticed it as well. He looks up from the floor to find that she has suddenly appeared in the room before him. Yes, he replies, confirming his awareness of the strange situation. He holds the bowl of food, his eyes narrowed in sudden, chilling comprehension. He declares that the humans in this fortified city are allies of the monsters, and that he has just captured a deserter. In response to his accusation, a confident, knowing smirk spreads across Fifi's face. She coolly asks if that is the extent of his deduction. He retorts that she seems unaccustomed to deception, noting that from the very beginning, there were far too many suspicious points. He continues, questioning why they use the same term as the monsters, deserters, for those who flee. He also wonders how an isolated city could afford to be so generous with its food, concluding it's clear they are dependent on the monsters. He reminds her that she herself had called this place a mere farm. But the most decisive piece of evidence, he reveals with a grim expression, was the poison laced within the meal he was given. The revelation visibly startles Fifi. He explains that it was a sleeping poison. While a toxin of that nature would have no effect on him at his current level, it was potent enough to affect Mimisuk, who is currently disguised as a level 1 human. On the bed, Fifi mutters in her sleep, seemingly affected as well. Fifi questions his certainty, and he confirms it, adding that he was fortunate they acted as his tasters. He explains that although he detected an unusual scent in the food, he couldn't identify the exact nature of the poison on his own. At this, Fifi seems to reach an understanding. She realizes that this discovery is the reason he abruptly stopped discussing his plans to level up. With a serious look, he confirms her deduction is correct. His thoughts drift to his past. He recalls his friends from his hometown, who rejected the path to freedom even after learning about leveling up. He understands their hesitation. For an ordinary person, fighting monsters requires immense training, and he himself had to wait 18 years for his chance. He contrasts them with the people of the city of Song, who placed their hopes in him, yet still didn't fight. Then his thoughts turn to Luke and the people of the city. They are different. They are armed and openly wish for liberation from the monsters, yearning for the outside world. He considers that even if the people of Shiria are under monster rule, he might be willing to fight alongside them, provided they possess the genuine resolve to rebel. This was his line of thinking, at least until the moment he detected the poison. Fifi interjects, reminding him of her initial warning. Making an enemy of the king would turn even humans against him. Theo's expression hardens as he retorts that he understands. He clarifies that he doesn't see it as the city's people betraying him, but rather that he has chosen to make them his enemy. She continues her cold explanation, confirming that the city is nothing more than a farm. Human self-governance is merely a solution to the demon world's labor shortage. The protective barrier guards the livestock from wild monsters, and raising them stress-free improves the meat quality. The entire system, she elaborates, is constructed for the sole purpose of efficiently harvesting sacrifices. She dismisses the title of hero as being no different from a songbird, another term for sacrifice. In this system, a courageous individual is meant to rise up, only to become the offering that saves the rest of the populace. She concludes that since the world is ultimately under the dominion of monsters, she has resolved to fight against it, and has no intention of softening her words. As she speaks, Theo listens from the window, his expression unreadable. His hand tightens into a fist, the knuckles whitening with pressure. A single thought crystallizes in his mind. That's why. All the people here, including the Knight Commander, are his enemies. Within a grand, cathedral-like structure, a voice wonders aloud, questioning if this is a holy place. Inside, standing guard in the main hall, Knight Commander Luke and his burly companion share the same thought, murmuring to each other about the sanctity of their post. As they and other robed figures stand watch, a brilliant winged form materializes at the far end of the aisle. A serene voice drifts towards them, offering congratulations. The being reveals herself fully, an angelic figure with a glowing halo. She announces that she is the Seraphim, a savior who has arrived to become the new pillar of the demon world. With a slight smile, she adds that she is a holy being, far above the inferior creature she now addresses. Her words are met with immediate hostility. Luke, perceiving her as a threat, bellows, "Enemy attack." He commands his first squad to protect the holy sword while ordering the second to engage as they were trained. He lets out a sharp, choked gasp, his command cut short by an unforeseen horror. Despite their commander's hesitation, the knights surge forward, weapons raised as they charge the serene, winged figure. Before they can reach her, they collapse. Luke stares, aghast, as the Seraphim stands amidst the fallen, a dark substance pooling at her feet. "What did I do?" she asks with feigned innocence. "I haven't done anything at all." Her expression shifts to a cold, knowing smile. She explains that because they pointed their weapons at her, a holy being, their hearts simply ruptured and they died. This, she declares, is the rule by which this world operates. Luke's face contorts in disbelief and horror. "What? That reasoning? It's impossible," he stammers, struggling to process the cruel fact that has been forced upon him. He could only watch in horror as the angelic being, Seraphim, stood over the bodies of his fallen comrades. She declared that this was the power of a monster, and that humans were foolish creatures for daring to point their swords at her sacred self. The sight of his knight commander's lifeless face cemented a horrifying realization in the young knight's mind. It was a fairy tale to think a hero could exist. He believed humans could never win against such a being. All their training, wisdom, and courage were meaningless. Meanwhile, Seraphim considered that as a great being, it was her duty to guide them correctly. As this despair washed over the knight, another observer, Theo, watched with wide eyes. He understood with chilling clarity that humans couldn't defeat monsters like this, like Lady Seraphim. His realization was punctuated by a new development. A group of robed figures knelt before Seraphim, who now sat upon a raised dais. One of them reported that they had successfully captured the deserters. In response to the report, a faint, self-satisfied smile touched Seraphim's lips as she internally mused on how holy she was. Nearby, Theo remained utterly speechless. The tense silence was broken by the remaining knight, Luke. His face was a mask of grief and shock as he addressed the being on the throne, his voice trembling. He was immediately cut off by her chillingly calm voice. Seraphim questioned if he had been given permission to stop praising her, adding with false sympathy that she, in her mercy, was deeply saddened by his insubordination. Despite her warning, Luke pressed on, a desperate urgency in his voice. "But," he began, trying to convey something important. A female knight beside him looked on, her expression turning to alarm as Seraphim's smile widened. Her smile vanished. With a casual air, she declared that for talking back, the punishment was death by suffocation. But the magic did not strike Luke. Instead, the female knight beside him suddenly gasped, her hands flying to her throat as she began to choke, unable to draw breath. As the knight's life slipped away, Seraphim turned her cold gaze upon Luke. She declared that in this world, she, the very arbiter of justice, was the one and only rule. This monstrous declaration sent a shockwave through Theo, who watched from afar. He erupted, screaming in furious disbelief, questioning how any of this could be considered holy. Unmoved, Seraphim continued her address, her voice dripping with condescension. She asked if they had understood her wise report, then magnanimously offered them her forgiveness and permission to express their gratitude for having been heard. With her final breath, the dying knight choked out words of thanks, a blissful expression on her face as she welcomed her cruel fate. With the execution concluded, Seraphim turned her attention to a robed figure. She mused that deserters were only human and thus simple to dispose of, then demanded to know their location. The figure reported that they were sleeping in a separate building. She then commanded Luke to do what was right. Looking down at the kneeling knight, Seraphim questioned whether he even possessed the qualifications to be saved by her, declaring that she would now show him the way. Her ominous words caused the robed figures to startle. From their hiding spot, Theo and Harry could only watch, frozen in shock and anticipation. At an unspoken signal, the robed figures began to walk, leading the group away. As they were moved, Luke turned to Theo and Harry, his face a mask of grim resolve. He stated that they had finally come this far, and now, by killing Theo, they could finally earn the qualification for salvation. The robed figures eagerly addressed him as Knight Commander Luke, excited by the prospect of receiving Seraphim's salvation and going to the outside world together. Luke agreed aloud, saying yes, that's right, but his private thoughts drifted to that other world. He stood alone, gazing out a window into the night, his mind heavy with the decision he had to make. His thoughts drifted to an earlier conversation where Theo had passionately explained how small their barrier city was compared to the vastness of the outside world. As he recalled Theo's inspiring words, his hand clenched into a fist. He understood why his followers were so easily swayed. Even he felt the pull of that hope. His knights watched him, their expressions filled with concern. Theo had declared with unwavering certainty that he would defeat the king of monsters and free humanity. To Luke, he seemed like a legendary hero from the old tales. The memory of his confident smile was sharp and clear, but a grim reality shattered the memory. He believed they stood no chance against Seraphim. Humans couldn't defeat monsters. Therefore, he concluded, Theo's adventure had to end here. His eyes hardened with grim resolve. If it must be done, then he would do it with his own hands for the sake of his Night Order. He turned to his followers and made his choice clear. He would prioritize the salvation of his city's people over Theo, a man he had only just met. Later, he checked on his targets. A subordinate reported that after some quiet chatter, they had fallen silent. The sleeping drug had worked. In another room, Theo lay fast asleep, oblivious. The door creaked open, revealing Luke with his sword drawn and Harry at his side, ready to carry out their grim task. He lay helpless on the floor, the drug rendering him completely vulnerable. Above him, Knight Commander Luke hesitated, his sword raised. A flicker of regret crossed the knight's face as he thought that if they had met under different circumstances, they might have adventured into the outside world together. As Luke wrestled with his decision, two of his fellow knights, the burly man and the determined woman, patrolled a nearby corridor, their footsteps echoing as they searched for their commander. They rounded a corner and stopped short, their eyes widening in alarm. Before them, Theo was collapsed on the floor near a stunned Harry. The two knights immediately rushed toward the scene. Suddenly, Theo's eyes snapped open. He found himself looking up at the small, hooded girl, Mimisuk, who was perched on his chest and shouting in a panic, demanding to know what the human was doing. He turned his head to see Fifi, who sighed in relief, glad that it was just Mimisuk and not a true threat. Mimisuk, however, puffed her cheeks in indignation, telling the human to calm down. Ignoring her outburst, Theo asked if she had managed to acquire any information. Mimisuk proudly confirmed she had, then clarified that she hadn't been discovered, puffing her chest out and declaring that the word discovered doesn't exist in her dictionary. He seemed to accept this, noting that at least she hadn't been caught. His attention then shifted to Fifi, who stood beside him, trembling uncontrollably. Mimisuk, seeing Fifi's state, began to panic, exclaiming that something terrible was there. When pressed for a more specific description, she could only stammer that it was super bad and gestured wildly, trying to convey its appearance. Before she could explain further, a brilliant light filled the corridor. A winged figure descended, its form angelic and imposing. Theo stared in disbelief, recognizing it as an angel, while Fifi, her face pale with shock, identified the being Seraphim, the death angel. Her eyes widened in a mixture of fury and disbelief. She gritted her teeth, wondering aloud why that creature was here. Fifi urgently grabs Theo, insisting they must leave this town and the entire region immediately. Her intensity makes Theo question the severity of the threat, asking just how dangerous their pursuer is. She explains that the Seraphim is one of the 7 dukes, asking if that isn't reason enough for him to understand the danger. The being's power is made clear. A glowing symbol materializes, confirming the Seraphim is level 75. A halo of light, a level crest, shines above her head as she stands with an imposing aura. Fifi warns Theo that, as he is now, he stands no chance of winning against such an opponent. He silently concedes the point, realizing this entity is on par with Fifi's complete form and even manipulates humans. With no time to waste, she pulls him along, promising to share more information later. Her only focus is getting away before the Seraphim discovers them, which would lead to serious trouble. He allows himself to be led, internally acknowledging that Fifi is not joking. He reasons that fighting here would likely cause immense collateral damage in a peaceful-looking town. Deciding to force the issue, Fifi declares her intent to possess him. Just as her energy begins to envelop Theo, Knight Commander Luke appears, grabbing her arm and telling her to stop. That's enough, he commands. Having halted the possession, he turns his gaze forward with grim determination, announcing, I'm going. At that exact moment, the deep, resonant toll of a massive bell begins to echo through the halls. The urgent ringing continues, and Luke stops dead in his tracks, startled and tensing up as he recognizes the sound of an alarm. As the urgent toll of the summons bell echoed through the halls, a robed figure clutched their head, startled by the sudden command. Nearby, Knight Commander Luke confronted a burly knight, demanding to know what he was doing. The robed figure stumbled, feeling unwell, as Luke's voice carried from a distance, ordering them to hurry to the chapel. He warned that being late would mean being killed by the Seraphim. Luke's attention then shifted back to the burly knight, his tone softening as he asked if he was all right. The knight, looking away, insisted he would go on ahead. The knight then turned to Theo, apologizing for the hardship his own weakness had caused them. He added that he would understand if they resented him for it. Theo stared back, utterly confused by the sudden apology. The knight continued, his voice gaining conviction as he declared that their suffering was almost over. A wide, hopeful smile spread across the burly knight's face. He proclaimed that they would finally be saved, for their salvation was about to begin. The word salvation echoed in Theo's mind. He recalled Luke using the same term and began to question its true meaning. He wondered if it was really about the festival story of a hero saving humanity or something else entirely. As the knight and the robed figure walked away, the knight called back, telling Theo to come to the chapel without delay. A sudden thought struck Theo, and he called out to him. He asked what had become of the deserter. The hopeful light in the burly knight's eyes instantly vanished, replaced by a cold, grim shadow. He listened to the knight's unspoken confirmation, his own face a mixture of dread and resignation. The knight Luke finally spoke, his expression grim. "I killed him," he stated flatly. Theo could only manage a quiet, stunned reply. "I see." Luke then revealed the first part of his plan, thinking to himself that the decoys he had Mimisu create and leave in their room seemed to have successfully fooled their captors. With the ruse in place, he urged them forward. "This is our chance to escape," he declared, explaining that they must move while the Seraphim's attention was diverted. As they hurried away, the scene in the chapel confirmed where that attention was focused. An announcement echoed through the hall. The execution of the deserters was complete. Before the enthroned Seraphim, 3 robed figures knelt at execution blocks. Luke briefly pondered a minor detail about a girl who had become corporeal, but quickly dismissed it as unimportant. The finality of the execution struck Theo with immense force. He stared at the ground, a grim realization dawning on him. Even a man who seemed like a true hero had been killed so easily. This, he thought, was the fate of humans in this place. Back in the chapel, the Seraphim addressed the kneeling executioners. She claimed to be deeply moved that even savage humans could learn to perform righteous acts, all thanks to her divine guidance. Spreading her wings in a grand display, she offered her congratulations. "You have earned the qualification for salvation," she proclaimed to the robed figures. Her benevolent expression then twisted into a cruel, knowing smile. "And now, as promised," she purred, her voice dripping with malice, "let us begin the salvation." Meanwhile, Luke reached his objective, a grand staircase leading to a single sword displayed on a pedestal. As the Seraphim's distant command to do the right thing echoed in the air, he gave a sharp grunt of acknowledgement and ascended the steps. He firmly grasped the weapon's hilt. This was it, the holy sword of the White Knight. He recalled the legends. It was the ancient artifact that maintained a barrier around the city. If the stories were true, this sword was their only way out. The Knight Commander grasps the hilt of the ancient sword, and with a surge of power, the barrier is dispelled. As he holds the blade, the great dome of energy encasing the city cracks and shatters into nothingness. From a high vantage point, a shadowy entity observes the event with silent intensity. Meanwhile, in the Grand Hall, the Seraphim pauses her ceremony. She notes with satisfaction that the troublesome barrier is now gone, clearing the way for her salvation, and declares that she will now become their holy proclamation. She turns her gaze to the robed figures kneeling before her. With a serene expression, she announces their cause of death: infection. Elsewhere, Theo overhears the declaration, his face a mask of confusion. The word makes no sense to him. His confusion is cut short by a sudden commotion. One of the robed figures convulses violently, his hands clawing at his own throat as guttural sounds escape his lips. Harry and the female knight watch, their eyes wide with shock. The man's agonized screams fill the air as he thrashes, crying out that his body is unbearably itchy. As he tears at his own flesh, dark, corrupted veins spread rapidly across his neck, a grotesque pattern marking the progress of the so-called infection. The horror spreads. The other robed figures begin to stumble and seize, their bodies succumbing to the same violent affliction as the female knight looks on in dismay. Watching the scene unfold, Harry's face drains of all color. His eyes are wide with pure terror as he realizes the true, horrific nature of the Seraphim's salvation. His terror was justified. Before his very eyes, the infected convulsed, their mouths stretching wide to reveal rows of sharp fangs as their hands contorted into wicked claws. The horrific process concluded in moments, leaving behind not men, but monsters. The Seraphim's voice echoed, offering congratulations to the newly formed creatures, now standing with crazed, empty eyes. Her voice drew Luke's horrified gaze upward. The winged being declared that through her holy grace, the weak level 1 humans had been reborn as powerful level 5 ghouls. She continued, a faint smile on her lips, proclaiming that this transformation, ceasing to be mere livestock to become monsters, was the very definition of salvation. Her words struck a strange chord within Luke. A startling thought surfaced. If he were to become a monster, he could finally live freely. The Seraphim then revealed the full extent of their new power. She explained that the ghouls possessed a gift, body-biting possession, which allowed them to convert anyone they bid into another ghoul. With this power, she commanded, they were to save the other humans. At her command, the pack of newly made ghouls turned as one, their crazed eyes locking onto Luke and the remaining untransformed knights. As the monsters prepared to descend upon them, a quiet thought surfaced in Luke's mind, a faint, grim smile touching his lips. With this, he would no longer have to fear monsters. The thought solidified into a desperate hope. He could finally go to the outside world. Under the cover of night, Knight Commander Luke lands softly on the stone pavement outside a large, dark building. He glances back at the structure, relieved. They had managed to get out of the great cathedral without any problems. His attention returns to his companions, two robed figures. One of them, with the small creature Mimisuk perched on her shoulder, asks what their plan is for leaving the town. Luke replies that for now, they should probably focus on leveling up. Despite his calm suggestion, Luke's expression hardens. He internally admits that the idea of simply running away doesn't sit right with him. Their path leads them into a crowded square where the hero festival is in full swing. Mimisuk remarks how much more lively and bustling it is compared to when they saw it during the day, with countless kobolds celebrating. One of the robed figures concedes that while the vibrant atmosphere is convenient for an escape, it presents its own problems. The other figure voices this concern directly, asking Luke how they are supposed to break through the outer wall amid such a dense crowd. Luke internally weighs his options. Climbing or using his Wind King's leg ability to jump over would be too conspicuous. He even considers digging a tunnel under the wall, but dismisses it as impossible with so many people around. As he mulls over their predicament, his companions grow agitated. One whispers, questioning why the salvation is later than usual. The other complains, asking how long they must remain in disguise and where the barrier knights are. Luke listens, his expression shifting to one of concern. A sudden realization dawns on him. He wonders if there's trouble, realizing that their current disguises might paradoxically make them stand out even more. Suddenly, Fifi cries out, pointing towards the sky. "Theo, look at that!" she shouts, her voice filled with alarm. Startled, he turns to see what has shocked her. From his own vantage point, Luke sees it too, a brilliant pillar of light erupting from the city's central spire, piercing the heavens. He can only gasp in astonishment. The pillar of light strikes an invisible dome high above, which shatters like glass. Shards of energy rain down as the unseen barrier breaks apart. Below, the disguised companions can only stare upwards in disbelief. As the last of the energy fades, Fifi sighs in relief, remarking that the annoying barrier is finally gone. She notes that being at its center must have been suppressing her power, as her body now feels much lighter. Nearby, the robed figures stir from their trance, looking around in confusion. Theo, however, remains tense. His eyes narrow as a new sensation washes over him, an immense and sudden pressure. Luke feels it as well, a powerful presence that makes him clench his fist. What is this? He wonders, sensing the overwhelming force. The source of the pressure reveals itself. A colossal, menacing face made of dark energy forms in the sky above the central building, a wide, sharp-toothed grin spreading across it. Fifi and Theo look on in horror. Seraphim, Fifi whispers, recognizing the entity. She wonders aloud if it has revealed itself because it was trying to hide from them. Her words spark a theory in Theo's mind. He considers that the Seraphim might have dropped the barrier because it believed he was dead, letting its guard down. It's a convoluted plan, but it fits with a being who, despite being level 700,000, would arrange for a human to kill him. He concludes this enemy must enjoy such elaborate schemes. He continues his assessment, muttering that at least this foe isn't the type to be defeated through simple, brute force like someone he knows. Fifi looks at him, puzzled. "Who are you talking about?" she asks. He now understood why Fico had said she couldn't win against the current foe. As this thought crossed his mind, a group of robed figures arrived in the plaza. One of the onlookers shouted that the barrier knights had come. Their silhouettes stood starkly against the city backdrop, a line of imposing, silent figures. From the crowd's perspective, they were a wall of shadows, their presence radiating an unnerving stillness. Despite the ominous air, Knight Commander Luke turned to Theo, his voice filled with hope. He asked if the barrier would be okay, and if the knights would repair it before more monsters arrived. Mimisuk fidgeted nervously beside him, but Theo only felt a strange, unsettling sensation prickle his senses. His unease was not unfounded. Elsewhere, a citizen in a cloak and helmet confronted one of the newly arrived knights, demanding an explanation. He pleaded with the silent figure, stating that the lack of answers was making him anxious. His anxiety quickly turned to sheer terror. He suddenly screamed at the top of his lungs for everyone to run, but it was too late. The knights closed in, surrounding him. The terrified man could only stare as one of the figures turned and asked what he was talking about. In a horrifying instant, the knights revealed their true forms. They were ghouls, their faces pale and twisted, with pointed ears, sharp fangs, and the seraphim's circular mark on their foreheads. They lunged at the man, sinking their teeth into his body as, in the distance, Theo's group watched the carnage unfold. The man collapsed in a pool of his own blood as the ghouls began to feast. Luke stared, aghast, questioning if this was some kind of performance. Mimisuk looked on in horror. Theo, however, watched with grim certainty, murmuring that the man had not been saved. A close-up on one of the ghouls revealed a wide, sadistic grin, its mouth filled with needle-like teeth, savoring the slaughter. Its transformation complete, the ghoul let out a guttural roar. Its face, once human, was now a twisted mask of sharp teeth and vacant eyes, drool dripping from its maw. As the monstrous shriek echoed, Fifi calmly identified the creature for a stunned Theo. She noted it was a level 5 ghoul, a type of monster that turns any human it bites into another one of its kind. Her explanation was cut short as the newly formed ghoul spun around, its predatory gaze locking onto Knight Commander Luke. He flinched back, his eyes wide with shock as he stammered the obvious. It was a monster. His realization was drowned out by a wave of terror sweeping through the crowd. Citizens screamed in panic, shouting that a monster had appeared in the middle of the city and urging everyone to flee. Amidst the chaos, Luke shouted a warning not to turn one's back, as they would be targeted. Theo quickly understood that unintelligent monsters instinctively chase those who flee. As Fifi watched with detached amusement, Theo resolved to fight, knowing he had to do something. Before Theo could act, Luke stepped forward, unleashing his power. He roared, Wind King's sword, and a blast of energy erupted from his blade, striking down several of the ghouls at once. Fifi casually turned to him, asking if he was all right. A nearby citizen, stunned by the display, turned to Theo in disbelief, asking if the knight had just defeated the monster in a single strike. Theo himself looked on, a hint of surprise on his face. Despite the knight's intervention, the panic hadn't subsided. People scrambled, questioning why the barrier knights weren't protecting them. Seeing the disorder, Theo took command, yelling for everyone to get behind him and run. Internally, he knew he couldn't just hide. He tried to find an opening, but cursed the situation. With citizens and monsters chaotically mixed together, it was too difficult to fight effectively. His frustration mounted as the chaos intensified. A panicked citizen, caught in a ghoul's grasp, screamed out the core of the problem. Because of the festival costumes, it was nearly impossible to tell human and ghoul apart in a frantic melee. Watching the number of bitten victims rise, a thought sparked in his mind. Wait, he considered, what if I could lure them? If he could somehow draw only the ghouls to a single location, it might solve everything. But how? His strategic thoughts were suddenly derailed by a bizarre sight. A man in a strange helmet and cloak was being swarmed by tiny, affectionate, winged creatures. The man seemed flustered, telling them not to mob him, while the creatures cooed about how cute he was. Theo could only stare, momentarily dumbfounded, wondering what kind of costume this was. Amidst the chaos of monsters fighting amongst themselves, Theo suddenly appears, hoisting the startled Mimosuk onto his shoulders. She yelps in surprise, demanding to know what the human is doing. From her new vantage point, she sees a horde of silhouetted figures with glowing eyes turn their collective gaze upon her. She stammers, confused, asking what they could possibly want with her. A smile of understanding spreads across Theo's face. He realizes the truth. Mimics are creatures that instinctively stimulate and attract the desires of any who look upon them. He confirms his theory, noting her innate ability to attract others. Then, he projects his voice, shouting to the ravenous ghouls and telling them to look at Mimosuk. The monster's greed ignites. One declares that her flesh must taste supreme, while another bellows for those who want to eat her to come quickly, as it's first come, first served. Mimosuk can only stare, completely bewildered by the sudden shift. Their shouts build into a deafening roar as the entire horde fixates on her. Theo smirks, announcing that they've arrived, while Mimosuk cries out in terror at becoming the center of their ravenous attention. In response to his call, the frenzied mob charges forward as one, a stampede of claws and fangs aimed directly at the pair. Mimosuk panics, shouting at Theo and asking what he's done, pointing out that they've been easily surrounded. He calmly corrects her, stating that being surrounded was not what happened. He explains that he made them surround them. With a confident grin, he looks up at the girl on his shoulders and gives a single, sharp command. Transform, Mimosuk. Following his order, a brilliant light erupts from her small body, the epicenter of a violent, swirling vortex of energy that engulfs the immediate area. Her transformation was instantaneous, resulting in a colossal, jagged blade. Wielding the newly formed weapon, Theo carved a path through the horde, felling monsters with every swing as their bodies were torn apart. Despite the carnage, Fifi's attention was solely on Mimosuk, who had returned to her usual form. Fifi gushed with admiration, impressed that Mimosuk could fluster her so. Mimosuk blushed at the praise, while Theo, exasperated, told Fifi to snap out of it, pointing out she's always flustered. He tried to process the chaotic scene, but a small, cat-like familiar that had appeared declared that they had defeated plenty of ghouls and it was time to go home. Theo could only stammer in disbelief. The familiar's cheerful suggestion was cut short as a massive shadow fell over them. A towering figure loomed in the street, making it clear that they would not be allowed to leave so easily. The figure was just one of a seemingly endless sea of monsters flooding the plaza. Fifi noted that they were all fans of Mimosuk, drawn by her power, a fact that brought the young girl no pleasure. He stood before the monstrous crowd, realizing with dawning horror that the creatures they had just fought were merely a fraction of the true force assembled. Fifi grimly agreed, stating that there was no end to them. As a monster swarmed, chaos erupted. People screamed as they were overwhelmed by the ghouls, their desperate cries echoing through the streets while Theo watched, unable to help everyone at once. He understood then the true scale of the disaster. From a high vantage point, the entire city was visible, pockmarked with points of conflict. At this rate, the whole metropolis would soon be overrun. Seeing the grim realization on his face, Fifi turned to him, her voice cold and direct. She told him his efforts were useless, stating bluntly that he could not save anyone. She elaborated, explaining that he must understand by now that defeating the ghouls is meaningless. As long as their source, the Seraphim, remained, this hell would never end. However, she warned that the Seraphim was not an opponent they should fight now. Their best chance, she insisted, was to use the current chaos as cover and escape the city while they still could. As Fifi continues to press her case, Mimisuk, perched on Theo's shoulder, enthusiastically agrees with her. Fifi sharply tells the small creature to be quiet, and it meekly complies. She then turns her attention back to Theo, questioning why he would feel any obligation to save a town that betrayed him. She looks him in the eye and lays out his options. He has two choices: either fight here and die a pointless death, or turn tail and run away to survive. He remains silent, processing her words. An internal voice admits that Fifi is right. There are countless reasons not to fight and almost none to do so. And yet, despite the logic, something in him refuses to accept it. His contemplation shatters as he roars his answer, declaring that he couldn't care less about the choices she presented. Fifi flinches, startled by his sudden, violent rejection. In a flash of movement, Mimisuk transforms into a massive, jagged blade. Theo brandishes the weapon, shouting his true intention: to defeat the Seraphim. He reminds Fifi that he's told her this before. He doesn't run. He continues, his voice filled with conviction. He isn't living simply for the sake of survival. If he is to be killed for adhering to his own way of life, then he considers that an honorable end. Fifi watches him, a faint, knowing smile gracing her lips. With a final, defiant shout, he solidifies his resolve. Fifi sighs, a mix of exasperation and amusement in her voice. She remarks that being with him leaves no time for boredom and asks what he expects her to do now. She then asks tentatively if he would get angry if she said she wanted to go home. Theo's expression darkens as he glares at her, replying with a single, chilling word: kill. Fifi immediately retracts her question with a nervous affirmation. With the matter settled, he pivots and charges forward, wielding the transformed Mimisuk like a greatsword. His advance comes to a sudden halt as he reaches the entrance to a long, narrow street. The entire path is choked with a horde of ghouls, their grotesque forms writhing as they wait. He allows himself a grim smile, a single bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. After battling through the city, he has finally arrived at his destination. Before him and Fifi stands the Grand Cathedral, its imposing structure dominating the night. He is certain the Seraphim is inside. Fifi, however, looks away with a pronounced pout, muttering that she just wants to go home. He glances back at her, his own resolve unshaken. With a nervous gulp, he asks if she's ready to go in. As they begin to cross the open space towards the entrance, Fifi complains that her legs feel heavy, her steps dragging. Her complaint makes him pause and turn, just as a familiar voice calls out from a nearby doorway, expressing relief that he is still alive. Theo's gaze snaps toward a darkened archway where a lone figure stands in silhouette. He recognizes the voice instantly, whispering the name, Luke. The figure steps forward, revealing himself to be Knight Commander Luke. Fifi is stunned, remarking on how amazing Theo is. She quickly deduces that since Luke still has his intellect, he hasn't become a ghoul, and she wonders how he could possibly be alive. A wave of relief washes over Theo. He tells Luke he's glad he didn't turn into a monster, then immediately reflects that it's a strange thing to say. Luke's face is a mask of raw emotion, a dark, viscous substance staining the collar of his armor. He confesses that he had desperately hoped Theo was still alive. His cheerful demeanor did little to calm Theo, who stared in disbelief. You, Theo stammered, his eyes fixed on the strange phenomenon. Flames on your neck. But it's not just that. Before he could finish his thought, Luke leaned in, his expression one of manic glee. Look, Theo, he urged, a wide, unsettling smile on his face. Me too. He then demonstrated what he meant. With a surge of dark energy, his head detached from his body, floating serenely on a pillar of black flame. A new status became visible. Dullahan, Headless Knight, level 44. With an ecstatic expression, Luke announced, my level went up. Inside the castle, the Seraphim stand serenely amidst the newly transformed ghouls, their bodies still clad in the armor of Shiria's knights, their faces twisted in silent agony. Her attention turns to Knight Commander Luke. She reassures him, stating that her salvation for him will be a special gift. As she speaks, her hand, glowing with a faint energy, descends and touches the crown of Luke's head, catching him completely by surprise. The energy surges through him, causing him to cry out in agony. The Seraphim calmly announces that his cause of death will be decapitation. The pain, however, quickly morphs into a sensation of overflowing power, and his scream twists into a manic laugh. With her hand still resting on his head, she asks how it feels to be reborn. Luke, his face a mask of pure ecstasy, declares that it is the best feeling he has ever known. He throws his head back, clutching it with both hands, his eyes wide with crazed delight. The Seraphim identifies his new race for him. He is now a Dullahan, a Headless Knight. She explains the gift she has granted him is the power of the headhunting knight, an ability to turn any foe he decapitates into an undead minion. She commands him to use this power alongside the ghouls to complete the salvation of the city. From a hidden vantage point, Theo and Fifi witness the scene. Theo lets out a gasp of disbelief, recognizing the transformed knight and wondering what could have happened to him. Fifi grimly identifies the creature as a headless knight, noting his extreme change in appearance. Luke turns to them, his expression one of manic glee. He explains that the seraphim saved them, taking pity on humans as mere livestock and elevating them to the status of monsters. He confirms Theo's dawning horror. The ghouls were released into the city for the sole purpose of this salvation. Fifi scoffs, telling him he is gravely mistaken. He has only traded his position as livestock for that of a slave. But her words are lost on Luke, who joyfully proclaims that they are graduating from being livestock, that they will no longer be trapped by the barrier, and that they are finally free. He urges Theo to wake up, arguing that becoming a ghoul is a better fate than remaining human livestock, destined only to be devoured by wild monsters. Theo stares back, his expression a mixture of shock and disbelief at the suggestion that this is somehow better. His mind reeling, Theo asks if Luke intends to turn him into a monster as well. From a distance, Luke confirms this, declaring that he will use his newfound power to save Theo. He extends his sword, expressing pity that Theo has to remain in such a sorry state. In response, Theo readies his own massive blade, grimly stating that he understands the situation perfectly. He now sees Luke as his enemy. Luke appears taken aback, questioning if Theo truly intends to fight the seraphim. He insists that a human has no chance of victory, but Theo is resolute, declaring his intention to stop this perverse salvation and demanding Luke stand aside. He has made his decision. Seeing this unwavering resolve, Luke seems conflicted, questioning why Theo insists on this path when he has decided to win. The transformed knight expresses his disappointment, lamenting that he believed Theo, above all others, would understand his position. With a final, regretful sigh, the crystalline growth on his chest begins to glow with power. He then declares his intent to save all of humanity, including Theo. Raising his sword, he invokes an ability, Come Forth, White Blade Barrier. With the barrier invoked, he lunges forward with blinding speed, roaring that he will not allow any interference. Theo can only watch, stunned by the knight's incredible velocity. He braced himself, the crude cleaver groaning as it met the full, crushing force of Luke's descending sword, the impact sending shockwaves through the air. As their blades remained locked, Luke's transformed face twisted into a smirk. He expressed his surprise, noting how impressive it was that Theo, a mere human, could withstand the strike of a monster sword. He grit his teeth, retorting that it was all useless, regardless of how superior Luke believed himself to be. Luke's expression hardened as he pushed back, shouting with fanatical conviction that a human can never defeat a monster. The sheer force behind the declaration sent Theo skidding backward, his feet digging into the ground as he struggled against the overwhelming pressure. Straining, he felt an immense weight in Luke's sword. He realized it carried a heaviness that went beyond a simple increase in level. This weight was not just monstrous power. It was the culmination of years of dedicated training, a human's lifetime of honed skill now fused with his new form. Luke's philosophy became clear. Unlike monsters born with overwhelming power, weaker creatures must rely on technique and cunning to prey upon the strong. Despite this advantage, a flicker of strain crossed Luke's face. He pleaded with Theo, begging him to just give up and be saved quietly. In response, Theo's grip tightened. He roared back, his voice filled with fury, rejecting their twisted salvation and vowing to shove it right back at them. He watches as Luke, whose arm remains monstrous, recoils in disbelief. Luke screams, questioning how he could be losing the contest of strength when he became a monster specifically to grow stronger. With a steady gaze, Theo simply tells him to wake up. A manic grin spreads across Luke's face as a realization dawns on him. He hasn't yet fully mastered his demonic power. He mutters about needing to become stronger still. Seeing this descent, Theo states grimly that he would rather not have to kill him. In response, Luke's power flares, engulfing his sword in a fiery aura. He roars his intent to become stronger and swings his blade down with immense force. The blow sends Theo staggering backward, barely able to withstand the impact. The attack, however, does not connect as intended. Luke stares at his sword in utter frustration, screaming about why he can't reach Theo. He questions the point of becoming so strong if he still can't protect everyone. His face twists into a mask of crazed desperation. He screams that this failure is precisely why he must enact his salvation and gain even more power. As Luke raves, Theo grits his teeth, pushing back against the oppressive force. He shouts for Luke to stop, warning that any further descent will cause him to lose what remains of his human heart. The warning goes unheeded. Luke simply roars for more power. More and more, the power he believes is necessary to save everyone. At that moment, Fifi appears beside a stunned Theo. She looks towards the deranged knight and speaks to Theo, telling him that surely he understands the situation now. Her point is made clear as Luke stands over the fallen Theo, completely lost. He chants obsessively, "Salvation, stronger," his face a horrifying grin. Fifi realizes that any attempt at conversation is already long past. As Theo watches the unfolding tragedy, Fifi speaks beside him. She observes that Luke has been forcibly turned into a monster and is now feeling an unnatural hunger. His mind, she notes, simply hasn't caught up with his body's new, monstrous state. Luke's face is a mask of anguish. He confesses that he feels a ravenous hunger for humans, the very people he is supposed to protect, his eyes wide with horror at his own internal conflict. Hearing this, Theo's expression hardens, his eyes narrowing with grim determination. He stands opposite the knight in a wide courtyard. Luke, sword held ready, questions Theo's hesitation. He wonders aloud if it's because he is still clinging to his desire to save people, even as his body betrays him. Theo responds with cold finality, stating that any further talk is useless. He declares that Luke will soon become nothing more than a man-eating monster, and for that reason, he must be stopped. With a sharp cry to end it, he lunges forward, weapon raised to strike. But Luke meets the charge with a desperate roar of his own. He screams that he will become a hero, that he will save everyone, his face contorted with pain and conviction. Theo's resolve is shaken. He internally laments that this would have been easier if Luke had only shown him malice. He is pained by the knight's unwavering, tragic goodwill. Despite his inner conflict, he pushes forward, mirroring Luke's own desperate charge. He thinks to himself that if things were different, he wouldn't have had to hesitate so much. The two warriors finally clash. Theo swings a makeshift flail, a bladed chain attached to a shield, in a powerful, sweeping arc to meet his opponent. He met the transformed knights charge head-on. From a high vantage point, the brief, arcing slashes of their weapons marked the courtyard floor, culminating in a single point of impact. A sharp metallic ring echoed as his makeshift weapon successfully parried Luke's heavy sword. The move left Luke momentarily stunned, his eyes wide with disbelief. Standing with his back to the knight, Theo spoke a single, somber phrase, "What a shame." As the words settled, the monstrous form Luke had taken began to fail. His left shoulder and arm dissolved into black particles, the corrupted power that sustained him dissipating into nothingness. His strength gone, the knight commander collapsed to his knees. Theo looked down, his mind filled with regret, realizing how differently things could have gone. He thought that they had both sought the same goal, and might have even adventured together as comrades. He continued to wonder, if only he had been there to explain things sooner, could this outcome have been avoided? Or perhaps, he mused, was it necessary for him to believe in the possibility of being trusted, even if he was poisoned, even if he was seen as a monster subordinate? From the ground, Luke choked out his final questions. He asked why, after becoming so strong, he still couldn't defeat Theo, a human. Theo revealed the reason. It was because of something Luke didn't know, the blessing of man. In response to Luke's confusion, a brilliant light erupted from Theo's body. He declared the activation of his level up, the raw power surging through him as his level jumped to 68. He then explained the fundamental truth. Yes, he confirmed, looking down at his hand. We humans can raise our levels by killing monsters. He continues, explaining to the transformed Luke that humans are not the weakest race. With a clenched fist, he declares that they are, in fact, a race that can become the strongest. The dying knight commander seems to process this, a flicker of understanding in his monstrous eyes as he realizes the truth in Theo's words. A sense of peace settles over Luke. He murmurs that he's glad he didn't have to become a monster after all, then offers a quiet, final apology to Theo for his failure. As his life fades, the fallen knight commander poses one last, crucial question from the ground. He asks Theo to tell him, in the end, if humans can truly win against the monsters. Theo's response is unwavering and absolute. We can win. His conviction burns in his eyes as he makes a personal vow, declaring with absolute certainty that he will be the one to win. He then notices a sword has appeared in his hand. As he examines it, the fading Luke whispers his approval. With his final moments, Luke officially bequeaths the weapon, entrusting the sword and its purpose to Theo. He explains that this is the White Knight's sword, the very holy sword that had been maintaining the barrier around the city. A legend foretold that a hero would one day use it to save humanity. Luke confesses he once believed that hero was him, but now he is certain that destiny belongs to Theo. As his form finally begins to dissolve, Luke makes one last request, pleading with Theo to use the sword to save humanity from the monsters. Theo quietly accepts the heavy burden. Standing alone in the aftermath, the White Knight, sword now his, Theo accepts the solemn duty passed on to him. He grips the hilt of the White Knight's sword, its blade humming with a faint, ethereal light. As he holds it, the sword erupts, unleashing a colossal pillar of pure, white energy that tears through the sky. The blast radiates outward, a silent, cleansing wave. From a nearby window, a captive watches in stunned silence as the wave of light washes over the courtyard, causing the rampaging ghouls to crumble into motes of dust and vanish. The light does not discriminate. Knight Commander Luke, caught in its purifying radius, begins to dissolve into particles. A faint smile touches his lips as he fades, his final words a mere whisper. Thank you, hero. When the blinding light subsides, only dust and silence remain. Theo stands alone amidst the dissipating particles, the sword heavy in his hand. A sudden flash emanates from the back of his left hand. The circular crest glows brightly, and a wisp of energy snakes from it, flowing into the hilt of the sword. As the energy is absorbed, a disembodied voice echoes through the now empty fortress, declaring, subjugation complete. In the quiet that follows, Fifi materializes beside the despondent Theo, who is slumped to the ground. She looks down at him and asks what he is feeling now. Is it regret? Sadness? Or does he want to cry? She scoffs, telling him he is far too soft on humans, remarking that tragedies of this scale are happening all over the world. Theo, his gaze fixed on the ground, quietly agrees. He acknowledges that this is a world where kindness and beauty are trampled underfoot. His quiet agreement, however, gives way to a surge of cold fury. He rises to his feet, his eyes burning with a new, dark resolve as he grips the sword. That is why, he declares, his voice low and intense. I will not forgive this world.